wọ́n wọlé wọ́n fẹ́ wá defend ìwé wọn. Gbogbo nǹkan tó dẹ̀ wà nínú ìwé wọn yìí ẹnu lásán náà fẹ́ fi gbara wọn lẹ̀. Kọ́ lọ sínú ìwé wọn, kàn jẹ́ ká rí nǹkan tó wà nínú ìwé wọn ò ní lọ síbẹ̀ torí pé wọ́n mọ̀ pé òótọ́ òun làwa ń sọ ń bí. Ìwé wọn ò lè defend ìwé wọn mọ́. Ọ̀rọ̀ ẹnu lásán náà kàn fẹ́ máa sọ fún wa. Ọ̀rọ̀ ẹnu tí ó jẹ́ pé kì í ṣe evidence. Ìwé wọn tó jẹ́ evidence wọn ò lè lọ nínú ìwé wọn mọ́. Ìwé wọn sọ pé kán máa pààyàn. Wọ́n á wá máa fi ọ̀rọ̀ ẹnu sọ fún wa pé Allah wọn ò sọ pé kán pààyàn o. Ó dẹ̀ wá nínú ìwé wọn pé ẹ máa pa wọ́n. Ẹ bodè wọ́n ní ibùba. Kẹ́ bẹ̀rẹ̀ sí gé wọn lọ́rùn, kẹ́ bẹ̀rẹ̀ sí gé wọn lápá. Ṣùgbọ́n wọ́n rí pé ìwé yẹn kò ṣeé defend mọ́. Wọ́n á fẹ́ fi ọ̀rọ̀ ẹnu máa ṣe tàkíyà fún wa. Àwa ò fẹ́ ọ̀rọ̀ ẹnu o. Ìwé yín òun làwa ń sọ. À ń sọ nǹkan tó wà nínú ìwé yín tẹ́ fẹ́ fi wá jà wá lógun ní ilẹ̀ wa. Ẹ fẹ́ fi jà wá lógun nínú ilẹ̀ wa. Ẹ fẹ́ fi jà wá lógun. Ẹ fẹ́ fi gba ilẹ̀ mọ́ wa lọ́wọ́. Ẹ fẹ́ pa gbogbo wa àti àwọn ìran wa. Ẹ fẹ́ pa wọ́n run. Ẹ fẹ́ wá gbé àwọn Lárúbáwá. Ẹ fẹ́ wá gbélé wa lórí. Eléyìí là ń jẹ́ kẹ́ ẹ mọ̀. Bọ̀ ṣùgbọ́n ẹ fẹ́ sòtítọ́, ẹ fẹ́ sòdodo. Irọ́ lẹ fẹ́ máa sọ fún wa. Àwa àfẹ́ irọ́ mọ́. Ẹ ti ta irọ́ yín dẹ̀ ti pin. Òótọ́ dẹ̀ ti wá dé nsìn. Ìwé yín tẹ́ bá ti wá síbi ìwé yín la fẹ́ kẹ́ máa kà fún wa. Kì í ṣe ọ̀rọ̀ ẹnu. A ò fẹ́ ọ̀rọ̀ ẹnu. A ò fẹ́ nǹkan tó jẹ́ pé àfẹnusọ àfẹ́. Ìwé yín tẹ́ sọ pé ẹ gbàgbọ́ yẹn, tẹ́ sọ pé ó bọ́ sílẹ̀ láti ọ̀run ni. Ọ̀run ló ti bọ́ sílẹ̀, kì í ṣe pé inú ayé iná ti kọ́. Kì í ṣe pé àwọn èèyàn ló kọ́. Ọ̀run ló ti jábọ́. Ìwé tó bá bọ́ sílẹ̀ látọ̀run. So yẹ kíyàn máa rí nǹkan tó jẹ́ àbùkù nínú ẹ̀ ni. Kò yẹ kíyàn rí nǹkan tó jẹ́ àbùkù nínú ẹ̀. But a rí pé inú ìwé yín àwọn nǹkan tó jẹ́ pé àbùkù, nǹkan tí ò tọ́ fọ́mọ ènìyàn, nǹkan tí ò yẹ láwùjọ, nǹkan tí ò yẹ nínú kó ṣẹlẹ̀, òun là ń bá inú ìwé àlùkùránì yẹn. So kò sẹ́ni tó lè tàn wá mọ́ o. A ti lọ ké ìtumọ̀, a dẹ̀ ti mọ ìtumọ̀. Àti ké àti mọ̀. Kò sẹ́ni kankan tó jẹ́ pé a nídìí àfà, a dẹ̀ nídìí mọ́ọ̀mù láti tú Kùránì fún wa. Wọ́n ti tú sí èdè Yorùbá, wọ́n ti tú sí èdè òyìnbó. Àwọn náà lè ti wá ké ìtumọ̀ yẹn, àwa ti mọ̀. Kò sí kankan tán lè fi tú wa jẹ́ sìn. So òdodo ti dé o. A fẹ́ ọ̀rọ̀ ẹnu. A fẹ́ kẹ́ wá máa ṣe tàkíyà fún wa. Kẹ́ wá máa ṣe ìwàásù kan fún wa ń bí. A fẹ́ wàásù. Ẹ̀rí láti inú ìwé yín la fẹ́. Tẹ́ bá ti sọ̀rọ̀ pé ìwé yín àlàáfíà ló gbé wá. A fẹ́ rí àlàáfíà yẹn gangan kẹ́ fi hàn wá nínú Kùránì. Tó bá jẹ́ pé àlàáfíà ni ìwé yín gbé wá. Torí pé ọ̀rọ̀ ẹnu yẹn a fẹ́ mọ́. Torí pé ìtànjẹ lọ̀rọ̀ ẹnu. Ẹ ṣá máa tàn wọ́n pẹ̀lú ọ̀rọ̀ ẹnu. Ẹ má fi Kùránì hàn wọ́n. Ẹ ṣá máa fi ọ̀rọ̀ ẹnu. Ẹ máa tàn wọ́n. Àwa ò fẹ́ yẹn mọ́. A ò fẹ́ ọ̀rọ̀ ẹnu. Ìtànjẹ lọ̀rọ̀ ẹnu. Torí pé a rí pé ẹ̀sìn yẹn, ẹ̀sìn ìkónilẹ́rú, àti pé ẹ̀sìn yẹn, ẹ̀sìn ẹgbẹ́ òkùnkùn ni. Ẹgbẹ́ òkùnkùn òun náà ti máa sọ wípé tó bá fi ẹgbẹ́ òkùnkùn sílẹ̀ wọ́n máa pa ẹ́ ni. Ẹni tó bá ń ṣe ẹgbẹ́ òkùnkùn ọjọ́ tó bá ti fílẹ̀ báyìí kò ní sinmi mọ́. Wọ́n máa lé káàkiri ni. Wọ́n á máa lé káàkiri bó wà ní kútúwéńjì wọ́n á wá débẹ̀. Torí pé wọ́n rí pé ó máa tú àṣírí wọn. So ẹgbẹ́ òkùnkùn ní ìsìlámù, torí pé ìwé yẹn náà sọ ó ní ẹni tó bá ti fi ìsìlámù sílẹ̀ ẹ pa. Tẹ́ bá ti advice ẹ̀, tẹ́ ti gbà nímọ̀ràn pé padà sínú ẹ̀, tí ó sọ pé no mi ò padà sínú ẹ̀ mọ́, nǹkan tí àlùkùránì sọ pé ó ní ẹ pa ni tí ò bá ti gbọ́ ẹ pa. So a rí pé ẹgbẹ́ òkùnkùn ni, ẹgbẹ́ òkùnkùn ó ní ìsìlámù, ẹgbẹ́ òkùnkùn ó ní ìsìlámù. Ìsìlámù ó ń sọ fún wa pé gbogbo èèyàn mùsùlùmí ni. Ibo ni gbogbo èèyàn ti jẹ́ mùsùlùmí? Ẹni tán bí tí ó ṣe ẹ̀sìn kankan, tí ó ṣe ẹni tẹ̀ ní mùsùlùmí ni. Ẹ̀tànjẹ ló wà nù ìsìlámù. Ẹni mùsùlùmí ní gbogbo ayé. Ẹ̀tànjẹ wọ́n lè ṣe mọ̀ pé mùsùlùmí ní gbogbo ayé. So àwọn India, àwọn Chinese, àwọn Portugal, àwọn gbogbo àwọn country yẹn, so mùsùlùmí náà ni wọ́n. Ẹni mùsùlùmí ní gbogbo ayé. Báwo lẹ ṣe mọ̀ pé gbogbo mùsùlùmí ní gbogbo ayé? Ibo lẹ ti rí kà ní pé mùsùlùmí ní gbogbo ayé? Gbogbo àwọn ìtànjẹ yẹn tẹ́kàn mọ́ máa sọ lẹ́nu sá, ẹ kàn lanu gbàgà, ẹ bẹ̀rẹ̀ sí sọ ìsọkúsọ lẹ́nu, ẹ máa tutùkútù lẹ́nu. Mùsùlùmí gbogbo ayé. Báwo lẹ ṣe mọ̀? Ẹ̀sìn tí ò ní túmọ̀, tí ò lójú, tí ò nídìí, ẹ̀sìn tó kóni lẹ́rú, tó ń sọ ní dìdàkudà, àwọn àní ti gbogbo ayé ni. Ẹ jáwọ́ lápọ̀n tí ó yọ kẹ lọ gbómi lákaná. Ayé tí a wà nú ẹ̀ yìí, Ọlọ́run ò lẹ́sìn, Ìdùmarè ò lẹ́sìn, ọba adẹ́dà àṣẹ̀dá ò lẹ́sìn, kò ní ẹ̀sìn kankan. Ẹyẹ tàn wá jẹ, ẹyẹ fi ẹ̀tàn ẹnu, ẹyẹ fi tàn wá, ẹyẹ máa tàn wá, ẹyẹ máa gà wá, ẹyẹ máa tàn wá, ẹyẹ máa gà wá pẹ̀lú ẹ̀sìn òṣì, ẹ̀sìn wèrè tẹ́ ń ṣe káàkiri, ẹ̀sìn tẹ́ ń ṣe káàkiri. Ẹyẹ máa gà wá mọ́, ẹyẹ máa tàn wá mọ́, torí ojú ti là. Ojú àwa ọmọ káàrọ̀ òjíire, ojú wa ti là o, torí pé a ti rí pé ẹ̀sìn yìí ló sọ wá sínú ìgbèkùn, ó sọ wá sínú poverty ni, inú títọrọ jẹ ó sọ wá sínú ká máa tọrọ jẹ káàkiri ni, ká ríra wa pé àjẹ́ nǹkan kan, òun ló sọ wá dì. Ká rí pé ó sọ wá di pé ká máa hate ara wa, ká máa ṣèkórìíra ara wa ní gbogbo ìgbà, òun ló sọ wá dì. So ẹ̀sìn yẹn ẹ̀sìn burúkú ni. So kò ní value láwùjọ, kò ní kankan fún wa, kò ní kankan fún wa o. Ojú wa dẹ̀ ti là ń sìn, ojú wa ti là, a dẹ̀ ní dákẹ́. Gbà tójú wa ti là yẹn, a ní dákẹ́, torí pé ọ̀rọ̀ lọmọ ilé tí ń jẹ. Ọ̀rọ̀ yẹn náà la máa sọ táwọn èèyàn wá fi máa gbọ́, a dẹ̀ ń sọ fún àwọn èèyàn wa ń sìn pé ẹ má jẹ́ pé ajá ẹ má sọnù o. Ẹ̀yin èèyàn wa, ẹ̀yin ọmọkọ, ẹ jọ̀ọ́ ẹ má sọnù o, torí pé wọ́n ní ajá tó bá sọnù kò ní gbọ́ fèrè ọlọ́dẹ o. Ẹ jọ̀ọ́ gbogbo àwọn ọmọ tán ti jí, gbogbo àwọn káàrọ̀ òjíire tó ti jí, wọ́n fọn fèrè wọn láàárọ̀, lọ́sàn-án, lálẹ́. Ẹ jọ̀ọ́ ẹ gbọ́ fèrè wọn o. Fèrè wọn tán dẹ̀ ń fún, wọ́n sọ fún wa wípé ẹ jẹ́ ká túlé wa ṣe tiwantiwa, tẹ́ni ní tẹ́ni, tẹ́ni ní tẹ́ni o, tẹ́ni ní tẹ́ni, tiwa ní tiwa, àṣà aláṣà yìí ṣe tiwa. Àṣà wa, a mọ àṣà wa, a mọ ìṣe wa. Àṣà wa ó kóni mọ́ra, àṣà wa ó pe ìfẹ́ wá, àṣà wa ó pe àlàáfíà wá tẹnitẹni ẹ jẹ́ ká gbé àṣà wa lárugẹ, ẹ jẹ́ ká gbé ìṣe wa lárugẹ. Àwọn bàbá wa, àwọn bàbá aláàláfíà ni wọ́n o. Àlàáfíà ni orúkọ gbogbo àwọn bàbá wa, gbogbo àwọn ancestors wa, àlàáfíà lórúkọ wọn. Àlàáfíà yẹn náà pèsè orí ilẹ̀ wa tílẹ̀ wa fi rójú tó fi ráyè. Ṣùgbọ́n nígbà táwọn àìsàn àjòjì dé, wọ́n pe oríṣiríṣi wá. Ṣùgbọ́n àwa a fẹ́ pe àlàáfíà, à ń pe àlàáfíà yẹn padà. Àlàáfíà tí àwọn bàbá wa ti fi sílẹ̀ yẹn à ń pè padà ń sìn. Gbogbo ìnira, gbogbo òfò àdánù a lé wọn lọ. A lé wọn lọ, gbogbo àwọn ẹ̀sìn àjòjì tó jẹ́ òfò àdánù à ń lé wọn lọ lákòókò yìí. À ń pe àlàáfíà wá sórí ilẹ̀ wa, sí ayé wa, sínú ẹbí wa, sí ìpínlẹ̀ wa, sí orílẹ̀-èdè wa. À ń pe àlàáfíà wá. So ẹ̀yin ọmọ Odùduwà, ẹ̀yin ọmọ káàárọ̀ òjíire, à ń pè yín o. À ń pè yín kẹ́tẹ́tí léko. À ń pè yín ẹ gbọ́gbe àwọn èèyàn yín. Ẹ jẹ́ ká gba àlàáfíà, àwọn àlàáfíà tí àwọn bàbá wa tán fi gbé ilẹ̀ wa ró. Ẹ jẹ́ ká gbà á láàyè. Gbogbo ẹ̀sìn àjòjì ká lọ sọ wọ́n nù. Àwọn ẹ̀sìn tí ò ràn wá lọ́wọ́, tí ò gbé wa dé anywhere, tí ò gbé wa débi ibi, tí ò gbé wa débi gíga, ẹ jẹ́ ká lọ sọ wọ́n nù. Ẹ̀sìn ni o. Àlàáfíà á wá sórí ilẹ̀ wa o. Ìfẹ́ á padà sórí ilẹ̀ wa o. Ayọ̀ á padà sórí ilẹ̀ wa o. Ìdùnnú, iṣẹ́ á padà sórí ilẹ̀ wa o. Ìrẹ́pọ̀ á padà sórí ilẹ̀ wa o. Ìtura á padà sórí ilẹ̀ wa o. Àníyé máa sá káàkiri mọ́. Nígbà tí ìtura bá dé, àní máa sá káàkiri. So mo sọ yìí, mo dúró. Ẹ ṣé gan ni o.
Bàbá Bẹ́là ṣe wà ń bẹ̀. Èèyàn ta ló tún ní one or two things tá a fẹ́ bá wa sọ.
Ẹ jẹ́ kí n kọrin mi lẹ́ẹ̀kan sí. Ẹ jẹ́ kí n kọrin mi. Mo bọ̀. Mùsùlùmí máa jóná. Mùsùlùmí máa jóná o. Mo ní Mùsùlùmí máa jóná. Mùsùlùmí máa jóná o. Mùsùlùmí máa jóná. Mùsùlùmí máa jóná o. Mùsùlùmí bàbá
Bẹ́là ti rẹ́rìn
ṣe
léṣe.
Ayé fi mí ẹ̀rí láàárọ̀ bàbá Bíọ́lá. Kí ló dé gan? Kí ló dé? Ẹ jẹ́ kí n kọrin bàbá Bíọ́lá.
Já sí báyìí torí Ọlọ́run. Gbogbo la tún já sí báyìí torí Ọlọ́run.
Mùsùlùmí máa jóná o. Ẹ mọ̀ pé
a máa gbé lọ fún 100.
ẹ mọ̀ pé nínú hadith, bàbá wa ní nínú hadith, wọ́n ní àwọn mùsùlùmí sọ pé àwọn kan máa jó, wọ́n sọ pé àwọn kan máa jóná. But a rí nínú hadith pé gbogbo mùsùlùmí ló máa wọná, àwọn gan ló máa jóná. So wọ́n wá ní sáàyìn orí wọn tó máa fi dólẹ̀ yẹn náà fi máa dá wọn, àwọn òun náà fi máa mú wọn jáde láti inú náà. So èmi dẹ̀ wá mo wá ní inspiration fún wọn.
Ó wà ní Kùránì bẹ́ẹ̀.
Mo ní inspiration fún wọn láàárọ̀ yìí, mo wá ní kí n kọrin yẹn fún wọn.
bàbá mi
mo ní kí n
amúlùdùn
kọrin yẹn fún
nǹkan tó
àwọn
máa ń yà
mùsùlùmí
mí
láàárọ̀
lẹ́nu.
mo ní mùsùlùmí 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 máa jóná
Máa jóná.
mùsùlùmí mùsùlùmí máa jóná o mùsùlùmí 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 máa jóná mùsùlùmí mùsùlùmí máa jóná mùsùlùmí 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 máa jóná jahannama mùsùlùmí máa jóná. ẹ mọ̀ pé iná jahannama náà máa lọ ẹ mọ̀ pé iná jahannama náà máa lọ ok mùsùlùmí 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 máa jóná jahannama mùsùlùmí máa jóná o mùsùlùmí 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 máa jóná jahannama mùsùlùmí máa jóná mùsùlùmí 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 máa jóná jahannama mùsùlùmí máa jóná mùsùlùmí 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 máa jóná jahannama mùsùlùmí máa jóná o.
Bàbá mi amúlùdùn.
ẹ ṣé gan ni.
Bàbá mi amúlùdùn.
Yes sir.
Tán bá ra yín mú òkè kúra straight.
No, ìwé wọn ló sọ bẹ́ẹ̀ ìwé wọn ni nínú àdìtì pé ṣé mi ni mo sọ bẹ́ẹ̀ ni èmi kàn ní inspiration fún ni ìwé wọn ló sọ bẹ́ẹ̀ náà bàbá Bíálà ẹ̀tàn máìkì yín bàbá Bíálà
ṣé ń gbọ́ mi báyìí?
mo ń gbọ́ yín bàbá Bíálà ṣé mo parọ́ ni ṣebí àdìtì ló sọ bẹ́ẹ̀.
Gbogbo mùsùlùmí máa gbóná yìí ètò ẹ̀fẹ̀ yé mi mọ́ báyìí.
ẹjẹ́ oyè yín àwọn méjèèjì náà máa jóná. Nǹkan tó fọ́n ní pé ní ọ̀dọ̀ àkọ́kọ́ ìkejì máa jóná lọ́dọ̀ kejì àkọ́kọ́ máa jóná so ó mì ń pè gẹ́gẹ́ bí ìyá ancestor ṣe máa ń sọ àwọn méjèèjì náà jọ máa jóná nìyẹn so nǹkan tó fọ́n ní bẹ́ẹ̀ nìyẹn lọ́dọ̀ kínní ìkejì á jóná lọ́dọ̀ kejì ìkíní á jóná.
Ariwo wà níbi tí ẹ wà bàbá mi.
Àwa kọ́ la tún sọ pé ọmọ jóná o. Elédùmarè tiwa kò sọ wípé àwọn máa jóná o. Àwọn náà tún sọ pé àwọn ara wọn máa jóná. Ṣẹ́rí wà láti ọlọ́run wọn tó dá sáàárín ara wọn.
Nǹkan tá à ń sọ náà nìyẹn ẹ mọ̀ pé lọ́dọ̀ àwọn Christian àwọn mùsùlùmí máa jóná lọ́dọ̀ àwọn Muslim àwọn Christian inú náà ń lọ so ó mìíràn páwọn méjèèjì inú náà ni sòsé ni nǹkan tá à ń sọ nìyẹn.
Èmi wá fún títẹ̀ pé iná méjì ni mùsùlùmí máa jóná ní jahannama fún rẹ̀ náà kán tó yọ jáde kó tó àlọ́ jóná kìrìsìtẹ́nì lọ́tọ̀.
So no kò sí escape fún wọn nìyẹn. Kò sí escape fún wọn nìyẹn. Kọ̀tán bá pò nínú jahannama wọ́n sì ń lọ nínú Christian torí wọn ò gba Jésù lé orí Olúwa àti Olùgbàlà.
Ọlọ́run agboolé kan náà nìyẹn o ṣe rí wípé Ọlọ́run wọn gan ń ṣera wọn Ọlọ́run agboolé kan náà nìyẹn ìlú wọn ò jìnnà síra wọn.
Orogún òwò náà ń bá wọn.
Tẹ́nu ọ̀wá fi kò tí aláàyàn wá lè bá èyí tí ọ̀dọ̀ àwọn Israel sọ̀rọ̀ yìí sókè máa kó gbogbo yín papọ̀.
Mo ti lọ ọ̀sẹ̀ kan jẹ́ máa lọ ìyókù parí ó lọ fẹ́ lọ lo bíríkì ní bẹ́ẹ̀ ni ètò sáwá pé àìná rẹ̀ mo ti mí sí rẹ̀ bí èsì ìlú tẹ̀lé rí lábẹ́ bí ìlú yìí ṣe dùn tó mo lẹ́nìkan tó sì fi odidi UK tó sì fi kalẹ̀ tó ní Ìlọrin yìí ó dùn púpọ̀ jù kọjá àti wà lọ jòkó nìkan tó ti padà wálé tí ti ń jòkó ní kò sì sí láyé yìí ibi tó bá rí tó bá dùn tó wà peace ọ̀ nífẹ̀ẹ́ sẹ́tọ̀ lọ bí tó wà violent tó fi ibi tó wà peace kalẹ̀ tó dùn ọ̀fẹ́ ńlá tó bá tutù nílẹ̀ mìíràn fẹ́ dúró sí pé àlàáfíà ìfọ̀kànbalẹ̀ àlàáfíà mẹ́mẹ́ a sì lẹ́nu tẹ́ pé yóò lọ lú ìbò kan tẹ́ pé yóò ní mo ti lọ ọ̀sẹ̀ kan jẹ́ máa lọ ìyókù parí.
Bàbá Bíálà ṣé ẹ mọ̀ lọ́rin dáadáa ṣá
ìlú tí ò sí náà
burúkú yìí ń sọ Ọlọ́run máa ṣàánú wa o. Ọ̀dọ̀ àwọn alásàlátù ló ti ń parọ́ yẹn o.
wọ́n na microphone sí lẹ́nu ni.
a sì lẹ́nu tẹ́ pé yóò lọ ìlú èbó kan tẹ́ pé mo ti lọ lábẹ́ bí ìlú yìí ṣe dùn tó mo lẹ́nìkan tó sì fi odidi UK tó sì fi kalẹ̀ tó ní Ìlọrin yìí ó dùn púpọ̀ jù kọjá.
ní ètí ìdélùú èbò rí o ní èdè Kútọ̀nù rí ní èlé kó Ìbàdàn àbí mo kó lẹ́kọ̀ọ́ kí wọ́n á lè lọrin lókù tí mo fẹ́ lọ fi lò pèsè kí mo fẹ́ lọ síbi.
Àwọn èèyàn ń pa irọ́ láyé.
Ìlọrin yẹn tẹ bá rí Ìlọrin yẹn 80% nínú ìlú Ìlọrin ẹ lè fẹ́ kán gbàdúrà bẹ̀ 80%
That is it.
nínú ìlú Ìlọrin ẹ lè fẹ́ gbé ìlú. ẹ lábọ̀
Àbọ̀
yìí bọ́
ìbọn
ṣiṣẹ́
ṣiṣẹ́ bàbá mi.
mo
Gbogbo
kí lè
àtọ̀
bàbá mi ọlọ́pàá.
àfa tó ń sọ̀rọ̀ yẹn ó rọ̀rọ̀ sọ ìsìjàbá ní pé Ìlọrin dùn gan
bàbá mi ọlọ́pàá.
ọmọ ìyá ìjẹ ẹ̀gbọ́n mi
Salamu
mo
alaikum.
kí yín àmì alaikum salam mo kí yín gan so àfa yẹn ráìtì o Ìlọrin wọn ní Ìlọrin dùn gan èmi gan wò bí a tèmi náà kó lọ síbẹ̀ báyìí.
Bóyá kí
Bàbá
gbogbo àti
Babíàlá
relocate ká máa lọ
ẹmọ̀dí
gbé lọ.
tán fi sọ pé Ìlọrin dùn ẹjẹ́ ń já yín sí ìsìjábà ti ṣàlàyé lánàá àwọn èyí tó fẹ́ràn láti mọ dún ọmọ kéèké bí ànábì náà fà ní Ìlọrin fi dùn àwọn ọmọ kéèké ṣe dó
Àwọn
wọ́n ṣe
onítìjú
dó
mi.
àwọn onítìjú mi àwọn tán mọ́ wọ jàlámíà àwọn ẹlẹ́ra tán ìwọ pátá tán tèè mọ́ ká sókè ohun tó fà tí Ìlọrin fi dùn nìyẹn o.
Ok, ó ti yé wa nísìnyí.
ẹni jẹ́ dógidọ́pẹ̀ ni ẹ wá ní kí Ìlọrin mọ́ dùn.
ó wà nínú bóyá nínú wákàtí márùn yẹn ni tàbí nǹkan kan òun ló fi fà á tó fi jẹ́ wípé kò síbi tí ò sí ìwà pálapàla o bọ̀ lórí pé ká bá àwọn ọmọ kéékèèké sùn yẹn ó pọ̀ gan-an ó wà rampant gan lọ́dọ̀ àwọn pẹ̀lú ìrírí lèmi ń sọ nǹkan tó fà á nìyẹn tó fi jẹ́ ọ̀rọ̀ mi ń padà sí ọ̀dọ̀ bàbá Bíálà kí ló fà á.
ọ̀ya ẹ̀yẹ̀ wò báyìí.
ok pẹ̀lú ìrírí lèmi ń sọ ọ́ confam ìrírí wípé àwọn pípù yẹn bí ìgbà tó jẹ́ pé nǹkan kan wà nínú tó bá ti ń ṣe tó bá ti gba ẹ̀sìn yẹn tó bá ti lè gbà báyìí 80% nínú wọn ó máa ń gba làákàyè wọn bóyá àwọn àdéhìtì tán ti ka I don't know but kí nìyẹn jẹ́ problem fáwọn pípù yẹn gan ni nǹkan tó wá fà gangan nìyẹn tó fi jẹ́ wípé ẹ̀yin náà ẹ wò lọ́rin ẹ̀yin tẹ́ fẹ́ ṣe ìwàásù fún wa nílọrin ẹ wá fi ọmọ àlè ẹ̀yin wá fi ń ṣe gbajúmọ̀ ọmọ àlè ẹ̀yin fi ń ṣe gbajúmọ̀ ló jẹ́ sọ́dọ̀ wọn ń kọ́ ọmọ àlè gbọ́ tí lẹ́dí kan ṣe fídíò kan gbà kan wípé Oríyọmí Hamzat má gbé ọ̀rọ̀ DNA wá sí Ìlọrin o àti ìṣẹ̀dálẹ̀ Ìlọrin náà ti mọ̀ ṣé kò yẹ kẹ́sìn gba ìyẹn lọ́wọ́ wọn tó bá jẹ́ lótìtọ́ àtòdodo ní ẹ̀sìn yẹn tó bá jẹ́ pé ní ilé face me and face you wọ́n jọ máa ń change ìyàwó wọ́n jọ máa ń ìyàwó eléyìí máa ọkọ eléyìí máa báyàwó eléyìí sùn èyí eléyìí lè bá eléyìí sùn ọ̀hún rí gẹ́gẹ́ bí nǹkan kan kí wàá lẹ̀ ń preach gangan kí ni nǹkan tẹ́ wá ń preach. tẹ́ bá wo bẹ̀ báyìí first time tí màá lọ sí Ìlọrin bóyá bíi 3 years ago ni yeah going to be 3 years ago ni mo wá bá nínú lára àwọn èèyàn kan wá kan ṣe ṣíṣe ni mo tiẹ̀ fi wọ́n ṣe yẹ̀yẹ́ ní odindi street báyìí àwọn ọmọ kéékèèké yẹn mi ò kí n má exaggerate wọ́n máa tó 50 àwọn ọmọ bíi ọmọ 2 years àwọn ọmọ 1 year tó ẹ̀ṣẹ̀ ń kọrin àwọn míì ò wọṣọ àwọn míì wọ́n wá pọ̀ ìgbà tó jẹ́ pé ọkùnrin kan nínú wọn ló máa ní bíi 5 6 wọn ò dẹ̀ níṣẹ́ lọ́wọ́ ó lè jẹ́ ìmíì máa ní bíi 10 gbogbo ẹ̀ wá iṣẹ́ tó yẹ kí Ìlọrin kan fẹ̀gbẹ́ máa kẹ̀gẹ́ pẹ̀lú abroad pẹ̀lú bíi UK tàbí Amẹ́ríkà ni tán bá wá ní kí ló dé kan ní àtórí pàdúà ní ilé àdúà ní tán bá dẹ̀ máa sọ wá ní ọ̀dọ̀ àwọn ló súnmọ́ àlùjọ náà ṣé bá àlùjọ náà ìbápẹ̀rẹ̀ ayé la máa ti rí àlùjọ náà níbi tá a wà níbí báyìí ibi tó ti lè rìn tó ti lè drive láago 2 òru tó ti lè gbé mọ́tò ìpè wò mo fẹ́ sáré dé Manchester nsìn kò dẹ̀ ṣá kọ́kọ́rọ́ ní kinní kò máa lọ tí ò sẹ́ni tó máa yẹ ẹ́ lọ́nà wò ibi tó ti lè pè wípé nǹkan kan ń ṣe mi ò mọ nǹkan kan tó eku lásán, eku wípé eku wọnú ilé mi ó ní nọ́mbà tó máa pè. Eku wípé mo rí eku nínú ilé o, ó ní nọ́mbà tó máa pè. Ìwọ máa sábọ́ síta. In short, insurance kan tún wà gan débi pé gbogbo nǹkan tó bá wà nínú ilé yẹn insurance cover ẹ̀, torí pé o mọ̀ o lè sọ pé eku yẹn ó ti lọ fẹnu kàn. ṣé ibo làlùjọ náà, ibo nínú náà káwọn tó wà ń bẹ yẹn kán máa di kán máa kẹ lọ mú aṣọ ọ̀pá 20 kẹwé mọ́rí ànábìtẹ́wálẹ̀ fi jọ hàn lóní ìlú ibẹ̀ aṣáàdé Saudi àárí àwọn tó ń wérí báyìí ní Saudi ẹ̀kàn ló mú ti yín wá ẹ̀kàn gé e ní kínní ẹ̀kàn bẹ̀rẹ̀ sí ní ṣòṣì bí ẹni ẹ̀sọ̀rọ̀ ayé da ṣòṣì máa mọ̀ ó ṣe ní ìrọ́ni yẹn ló tiẹ̀ wọ́ọ̀sì jù. Wọ́n ní ẹni tó bá máa dáṣọ fún ni tààrà ẹ̀ la máa kọ́kọ́ wò. Ẹ̀yin yẹn lẹ wá sọ wípé wíbẹ̀ jẹ́ bẹ́ẹ̀ ń ṣàdúrà kákàkiri fún àwọn èèyàn. Ẹ tiẹ̀ kọ́kọ́ ṣe fún Ìlọrin náà. Gbogbo àwọn ọmọ tó ń jáde ilé kéwú yẹn ọ̀dọ̀ yín ló yẹ kí ẹnjíníà ká ti máa rí tó máa pọ̀. Ọ̀dọ̀ yín ló yẹ kí àwọn nǹkan oríṣiríṣi kó ti máa jáde. Kán ní kí ló dé? Kò ń ṣe pé ẹ̀kàn ṣáàpọ̀ ìkan náà sọ pé wá wo ìdí táwọn lọ yìí o èrò pọ̀ ju ọjọ́ àràfà lọ something like that. Ìyẹn lè fẹ́ fi máa ṣe gbajúmọ̀. Ẹ ń fòṣì ṣe gbajúmọ̀, ẹ ń ṣàṣòṣì máa mọ̀, ẹ ń fòṣì ṣe gbajúmọ̀. Olówó kan láàrin kinní kan wọ́n máa ní kẹ́ bímọ púpọ̀ kó lè jẹ́ pé ẹ̀yìn ànábì ni ẹ̀tàn bá ń kó àwọn ìjọ jáde. You can imagine wọ́n ti tọwọ́ bọ̀ wá lórí wọ́n ti fọwọ́ rò wá lọ́pọlọ. Ẹ bímọ púpọ̀ o so that oníkálukú tí àwọn prophet oníkálukú tán bá dúró ọmọ á lè pọ̀ lẹ́yìn. Wọn ò ní kí ẹ ṣiṣẹ́ rere tó pọ̀, wọn ò ní kí ẹ ṣe nǹkan dáadáa tó pọ̀, wọn ní kí ẹ bímọ tó pọ̀. Wọ́n dẹ̀ tún sọ pé ọmọ tó bá lè bí ọmọ tó bá tún lè bí tó bá mọ̀ pé ò lè tọ́ má bí ó kàn ń takora wọn nínú kinní yẹn. Ọ̀gọ̀ ẹ̀sìn yẹn kàn ń takora wọn á sọ hembi tó bá wá yá ní ẹ lọ wá nǹkan kan kẹ́ fi túmọ̀ nǹkan kan. You can imagine. You can imagine. Kò sí nínú ẹ̀ wípé tó bá bọ́ sínú igbó gé igi méjì papọ̀, igi méjì tó bá gbé papọ̀ yẹn báyìí ló ṣe lè ṣe kò sí nínú ẹ̀. Kí ni ìwúlò ẹ̀ gangan, kí ni lájórí ẹ̀? Àwọn èèyàn kan ló fi wá kó wa lẹ́rù, àwọn èèyàn kan ló fi wá da àlámọ̀rí wa láàmú. Bọ̀ àsìkò ti tó, àsìkò yẹn òun la wà yìí. Tó bá ń gbọ́ gbégbégbé ẹ má jẹ́ kán gbé sẹ́yìn kùnlé wa. Ẹni tó bá sùn ẹ jẹ́ ká jí ẹni tó wà lẹ́gbẹ̀ẹ́ wa. Ẹni tó bá ń sùn lẹ́gbẹ̀ẹ́ ẹ jẹ́ ká máa jí wọn wípé àkókò ti tó. À ń láti lẹ plaster mọ́ ibi tán ti fọwọ́ rò wá lórí kó má bàa jì kọjá ibi tán èyí tán ṣe fún wa. Damage control yìí èyí tán ṣe yìí ó pọ̀ but ibi tó dé ló máa dé yìí. Tó bá ń lọ báyìí tá bá máa fi rí in another 10 years ìyàtọ̀ máa wà nílẹ̀ kóòtù òjìrì. Ẹ wo gbogbo àwọn boys nsìn. Àwọn boys nsìn ọ̀hún wá rí iṣẹ́ ìyàwó ṣe mọ́. Nǹkan tán wá ń ṣe ń sìn ni wípé oògùn olóró tán wá mu. Èèyàn kan ní tó bá fẹ́ ṣí bísínẹ́sì sílẹ̀ nsìn tó bá fẹ́ bísínẹ́sì tó wó wà lórí ẹ̀ gan wípé lọ sí ibi tó bá ti máa wo gbogbo àwọn ọmọ tán mú yẹn. You can imagine. Àwọn ọmọ tó mú yẹn ṣé bí gbogbo yẹn ló yẹ kẹ́sìn wá gbà kúrò. Ìlú òyìnbó tí ò lẹ́sìn ó ń gbà lọ́wọ́ wọn. Torí ó ń really monitor gbogbo ibi tó ń gbà wọlé báwo ló ṣe lè jẹ́ báwo ló ṣe lè gbà kí ni reason táwọn ọmọ ṣe lọ́mù kó gbogbo yẹn lọ́ máa yan èèyàn kan àwọn èèyàn kan méjì mẹ́ta tó máa dá section yẹn sílẹ̀ tó máa wò wípé òkè irú nǹkan báyìí rate wo ló fi ń lọ kí la lè ṣe sí ṣé torí pé welfare àwọn ò ṣe kíní ni ṣé àwọn single parent ni ṣé àwọn kíní kan ni ìlú tí ò ní Ọlọ́run nìyẹn ìlú tí ò ní gbàgbọ́ lórí nǹkan kan. Àwọn ń tún ilé ayé ṣe àwọn jókòó ń ba ilé ayé jẹ́ àwọn amukú mẹ́kọ̀ọ̀kan wọ́n tẹ̀ máa wà nínú ìlú òyìnbó yìí náà wọ́n máa ní nǹkan tá à ń sọ yìí wọ́n máa tún wọn takò wá bọ́ kò ṣe nǹkan kan náà torí àwa náà ti takò àwọn èèyàn kan náà rí nígbà kan náà nígbà tí a ṣì wà lójú ọ̀nà ọbẹ̀ tán ní ká má ronú jáde nínú nǹkan tí ìwé bá sọ bá a dúpẹ́ lọ́dọ̀ Ọlọ́run. Ẹ wò wá kó ètò ẹ jẹ́ ń dákẹ́kẹ́ lómi ìtú sọ̀rọ̀.
Ẹ ṣeun ìyá mi. Mr. Abudu ẹ sún kúrò lẹ́gbẹ̀ẹ́ Kùránì yín ṣé ń gbọ́ mi? Ẹ̀gbọ́n tẹ bá ti kúrò lẹ́gbẹ̀ẹ́ Kùránì ẹ rí i pé ẹ ra ìwọlé. tẹ́ ṣe ń wọlé la ṣe ń píkì yín ṣùgbọ́n torí àmọ́ tó ṣẹlẹ̀ tí kinní náà ò fi ṣe so ẹ kúrò lẹ́gbẹ̀ẹ́ Kùránì yín ẹ kúrò lẹ́gbẹ̀ẹ́ Kùránì yín ẹ bá sì fẹ́ sọ̀rọ̀ ẹ sọ̀rọ̀ bẹ́ẹ̀ tó lọ́pọlọ ni o.
Bàbá Abíọ́lá ẹ bẹ̀rẹ̀ prógráàmù yín ní wẹ́rà ẹ jọ ẹ ká máa gbádùn yín lọ.
bẹ́ẹ̀ bá fẹ́ sọ̀rọ̀ ẹ sọ̀rọ̀ bẹ́ẹ̀ tó lọ́pọlọ tẹ́ bá ṣẹ́ ìpè àṣepè fún bàbá rẹ tó bá ṣẹ́ ìpè.
A sọ̀rọ̀ mọ́ ó yá ẹ bẹ̀rẹ̀ prógráàmù yín ẹ ti fún wa láyè dáadáa Elédùmarè bless you ẹ ti fún wa láyè dáadáa láàárọ̀ yìí.
Mo kí gbogbo wa jàre mo sì kí ìyá mi ẹnìkan ní abúlé àwọn ọ̀pọ̀ àkáǹtì yín èṣù fún mi èṣù tó fún mi kíní lẹ gbé àkáǹtì yín sí now private so there is no way ilẹ̀ máa send the request ṣe gbọ́ èṣù tó fún mi. èṣù tó fún mi tẹ́ bá wish láti wá sókè àkáǹtì yín private ló wà so there is no way tá a fi máa ẹ̀yin lẹ máa send the request so that's it. So I send the request I'm picking. Okay.
Ẹ kojúmọ́. Mo kí ẹ̀dẹ̀kúṣẹ́ takuntakun. Ṣe rí lórí nǹkan tí ẹ̀yin bàbá àti ẹ̀yin ìyá wa ti ń sọ látàárọ̀, mo kàn fẹ́ contribute in a small way. And mo rántí wípé the last time tí mo ka lẹ́tà kan bí báyìí King Leopold tí bàbá Ọláwùnmí ti ń sọ̀rọ̀ nípa ẹ̀ látẹ̀kàn, mo rí pé a lot of our people have gone ahead láti lọ ka lẹ́tà yẹn. And òtítọ́ ọbẹ̀ ni wípé kò sí ẹni tí ó bá ṣì ń jẹ́ èèyàn tí ẹ̀jẹ̀ ọmọ ilẹ̀ káàárọ̀ oòjíire wà lára ẹ̀ lóòótọ́ tó bá ka lẹ́tà yẹn tí òyìn ronú. Lẹ́tà yẹn is an eye opener láti mọ iṣẹ́ tí àwọn Arab yìí àti the Western world generally tí wọ́n lò láti fi kó wa ní ẹrú. Mo fẹ́ ka ìwé kan lẹ́yìn. Ìwé tí mo fẹ́ kà yẹn mo ti dárúkọ ẹ̀ rí fún ẹnìkan. Wọ́n pe ìwé yẹn ní ṣé ẹni ilé bá wa mútu, wọ́n pe ìwé yẹn ní The Original Sources of the Quran, and ìwé yẹn wà ní Google. So gbogbo wa ẹ jọ̀ọ́ nítorí t'Ọlọ́run ẹ jẹ́ ká tẹ̀ sórí Google báyìí ká kọ The Original Sources of the Quran, its origin in pagan legends and mythology. Ẹni tó kọ ìwé yẹn ni W. St. Clair Tisdale lórúkọ ẹni tó kọ. Tí a bá ka ìwé yẹn, especially chapter 1 of the book, a lè má lọ jìnnà. Wọ́n pín ìwé yẹn sọ́nà méjì. Wọ́n pín àkọ́kọ́ ńbẹ̀, wọ́n sọ̀rọ̀ nípa bí wọ́n gba gbogbo nǹkan tó wà nínú Quran lénìí bó ṣe jẹ́ wípé lára àṣà àti ìṣe ilẹ̀ Lárúbáwá òun ni. Ìyẹn ló kọ́kọ́ fi chapter 1 discuss. So gbogbo nǹkan tí wọ́n ń ṣe ní àṣà àti ìṣe Lárúbáwá tó wá gbé wọnú Quran lénìí, tó gbé wọnú Islam lénìí, wọ́n yọ gbogbo example yẹn jáde nínú ìwé yẹn ní apá kìíní. Apá kejì ìwé yẹn wọ́n wá sọ àwọn ohun tí wọ́n lọ copy ní other places from other books tó gbé wọnú Quran àti inú ẹ̀sìn Islam. So a need láti jọ lọ kà, tí gbogbo wa bá ti jọ kà á mọ ohun tí ó ń ṣẹlẹ̀ gangan nípa ẹ̀sìn Islam. Mo fẹ́ ka pàtì kan bẹ̀ fún wa, tí ẹ bá mind mo lè ka díẹ̀ nínú ẹ̀ from page 1 to probably page 5 tẹ́ bá lè gbà mí láyè láti kà.
Ṣé
Yes.
mo lè rí ìwé King Leopold yẹn rà ní Amazon?
No, lẹ́tà ni King Leopold yẹn, ẹ tẹ̀ yẹn sí Google.
Okay, lẹ́tà lásán ni. Okay.
Lẹ́tà lásán ni.
Okay.
Ó ti yẹn lẹ́tà lásán nìyẹn. But ilé yìí náà ẹ lè tẹ̀ sórí Google náà, ẹ máa rí ń bẹ̀. The original sources of the Quran. Ẹ máa rí ń bẹ̀. Nínú ìwé yìí ẹ máa ka ìtumọ̀ nǹkan tó ń pè ní Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala yẹn. Ẹ máa kà bí Zaid bí ó ṣe jẹ́ pé òun ni wọ́n pè pé kó kó gbogbo ìwé tó wà nínú gbogbo àwọn àyà tó wà nínú Quran yẹn lè ní bá ṣe.
Ẹ má bínú brother mi, bàbá Bíálà, ẹ fún wọn láàyè kán lè bẹ̀rẹ̀ sí ní kà. Ẹ má yìí ti ṣàlàyé, bá mi fún wọn láàyè kán bẹ̀rẹ̀ sí ní máa kà.
Okay, tẹ́ bá fún mi láàyè máa kà. So gẹ́gẹ́ bí mo ṣe sọ, ẹni tó bá fẹ́ verify nǹkan tí mo fẹ́ máa kà, kó lọ download the original sources of the Quran, kó type ẹ̀ sí Google, ó máa gbéwé yẹn wá fún, á dẹ̀ download ẹ̀, òun náà lọ kà fún ara ẹ̀. It's just about 80 something pages. Ó bẹ̀rẹ̀, ó ní, there is much truth in the dictum of the ancient Greek philosopher Democritus that nothing has sprung from nothing. Nothing has sprung from nothing. Islam, as the religion of Muhammad is called by its adherents, is certainly no exception to that rule. The important part which that religion has played for good or ill in the history of the human race, and the widespread influence it still continues to exert in many Eastern lands, render an investigation of its origin of interest to everyone who, whether from a religious, a historical, or a merely philosophical standpoint, desires to investigate one of the most important movements in the history of the human race. The labors of such writers as Sprenger and Will in Germany and of Sir W. Mill in England enable us to know all that need be known regarding the life and character of Muhammad and the history of the Mohammedan world. With these matters, therefore, it is unnecessary for us here to deal. It is also a matter of common knowledge that Mohammedans profess to derive their religion directly from Muhammad himself. They assert that he was the last and greatest of the prophets, and that their faith rests upon the Quran, which contains the divine revelation which he was commissioned to deliver to men. In addition to this, very attached great importance to the authoritative traditions, hadith, handed down orally from the lips of their prophet through a long series of his followers, and only in much later times committed to writing. These two, the Quran and the traditions, taken together, form the foundation of Islam. The Quran and the tradition, that is the Hadith, form the foundation of Islam. Much importance is also attached to early commentators on the Quran and to the deductions from it made by early jurists and doctors of the law. But in our investigation of the origin of Islamic beliefs and practices, we are but little concerned with this latter, except insofar as they throw light on what is really believed by Muslims. Even the traditions themselves
play but a subordinate part in our inquiry, since their authority, from the European point of view, at least, is so very uncertain. Different sects of Mohammedans, too, accept different collections of tradition. And even the collectors of these traditions themselves confess that many of those which they record are of doubtful accuracy. As the traditions deal for the most part, moreover, with the sayings and doings of Muhammad, we shall have occasion to refer to them only in cases in which they amplify or explain the teaching of the Quran on certain points. The latter book contains some obscure and difficult passages, the meaning of which requires to be explained by reference to tradition. For example, the 50th surah or chapter of the Quran is entitled Kaf and is denoted by the Arabic letter of that name. It is not possible to be quite certain what is meant by this until we consult the traditions, which tell us what it is to be believed concerning Mount Kaf, to which the name of the surah is held to contain a reference. Again, when in the surah entitled The Night Journey, surah 17, we read in the first verse the words, "Praise be unto him who caused his servant to journey by night from the sacred mosques to the more distant mosques." We must naturally refer to tradition to understand the meaning of the verse. We thus learn all that the ulama of Islam know for certain regarding the journey in question, generally styled the ascent Miraj of Muhammad. In dealing with the tenet and religious right of Muslims, we shall make it our rule not to concern ourselves with any doctrine or practice which is not implicitly or explicitly taught or enjoined in the Quran itself, or in those traditions which are universally accepted by all Muhammadan sects, with the partial exceptions of the neo-Muhammadans of India, who are not recognized as Muslims by the rest of the Muhammadan world. It may be well to point out the fact that though a measure of inspiration is supposed to belong to the genuine and authoritative traditions, yet their authority is very different from that of the Quran, to which, however, they stand in the second place. This is indicated by the difference in the manner of speaking of these different forms of revelation. The Quran is styled recited revelation, and the traditions unrecited revelation, because the Quran and it alone is considered to constitute the very utterance of God himself. Hence, the rule has been laid down that any tradition, however well authenticated it may be, that is clearly contrary to a single verse of the Quran must be rejected. One, the traditions unrecited revelation, because the Quran and it alone is considered to constitute the very utterance of God himself. Hence, the rule has been laid down that any tradition, however well authenticated it may be, that is clearly contrary to a single verse of the Quran must be rejected. This rule is an important one for us to observe in dealing with the matters of Mohammedan belief. It renders it unnecessary for us to involve ourselves in the mazes of the labyrinth of the controversies as to which traditions are genuine, which doubtful, and which unreliable. It is sufficient for our present purpose to note that in their written form, traditions are considerably later in date than the text of the Quran. Regarding the history of the latter, accepted as it is by all Muslims everywhere, we have fairly full and satisfactory information. Some of the surahs may have been written down on many materials that came to hand by some of Muhammadan's amanuenses, of which we are told he had a considerable number as soon as they were first recited by him. The knowledge of writing was not uncommon in his time among the Meccans, for we are informed that some of the latter, when taken captive, obtained their liberty by instructing certain of the people of Medina in the heart. So what they are trying to say here is, àwọn èèyàn tí wọ́n kó lẹ́rú yẹn nígbà yẹn, for them to regain their freedom, part of the conditions given to them is wọ́n ní láti há gbogbo àwọn àyà tí Muhammad náà ń gbà yẹn sí orí as part of the conditions for their freedom. And when taken captive, obtained their liberty by instructing certain of the people of Medina in the heart. Whether written down at once or not, they were instantly committed to memory and were recited at the time of public worship and on other occasions. During Muhammad's lifetime, frequent reference was made to him when any doubt arose with regard to the proper wording of a passage. Tradition mentions certain surahs or verses which were preserved in a written form in the houses of Muhammad's wives during his life, and we are even told that some verses thus written were lost and never recovered. From time to time, the Prophet directed newly revealed verses to be inserted in certain surahs, which must therefore have already assumed form and have even received the names which they still retain. There seems, however, to have been no fixed order prescribed in which these surahs should be arranged. Each formed a more or less independent whole. The task of learning the surahs by heart was not only a labor of love to Muhammad's devoted followers, but it also became a source of dignity and profit, since not only were those who could recite the largest number of verses entitled in very early times to assume the position of imam, or leader in public worship, but they were also considered to have a claim to a larger share of the spoils than were other Muslims. So, láyé Muhammad tó ń sọ ìgbà yẹn tó wà láyé, what they were doing was bí bàbá yẹn bá ṣe ń gba àwọn àyà yẹn wá, wọ́n ní àwọn èèyàn kan lá among his followers tó yẹ pé wọ́n há kíní yẹn sórí. So there are a lot of benefits fáwọn tó ń há. One of them òun ni wípé ẹni tó bá mọ the highest number of surahs, àwọn ló máa fi ń jẹ imam, àkọ́kọ́ lọ́mọ yẹn. So ìyẹn ló encourage many people láti máa há kíní yẹn sórí. Àkọ́kọ́ ẹ̀kejì bẹ́ẹ̀ ni wípé another benefit ni pé lára àwọn tó bá mọ the highest number of surahs yẹn, ara wọn ni tó bá ti lọ ja ogun dé, gbogbo nǹkan àwọn èèyàn tí wọ́n ti jí kó wá, àwọn ni wọ́n máa ń ní larger percentage jù. So that's another benefit of àwọn tó ń pè ní afisu ní ìgbà yẹn nìyẹn. Ẹ jẹ́ kí n continue. Only, yes, larger spoils than were other Muslims. About a year after Muhammad's death, interesting you. About a year after Muhammad's death, as we learn from Bukhari, the Quran was first put together in a collected whole. It was after a year tí Muhammad kú ni wọ́n tó ní kí wọ́n tó kọ Quran tá ṣe ń rí báyìí. It was put together in a collected whole. This was done by Zaid ibn Thabit, one of Muhammad's friends and amanuenses, at the command of Abu Bakr. So Abu Bakr ló ní kí wọ́n kó Quran jọ bá ṣe nílé ni. And ẹni tó fún ní tax yẹn òun ni Zaid. Ẹ máa gbọ́ o. The reason for these steps was that Umar ibn Khattab, perceiving that many of the reciters of the Quran had fallen in the fatal battle of Yamama, saw reasons to fear lest the revelation should thus in whole or in part be lost. so wọn ogun lára ogun kan tó jà most of the people tó ti há Quran yẹn sórí ńgbà yẹn wọ́n ti kú so the fear that táwọn people bá tún lọ kú tán ó ṣeé ṣe kí gbogbo àyà yẹn kó gbàgbé ẹ̀ òun ló bí tó fi kó Quran jọ ní Quran tá ṣe nílé ní tí oníkúlùkù ní ẹ̀ kọ̀ọ̀kan ẹ̀ òun tó bí nìyẹn so that kí àwọn èèyàn àwọn tí ó ti há kíní yẹn sórí kó má bàa kú tó bá ti wá kú tán kó má di pé wọ́n máa wá gbé gbogbo verses yẹn wọ́n máa gbé gbogbo ẹ̀ lọ òun ló bí tó fi document ẹ̀ ní Quran tààrí lè ní ẹni tó dẹ̀ gbé iṣẹ́ yẹn fún òun ni Zaid ibn Thabit wọ́n dẹ̀ jẹ́ ká mọ̀ nínú ìwé yìí wípé ọ̀rẹ́ Muhammad ni. ó kò sí ìdó ní the reason ó ti ṣàlàyé bẹ̀yẹn some reasons to fairness wọ́n ní he therefore strongly urged the Khalifa to give orders that the scattered surahs should be collected together and preserved in an authoritative written form. Zaid at first felt great reluctance to do what the Prophet himself had not thought fit to do. But he at last yielded to the command of the Khalifa. Ní ayé Muhammad, wọn kó Quran kankan jọ gbogbo àwọn verses orí àwọn èèyàn ni ó wà. Orí àwọn èèyàn ló wà káàkiri. Wọn kó jọ gbogbo aládẹmọ lẹ́ni wípé one of the challenges tí ẹ̀sìn Islam ní ni wípé kò allow fún innovation. Ó believe wípé bó bá ṣe wà láti ayé Muhammad bẹ́ẹ̀ náà ló ṣiṣẹ́ máa wà di ẹ̀sìn. So ìgbà tí wọ́n pe Zaid pé kí ó wá kó àwọn àyà yẹn jọ ní odidi kó lè fi di Quran, Zaid ó kò kọ́kọ́ fi taratara gbà pé òun fẹ́ ṣe nítorí wípé láyé Muhammad kò sí àkọsílẹ̀ wípé ẹ kó kíní jọ ní Quran bí a ṣe nílé ni kò sí bẹ́ẹ̀. So tẹ́orí ẹ̀ tẹ́ bá lọ ka ìwé fọ́dà ẹ máa rí wípé àwọn àáfàá kan wà tó yẹ wípé wọ́n rí kíkó Quran jọ bí a ṣe nílé ní as bidà nítorí wípé ànábì fún ara ẹ̀ kò fọwọ́ sí. Wọ́n introduce ẹni that idea of putting the Quran together in the current form tó wà lẹ́ni àwọn èèyàn kan ló gbé Muhammad had no hand in it. Mo fẹ́ yẹ kí adìbẹ̀ yẹn mú lára àwọn nǹkan tá a ní láti mọ̀ nìyẹn. So ẹ ti máa rí pé àwọn kan ló kó jọ but it's getting more interesting. Ó wá ní that the scattered surahs should be collected together and preserved in an authoritative written form. Zaid at first felt reluctance to do what the Prophet himself had not thought fit to do, but he at last yielded to the command of the Khalifa. The story as told in his own words runs thus. Abu Bakr said to me, "Thou art a learned young man." Zaid, "we do not distrust thee, and thou was not wound to write out the divine revelation of God. Seek not the Quran therefore and collect it, if they had imposed upon me the duty of moving a mountain. It would not have weighed more heavily upon me than what he commanded me to do in the way of collecting the Quran." Abu Bakr did not desist from urging me to collect it until God enlightened my breast to perceive what Umar and Abu Bakr's own breast had made clear to the latter. Accordingly, I searched out the whole of the Quran from leafless palm branches. I searched out for the whole of the Quran from leafless palm branches and from white stones and from the breast of men. Until I found the conclusion of Surah Tawbah with Ibn Kuzamai the Ansari. I found it not with anyone else. So ibi tó kọ àwọn àyà yẹn sí nígbà yẹn nìyẹn. Nígbà tó ní bàbá ń gba àwọn àyà yẹn wá. Àyà àwọn ọkùnrin ó pẹ̀lú ibi tó kọ sí. Wọ́n lọ kọ sínú white stone. Wọ́n náà lọ́dẹ̀ kọ sínú àwọn leafless palm branches. Bó jẹ́ ká máa bá lọ. From the phrase to collect the Quran, it is evident, it is evident that the book had not previously been formed into one united whole. I think every one of us know that by now. His reverence for his master would naturally prevent Zaid from either adding to or omitting anything from the surahs which were recited to him by many persons from memory, and in some cases found in writing upon the various writing materials, which were then in use. The fact that certain circumstances derogatory to Muhammad's claim to be a divinely commissioned prophet are still to be found in the Quran is a conclusive proof of the scrupulous accuracy with which Zaid discharged the task entrusted to him. Nor would it have been possible at that time to have in any way tampered with the text. Within a year or two, he had completed the work and had written down all the surahs. Ọdún méjì péré ni wọ́n fi kó gbogbo Quran tá a ní jọ lénìí. Within 2 years, I said you can find all I'm reading from the original sources of the Quran. So nobody should come and question me. Ibi tó wà ńbẹ̀ nìyẹn. So we are reading, and ayé tá wà ní information age lawa. So only the fact that certain nor would it have been possible that at that time to have in any way tampered with the text. Within a year or two, he had completed the work and had written down all the surahs, each apparently on a separate sheet. Each apparently on a separate sheet. It seems that there is some reason to believe that the present arrangement of the surahs dates from that time. On what system it rests is hard to say, except that the Surah Fatiha was placed first as a sort of introduction to the book, partly no doubt because it was even then universally used as a prayer. And God did not remove Surah Fatiha as ayah koko, because we can review. But all over the world, in the whole of Arab world, in long one then lo as a prayer, as the first one. Awani was placed first as a sort of introduction to the book, partly no doubt because it was even universally used as a prayer, and so was better known than any other. The other surahs were arranged, on the principle of putting the longest first. Thus, the shortest come at the end of the book. So, lẹ́yìn Fatiha, wọ́n wá follow how long each verse is. So, àwọn verse tó kọ́kọ́ gùn jù, àwọn yẹn lọ kó síwájú. Àwọn èyí tó short jù, àwọn yẹn lẹ máa rí ní ìgbẹ̀yìngbẹ̀yìn. Torí ẹ̀ lẹ ti máa rí pé lẹ́yìn Fatiha, the next one náà ni Surah Al-Baqarah, which is the Surah 2. Òun ló gùn jù. The next one, òun ni Surah 3. The next one, òun ni Surah 4. Títí tó fi kó gbogbo àwọn ètò kéré sẹ́yìn. So that's the order tó fi arrange àwọn kìíní yẹn. Àwọn used as prayer were arranged on the position of putting the longest first. Thus, the shortest enables us to know in what order and on what occasion most of the surahs and in certain instances some of their verses were revealed. But in our present inquiry, it is not necessary to deal with this matter at all fully. Important as it doubtless is for the study of the steady development of the faith as it gradually took shape in Muhammad's own mind. Zaid, on the conclusion of his work, handed over the manuscript written doubtless in the so-called Kufic character to Ibn Bakri. The latter preserved it. So Bakri Gogon only preserved it carefully until his death, when it was committed to the custody of Umar from Zaid to Abu Bakr, and then on Umar. After whose decease to Umar, Bakr to Umar. After whose decease, it passed into the charge of Hafsa, his daughter, one of Muhammad's widows. Copies of separate surahs were afterwards made either from this one, Shetimbo, from this one, from the original authorities which Zaid had used. Errors, or at least variations, gradually crept into the text of the Quran as it was recited, and possibly also into the fragmentary copies. Abu Bakr does not seem to have caused authoritative transcript of the single manuscript which Zaid had written to be made, and hence it could not counteract the very natural tendency to alteration, mostly or wholly unintentional, to which the Quran, like every other work handed down orally, was liable. There were different dialects of Arabic. There were different dialects of Arabic then in use, and there must have been a tendency in the first place to explain certain words, and in the second to permit these dialectic paraphrases to find an entrance into the recited verses. This caused no little confusion and perplexity in the minds of pious Muslims. At last, Uthman, when engaged in the task of conquering Armenia and Azerbaijan, was warned by Hud-Hi-Fi Ibn Yaman of the danger which there was lest the original should be very seriously corrupted in this way. Bukhari tells us that Hud-Hi said to Uthman, commander of Thai faithful, restrain these people before they differ amongst themselves about the book, as much as the Jews and the Christians do. The Khalifa, therefore, sent to bid Hafsa forward to him the original manuscript to be copied, promising to return it to her when this had been done. He then commissioned Zaid, in conjunction with 3 members of Muhammad's own tribe, the Quraysh, to produce a recension of the work. Ṣé mo nǹkan tó ṣẹlẹ̀ mí báyìí? Lẹ́yìn tí Zaid ti compile Quran tán, so wọ́n wá rí wípé nígbà táwọn èèyàn bẹ̀rẹ̀ sí ń kà, wọ́n rí variations and some errors nínú nǹkan táwọn èèyàn kà, wípé kò consistent dáadáa across the Arab world. So ti wá ń dá wàhálà alẹ́ láàrin wọn níbẹ̀. Wọ́n lọ fi wá ní Uthman, ìyẹn ni tó gba àṣẹ nígbà yẹn, ìyẹn wá fi ní òkè, a ní láti tún review kìíní again, wọ́n tún wá fi gbé, wọ́n fi wá set up another committee to contain Zaid and 3 members of the Muhammad's own tribe, the Quraysh, to produce a recension of the work. So ṣe Quran tó wà lọ́wọ́ èmi àti yín lè ní àwọn mẹ́rin ló ṣiṣẹ́ lé lórí. Àkọ́kọ́ ńbẹ̀ ni Zaid àti 3 members of the Muhammad's family. Àwọn tó ṣiṣẹ́ lé lórí nìyẹn, based on what we are reading from this book. At least this is what his language seems to imply. For he said to the 3 Qurayshites, whenever you differ, you and Zaid ibn Thabit, in reference to any part of the Quran, then write it in the dialect of the Quraysh. Ṣé mo pé a ti kà síwájú láìkan pé ilẹ̀ Arabic wọ́n ní different dialect, gẹ́gẹ́ bí a ṣe ní Yorùbá. Yorùbá Ẹ̀gbá wà, Yorùbá Ìjẹ̀bú wà, Yorùbá Ọ̀yọ́ wà, bẹ́ẹ̀ lọ. Àwọn náà ní tiwọn náà bẹ́ẹ̀. So ohun tó wá instruction tí Uthman wá ń fún wọn bí ni wípé ẹni ìgbàkigbà tẹ́ ẹ bá ti disagree lára yín, bóyá bí àwọn Ìjẹ̀bú ṣe ń pe nǹkan kan wọn ó yàtọ̀ sí bí ti Abẹ́òkúta ṣe ń pe tiwọn, bí tẹ̀gbá ṣe ń pe tiwọn, bí tọ̀yọ́ ṣe ń pe tiwọn. The only way tẹ́ fi máa resolve láàrin ni pé bí àwọn Quraysh ìran tí Muhammad bọ́ bá ṣe ń pè òun ni kẹ́ ṣe kọ sílẹ̀. I think wọ́n ṣe yẹn láti fi honor Muhammad. So òun ló fi dàbẹ́ ni wípé Quran lè ní tẹ́ ń rí yẹn táwọn èèyàn ń kà, ohun tó fi ń kà ohun àwọn Quraysh ni. Gbogbo ọ̀rọ̀ tẹ́ ń rí bẹ̀ Quraysh Arabic ni. Then ó wá sọ síbẹ̀, for most part, yet the words we have quoted prove that certain alterations must have been made, though no doubt in good faith, and principally to preserve the purity of the Meccan dialect of the book. Another proof that some change was made is afforded by the statement that on this occasion, Zaid recollected a verse which was not in the first copy. Ṣé ti gbọ́ bẹ́ẹ̀? Èyí tí Zaid kọ́kọ́ ṣe fún ara ẹ̀, ó gbàgbé àwọn verses kọ̀ọ̀kan. So lẹ́yìn tí wọ́n wá set up second committee yẹn láti tún review nǹkan tí Zaid ti gbé wá, ní Zaid jẹ́jẹ̀ tí wọ́n á rántí wípé ẹ mà ní sùúrù, mo gbàgbé verse kan, ẹ máa gbọ́. Was made is afforded by the statement that on this occasion, Zaid collected a verse which was not in the first copy and which he had himself had Muhammad recite. Ṣé ń gbọ́? Ó máa ń gbọ́ tí Muhammad máa ń recite verse yẹn, but nígbà tó ń kọ́kọ́ produce the first copy, ó gbàgbé láti fi verse yẹn sí inú ẹ̀. But nígbà tí wọ́n wá set up second, ó ṣe wá rántí verse yẹn padà. So ẹ wá gbọ́, ó wá ní, he did not, however, venture to insert it merely on his own authority, but searched until he found another man who could recite it from memory. When this was done, the verse was entered in Suratul Azab. Then Uthman returned the sheet to Hafsa and sent to every region an exemplar of the Quran. Besides this, he commanded that it should be burned. So ibi tá a dé ní ibi báyìí ni wí. Based on our woman the compilation of the Quran followed a meticulous process, but it doesn't show the deficiency in human capacity to remember and document things, which is a lie. And if you see critics of the Quran, against it, we pay definitely the Quran as we have it today, okay, is not detailed. Part of it might have been yanked off, okay, and part of it either deliberately or otherwise. So that's the point T established from reading this particular book up to page 4 of it. It's long. If you want me to still continue, I will continue. Mo kàn ní láti take permission yẹn. Ẹ bá fẹ́ kí n continue, ẹ jọ̀ọ́ ẹ tell kí n continue àbí kí a lọ continue reading yẹn. Bàbá bí àlà mo béèrè lọ́wọ́ yín ni sà.
Okay, let me continue.
Okay, sir. Thank you. So, as I was reading, this last proceeding may seem to us arbitrary, but it has succeeded in preserving the text of the Quran from that day to this in practically one and the same form in Muhammadan lands. Even after copy, the only one which in many important respects differed from the revised edition after the execution of Uthman's command was on that account burned in Marwan's time. The very few differences of reading which delight such as revealed in various copies of the Quran now extant consist almost wholly in the position of the dot, which distinguish from one another of the letters, and these letters have no such diacritical marks of the old Kufic prophet We are therefore led to the conclusion that we still have the Quran as Muhammad left it, and hence we may with almost perfect certainty as to the correctness of the text proceed to study the book in order to ascertain what he taught and whence he derived the various statements and doctrines which contained in the Quran and explained and amplified in the traditions constitute the religion of Islam. In discussing the origin of Islam, it is right in the first place to consider the statement on the subject which are made by the leading teachers and doctors of the law among the Muslims, and to inquire whether their opinions on this point are supported by the assertions of the Quran itself. By the assertion of the Quran itself. By the assertion of the Quran itself. Okay. In discussing the origin of Islam, it is right in the first place to consider the statement on the subject which are made by the leading teachers and doctors of the law among the Muslims, and to inquire whether their opinions on this point are supported by the assertions of the Quran itself. We shall then proceed to investigate the question whether it is possible for us to accept this statement as the correct explanation of the fact of the case. It is well known that the ulama of Islam assert and have always asserted that the Quran is the word of God himself, which the Most High caused to be inscribed upon the preserved tablet in heaven long ages before the creation of the world. Although in the reign of Khalifa Mamun and afterwards, there occurred many fierce disputes between those who held that the Quran was eternal and those who believed that it was created, into which discussion it is not necessary for us to enter. Yet all Muslims have always agreed in holding that the book is not the composition of Muhammad or of any other human author. On the contrary, they believe that it is entirely the work of God himself, and that Muhammad was merely his messenger in this respect, whose duty it was to receive the divine book and communicate it to men. Tradition tells us that the book was brought down on one particular night from the highest to the lowest heaven by the archangel Gabriel, who afterwards gradually conveyed the verses and chapters to the mind and tongue of Muhammad. Accordingly, there is nothing whatever that is human about the Quran. It is wholly and entirely of divine origin. That our readers may perceive that this is really the orthodox Muhammadan view of the matter, we here quote two passages on the subject from the well-known Arabic writer Ibn Khaldun. Know therefore, he says, that the Quran descended in the language of the Arabs and in accordance with the style of eloquence, and all of them understood it and knew its various meanings in its several parts and in their revelation to one another. And it continued to descend section by section and in groups of verses in order to explain the doctrine of the unity of God and religious obligations, according as circumstances required. Some of these verses consist of articles of faith, and some of them of commandment from the regulations of conduct. In another passage, the same writer says, all this is a proof to thee that amid the divine books, it was verily the Quran with which our prophet was inspired in the form of something recited just as it is in its words and its sections. Whereas the law and the gospel on the other hand, and all other heavenly books were revealed to the prophet in the form of ideas, which they were in a state of ecstasy, and they explained them after their return to man's ordinary condition in their own customary language, and therefore there is nothing miraculous in them. That is to say, the ulama of Islam, while acknowledging that other prophets came before Muhammad and brought divine messages to man, yet hold that the inspiration of the Quran differs not only in degree but in kind from that to which other sacred books, as for instance the law and the gospel, are due.
Ọdún ṣáwọn ará Saudi ṣẹ̀yìn ni kí ló dé tẹ́ fẹ́ báyé wọn jẹ́ pátápátá báyìí.
Mi ò báyé wọn jẹ́, mo kàn fẹ́ jẹ́ kí àwọn èèyàn
ìdílé Kúrẹ́ṣì ṣẹ̀yìn ni.
So this is what we just need to invest our time and money on. Let us all read. There are many books out there. So I need like my anybody discuss anything that will expose everything. Because move date might stop. Then we can go and continue our further readings if you want to. Very interesting narration. Only in the form of reciting it as okay, where did I stop? Okay. Owani in some way, but the language which after all used to express these conceptions was their own. No, I missed that part. Only yet odd that the inspiration of the Quran differs not only in degree, but in kind from that to which other sacred books, as for instance, the law and the gospel, are due. The writers of this book received certain ideas from God in some way, but the language which they afterwards used to express these conceptions was their own and cannot therefore claim any origin higher than the human. Muhammad, on the contrary, had Gabriel reading aloud. Muhammad, on the contrary, had Gabriel reading aloud, reciting in a voice distinctly audible to him every single word of the Quran, according as it was inscribed on the preserved tablet in heaven. So, at heaven ni tablet yẹn wà lọ ti ń ka ni Gabriel ti ń ka kíní yẹn sí Muhammad tí Muhammad náà tó ti ń sọ fún. Arabic is held to be the language of heaven. Only is held to be the.
Ṣé kìí ṣe pé àwọn Arábù ti colonize heaven báyìí?
Only Arabic is held to be the language of heaven and of the angels. Only is the language of heaven and of the angels. And earth, in the Quran, we have the very words as well as the word of God Himself. Words, metaphors, reflections, narratives, style are all holy and entirely of divine origin. There can be no doubt that this view is in complete accordance with the statement of the Quran itself. The divine original is style, the mother of the book. Surah 13, that's Arab 39, verse 39. Again and again, in varied form, such assertions as the following to be found in the Quran. Nay, it is a glorious Quran in the preserved tablet. Surah 85. The word Quran itself denotes this, meaning that which is recited. That is the meaning of Quran, meaning that which is recited. Unti anka ni wọ́n pè ní Quran. Kò ń ṣe ìwé Ọlọ́run kankan. The meaning of Quran is that which is recited. That which is recited. In another place, we read that God Most High commanded Muhammad to say, God is witness between me and you. And this Quran was given me by inspiration, that I might warn you herewith. Surah 6. So also in Surah 97, God is presented as saying, with reference to the Quran, verily, we caused it to descend on the night of power. Such quotations might be almost indefinitely multiplied. The Muhammadan explanation of the origin of Islam, therefore, based as it ultimately is upon the Quran, is that the sole source and fountainhead of the religion of Islam is God Himself. It had accordingly no human source and no single part, or it was derived directly or indirectly from earlier revelations or from other religions, though it was revealed to confirm the law and the gospel and claims to agree with their original and uncorrupted teaching. European readers hardly require proof that such an opinion of the origin of Islam in general and of the Quran in particular is tenable. Those who cannot read the book in the original Arabic are enabled to examine its teachings by consulting the various translations of the Quran, which have been made into various European languages, the best known of the English versions being those by Sir, Rodwell, and Palmer. To an intelligent mind, the assertion which we are considering refutes itself. Moreover, the morality of the Quran makes it impossible for us to doubt that it is Muhammad's own composition. It is Muhammad's own composition. When the surahs are arranged in the chronological order of their composition and compared with the event in Muhammad's life, we see that there is much truth in the statement that the passages were not, as Muslims say, revealed, but composed from time to time as occasion required to sanction each departure made by Muhammad. Made by Muhammad. The Quran is a faithful mirror of the life and character of its author.
ẹ má bá wa tẹ́ bá ti kà á dé àwọn àwa kan wà gbóyìnbó ìjọ ẹ má bá ṣe ní Yorùbá díẹ̀ má máa ju Yorùbá sí láàrin. Bàbá àgbà tí ẹ káàbọ̀ àjọ a ní pòfẹ́sọ̀ tó ń mọ̀ nípa Quran dáadáa àwọn ni bàbá wa àgbà tí pòfẹ́sọ̀ ni wọ́n so tẹ́ bá ṣe tán.
Àgbà tí máa need láti gbé ìwé jáde bí èmi ṣe gbé ìwé jáde ni kò ń ṣe àgbà tí ò ní gbé mi sọ̀rọ̀ èmi ò kí ń bá irú àwọn báyìí sọ̀rọ̀. You have to read. You have to show the source. It's not from your own brain. I don't engage in source. So you have to read. So I won't hold it on you.
Ẹ má bínú sir. Ṣé ẹ ti lè ní tẹ́tọ́ pé ẹ ń bá rú àwọn èèyàn báyìí sọ̀rọ̀ àmì
mo ti máa ń follow àgbàtì náà èmi ò ń ṣe àjòjì níbí báyìí mo ti máa ń rí debate yín. So I'm not too impressed. You are not the type that talk from books. I want people who can engage. Okay, we'll read it together just like I'm reading. Then whatever comment you want to make, you can make it.
Engineer man ni bàbá mi, engineer man ni bàbá àgbà tí
professor. No, I don't. Look, it took me time, energy to invest. I invest my time and energy to read this book. Okay. And then if I'm now engaging somebody who is now going to be using Agbile, I don't do that. So I don't do that. I'm very sorry. I don't mean to sound insulting, Mr. Agbati. I'm very sorry. I don't. No.
It's already sounding insulting though. But nevertheless, that one aside. I
apologize.
No problem with that. Nevertheless, I'm also following as you are reading.
Let me finish. You will make your comment.
Continue, bàbá mi, continue. Jẹ́ má bá fi Yorùbá sí láàrin dé àwa kan ò gbé èbò.
Okay. So, so I stopped there. The Quran is a faithful mirror of the life and character of its author. Simply means Muhammad wọ́n lòun ló kọ Quran and gbogbo nǹkan tẹ̀dẹ̀ rí nínú Quran yẹn ó jẹ́ ìtàn àti ìgbésí ilé ayé Muhammad. Gbogbo nǹkan tó ṣẹlẹ̀ sí nílé ayé ẹ̀ lóde ilé ayé ẹ̀ òun ló kójọ sí inú Quran. It has nothing to do with Ọlọ́run kan bá sọ̀rọ̀. Tẹ́ bá lọ ka ìwé ìdáadáa ẹ máa rẹ́rìn ojú yín máa dẹ̀ là. And there are many other books like that out there. All we just need to do is invest our money, invest our time, and read. So only when this when surahs are arranged in chronological order of their composition and compared with the event in Muhammad's life, we see that there is much truth in the statement that the passages were not, as Muslims say, revealed it. So also only it breathed the air of the desert. Only it breathes the air of the desert. It enables us to hear the battle cries of the prophet's followers as they rush to the onset. It reveals the working of Muhammad's own mind and shows the gradual declension of his character as he passed from the earnest and sincere, though visionary enthusiast, into the conscious impostor and open sensualist. All this is clear to every unprejudiced reader of the book. Tẹ́ ẹ bá lọ kà ẹ máa rí pé gbogbo tó wà nínú ìwé yẹn, gbogbo àpèjúwe tó ń mú jáde nínú ìwé yẹn, ẹ máa rí wípé kò ju agbègbè desert yẹn lọ. Gbogbo kò sí nǹkan ibẹ̀ ní agbègbè ibẹ̀ yẹn ni gbogbo ẹ̀ sì wà. Torí ẹ̀ ní ẹ lè rí any fruit tí kò wù ní Arab land convention nínú Quran. Ẹ lè bá oúnjẹ tí wọn kì í jẹ ní Arab land nínú Quran. Ẹ lè bá. It must be something tó ń jẹ tó ń mu ní ibẹ̀. So ó reflect life wẹ̀, ó reflect ìgbésí ayé ẹ̀. Òun ni ìwé là ń kà ọ́, so I'm not the one that wrote this. So
Can be the question, sir?
No, not yet. Any sọ̀rọ̀. Ẹ jẹ́ ká máa bá lọ náà. Only at the same time, the question presents itself. Where did Muhammad borrow the ideas, narratives, and the precepts which he has incorporated into the religion which he founded? Which of these were his own invention? Which of them were derived from earlier systems? To what extent had he the means of learning the teachings of those he professed other religions than his own? If he borrowed from other systems, what particular part of the Quran, what religious rites, what conceptions and narratives, what injunctions can be traced to each such source? How much of the result is due to the character of Muhammad himself and to the circumstances of his time? Such are some of the problems which it is our object in this book to solve as clearly and as subtly as we may. From whatever point of view we will regard the inquiry. Ancestor Yoruba mi pa mic ni. We may regard the inquiry, it can hardly fail to be interesting. Such an investigation, if honestly pursued, will enable a Muslim to appreciate his ancestral faith as its real and proper value. The student of comparative religion will learn from such an analysis how one ethnic faith arose in recent historical times, though if he is wise, he will not be led to formulate rash conclusions from a single instance. The Christian missionary may so find it important to follow our investigations in order to discover in them a new method of leading Muslim inquirers to perceive the untenable nature of their position. Setting aside, however, all such consideration, we proceed to inquire what the original sources of the Quran really were. In order to be able to understand the gradual development of Islam in Muhammad's mind and to discover from what sources he borrowed, it is necessary to, in the first place, to consider the religion, opinions, and observance of the Arabs among whom he was born and bred. The inhabitants of Arabia were not all of one race. The inhabitants of Arabia were not all of one race. Arabic writers, in general, divide them into pure and original Arabs, and those who, coming from other countries, had become Arabized. Àwọn Arabized yẹn làwọn ilẹ̀ wa tó ti gbà ní Northern Africa, àwọn Libya and co, àwọn Egypt and co, àwọn bẹ́ẹ̀ lọ, Tunisia, Algeria,
Morocco.
àwọn ìlú bẹ́ẹ̀ yẹn ni Arabized yẹn. So we have the pure and the original Arabs and the Arabized Arabs. Ẹ̀jẹ̀ ló bẹ́ẹ̀.
Ẹ̀sìn wa náà báyìí.
Òun ló fẹ́ ṣe fún àwa náà.
Ó tún fẹ́ araba, ẹ ti fail.
Òun náà ló fẹ́ ṣe fún wa.
Ẹ̀yin Muhammadan, ẹ ti fail. Agenda yín ti fail. Professor Akíní, ẹ ti fail.
Emirates and certain other tribes present us with traces of affinity with the Ethiopians. With the Ethiopians, and the account which The cuneiform tablet give us of early conquest of part of the country by the Sumerian kings of Babylonia, coupled with the fact that the early Egyptian kings for a time had sway over the Sinaitic Peninsula and possibly over district in the north and west, leave no doubt that there were, even in early times, Hamitic and other foreign elements in the population. In the days of the great Kushite monarchies in Babylonia, not only must the people of Arabia have been to some degree affected by their civilization, their trade, and their ideas in general, but the influence of the religion also of these foreign nations must have been considerable. Early Arabian inscriptions prove this, containing as they do the names of such deities as Sin, one of their gods in here, one of the Shigidi Nibe, Sin, the moon god, and Antata, Asore, Easter god, worshipped by the Sumerians in the first place, and afterwards by the Semite of Babylonia, Assyria, and Syria, another part of Arabia. Yet, though, there was doubtless a Hamitic element in the population. The great mass of the people from very early times has always been Semitic in origin. Semitic in origin, and also in language, character, and religion. Ibn Ishmael, Tabari, and other Arabian historians have preserved ancient traditions of certain Arab tribes, particularly those of the northern and western part of the country. These agree with the statement of the Pentateuch and give every reason to believe that most of these tribes could trace their descent to Joktan or Katan, or to Ishmael, or to Abraham's children by Keturah. Even those who had no real right to claim such lineage did so in Muhammad's time. The Quraysh, his own tribe, claimed descent from Abraham through Ishmael. Although it may be considered impossible to prove this, the very fact that such was the belief of the tribe would naturally enlist a certain amount of popular sympathy in Muhammad's cause when he claimed to be commissioned to recall his people to the faith of Abraham, whom they boasted of as their ancestor. There seems good reason to believe that the original religion of the children of Shem was the worship of the one God, although polytheism had, even in very early times, found an entrance into Arabia, in part, doubtless through the foreign influences already referred to. Yet, the belief in the one true God had never entirely faded away from the minds of the people. The most binding agreement between different tribes were confirmed by an oath taken in calling on the name of God, Allah, Allahumma, and the expression "an enemy of God" was deemed the most opprobrious that could be used. It is possible that we may see in the book of Jacob the proof that even in that early period of the worship of the host of heaven was finding an entrance into the country. Herodotus informs us that two deities, a male and female, were worshipped by the Arabs in his time. And this he identifies with the Dionysus and the Urania. He informs us that their names in Arabic were and respectively. The latter is very possibly the Alalu of Babylonia, and is certainly the Al-Lat mentioned in the Quran. The latter word was taken to be the feminine of Allah, God. Allah itself is known to be a contraction of Al-Ilah. Allah itself, the word Allah, is known to be a contraction of Al, A-L, La,
The God.
which is the word used in all the Semitic languages in slightly varied forms for God. So, Ilah yẹn ni wọ́n ń lò ní gbogbo Our region, Semitic region yẹn, mi ò fẹ́ lọ síbẹ̀ yẹn. So only stop. Okay. Elal, which is the word used in all the Semitic languages for God, with the definite article prefixed, so that Allah is the exact equivalent of the Greek. The form, which is given us by Herodotus, is the uncontracted form of the feminine of the same word. It is possible that the Arabs of whom Herodotus speaks provided their one god with a female consort, after the manner of the Semite of Babylonia, who had learnt from the Sumerians the idea that each deity must have its feminine counterpart, just as we have found among the Hindus. On the other hand, we are not justified in believing that this was the case among all the Arabs. Certainly, it was not so in Muhammad's time, for neither the Quran nor any of the remains of the most ancient poetry of the Arabs afford any trace of such a tenet. Allah was regarded as standing alone and unapproachable, and the inferior deities peculiar to the various tribes were worshipped as intercessors with him. These were numerous, the most important of them being Wud, Yahud, Yauk, Uba, Alat, Uza, and Mana. The three latter were goddess. Àwọn wo ni goddess yẹn, àwọn ni obìnrin ṣìgìdì yẹn, àwọn ni Mana, Uza, and Alat. And the Quran reproves the Arabs for styling them daughters of God. You know àwọn Arab would do. The Arabs of that time, if we may judge from their poetry, were not very religious, but what worship they offered was mostly to these inferior deities, though doubtless regarded as through them addressed to Allah himself. The latter was styled Allah Ta'ala. The latter was styled Allah Ta'ala, God of Most High, and this title of his was doubtless very ancient. It is not possible to oppose that the recognition of the unity of God was introduced among the Arabs for the first time by Muhammad. For the word Allah, containing as it does the definite article, is a proof that those who used it were in some degree conscious of the divine unity. Now, Muhammad did not invent the word. He didn't invent it, but as we have said, found it already in use among his fellow countrymen at the time when he first claimed to be a prophet, a divinely commissioned messenger. Proof of this is not far to seek. Muhammad's own father, who died before his son's birth, was called Abdullah. Wọ́n explain níbi tó ti rí di Allah ni kọ́ lè mọ̀ pé Muhammad kọ́ ló mú ọ̀rọ̀ tó ń jẹ́ Allah wá. Ó ti bà ọ̀rọ̀ táwọn pípù yẹn ti ń lò láyé wọn nìyẹn. So, and one of the proof tó fún ni pé bàbá Muhammad Abdullah ló ń jẹ́, ó dẹ̀ túmọ̀ sí servant of Allah. The Kaaba or temple at Mecca seems long before Muhammad's time to have been called Baitullah. Wọ́n pè ní Baitullah lórúkọ tó ń pè Kaaba yẹn o. House of Allah. Orúkọ Kaaba. Baitu is spelled B-A-I-T-U then apostrophe L-L-A-H. Lórúkọ Kaaba, which means house of Allah. Arabic tradition asserts that a shrine for the worship of God was built on that very site by Abraham and his son Ishmael. Arabic tradition, although we cannot regard this statement as in any sense historical, yet the tradition serves at least to show the antiquity of the worship there offered, since its origin was lost in fable. The Kaaba is, in all probability, the spot referred to by Diodorus Siculus as containing a shrine or temple which was very specially honored by all the Arabs. In the poems entitled Al-Mu'allaq, handed down to us from the pre-Islamic times, the word Allah is of frequent occurrence, and Ibn Shaq, the earliest biographer of Muhammad, of whose work any certain remains have come down to us, is quoted by Ibn Ishaq as stating that the tribes of Kinana and Quraysh, when performing the religious ceremony known as the Hilal, so sharing tó máa ń yí Kaaba lé nìyẹn, Hilal lórúkọ ceremony yẹn, Hilal ló ń pè, Hilal ni orúkọ ẹ̀.
ọdún yẹn tó bá ti ń ṣe ọdún yẹn
Hilal. Bẹ́ẹ̀ ni lọ́dún yẹn, orúkọ ọdún bí ibà ṣe ní kilo àwọn nǹkan táwa náà máa ń ṣe lọ́dọ̀ wa.
Ó ti yé mi.
So Hilal ló ń pè ọdún yẹn, òun ni wọ́n ń ṣe léèní tó lọ ń pè ní hajj.
So gbogbo labaika umo labai.
Ẹ máa gbọ́.
Ayé mùsùlùmí wèrè ló kù ní fẹsẹ̀.
Adébẹ́dẹ́bẹ̀. Hilal ló ń pè ọdún yẹn. Only the religious ceremony known as the Hilal used to address the deity in such words as this. Ẹ máa gbọ́, labaika lahumma lakai. Jẹ́jì gbọ́, tó bá ti ń ṣe ọdún Hilal yẹn, ohun táwọn pípín yẹn máa ń sọ. Ohun táwọn pípín yẹn máa ń sọ nìyẹn. Hilal, I spell it I-H-L-A-L. Again, I-H-L-A-L. That's the name of the ceremony. And tó bá dẹ̀ ti ń ṣe wọn máa ní labaika lahumma lakai. We are present in thy service. Only we are present in thy service. O God, we are present in thy service. Thou hast no partner except the partner of thy dread. Thou ownest him and whatsoever he owneth. Ibn Shaq rightly says that by this address, they declare their belief in the unity of Allah. It does not explain what was meant by the phrase, the partner of thy dread, but it may be conjectured that the reference was to some inferior deity belonging to one or other of the tribes which he mentions. But in any case, the language employed shows clearly that the being referred to was not in any way placed upon an equality with Allah. The religion of the ancient Arabs may therefore be justly compared with the saint worship of the Greek and Roman churches, alike of Muhammad's time and of our own, and with that which, in spite of the Quran, is even now prevalent and among Muslims. But the worship offered in such cases to saints or inferior deities is not supposed to constitute a denial of the unity. In terms of being wípé ṣẹ́rí nígbà yẹn àwọn people yẹn gangan fún ara wọn wọn fi gbà kankan pé àwọn òrìṣà wọn yẹn àwọn ṣìgìdì wọn yẹn ní Ọlọ́run títí wọn. Wọ́n recognize Allah yẹn. Ṣó ti yé yín? Wọ́n recognize Allah yẹn gẹ́gẹ́ bí Ọlọ́run tí wọn. Then wọ́n wá ń worship àwọn deity wọn yẹn ní ẹ̀gbẹ̀ẹ̀gbẹ́. So tẹ́ bá lọ wo nù tí àwọn people yẹn máa ń sọ labaika lahumma lakai, tó máa ń sọ tó ti tú sí wa ẹni, àwọn náà recognize it. So ẹ wá gbọ́n kọ́dẹ́ ni wá sọ. The religion of the ancient Arabs may therefore be justly compared with the saint worship of the Greek and Roman churches, alike of Muhammad's time and of our own, and with that which, in spite of the Quran, is even now prevalent among Muslims. But the worship offered in such cases to saints or inferior deities is not supposed to constitute a denial of the unity and supremacy of God, since the latter are adored only as mediators. Ṣé rí bẹ́ẹ̀ gẹ́gẹ́ bí àwa náà ṣe rí àwọn òrìṣà tiwa, àwọn ancestors wa, as just what? Mediators between ourselves and Ọlọ́run Elédùmarè wa. Bẹ́ẹ̀ yẹn gẹ́lẹ́ ni àwọn people yẹn ṣe rí. Bẹ́ẹ̀ yẹn gẹ́lẹ́ ni àwọn people yẹn náà ṣe ń sin gbogbo àwọn àlá tí wọn húbà àwọn yẹn bẹ́ẹ̀ yẹn gẹ́lẹ́ ni wọ́n ṣe ń ṣe bọ́ ẹ máa gbọ́ nǹkan tí ọmọ ọ̀gbọ́n yẹn padà ṣe fún wọn. Okay, so wọ́n á ní Mr. Adio, I don't have your time. Just go and download it, go and read it, okay? Go and read it, and then you can come back later. You can engage me on this one. I would be love to engage you on it too at the same time. So, but let me continue. So, the religion of the ancient Arabs may therefore be justly compared with the saint worship of the Greek and Roman churches, alike of Muhammad's time and of our own, and with that which, in spite of the Quran, is even now prevalent among Muslims. Okay, but the worship offered in such cases to saints or inferior deities is not supposed to constitute a denial of the unity and supremacy of God, since the latter are adored only as mediators between God and man. What Ash-Sharistani tells us of the religious ideas and practice of the pre-Islamic period in Arabia confirms this. It divides the inhabitants of Arabia into various sects or parties, differing very much in their religious opinions. Some of them, it says, deny the existence of a creator, the sending of prophets, and the final judgment, asserting that nature itself was the giver of life, and that time was the universal destroyer. Others again believed in a creator, but denied the existence. Others believed in a creator, but denied that he had ever revealed himself by sending messengers commissioned to declare his will. Others again worshipped idols, of which each tribe had its own. For example, the tribe of Kar worshipped wood and suwa. That of Madaj honored Yagut, as did some of the Yamanites. The Dukalia in Imya worshipped Nasr. The Andan tribe adored Yahuk. That of Takif in Taif served Alat, while Al-Huza was the tutelary goddess of the Bani Kinana and of the Quraysh. The tribes of Haus and Khazraj worshipped Mana and regarded Huba as the chief of their deities. His image was placed in a most conspicuous place on the roof of the Kaaba. Other deities were Asaf and Naila. Some of these tribes had come under the influence of Jewish colonies settled near them and accepted more or less of the teaching of the latter people. Others had become Christians, while their neighbors were inclined to accept that faith. Others again were under the influence of the Sabians. Others again were under the influence of the Sabians. Àwọn tí wọ́n ń kírun tí ọ̀gbọ́n tẹ́ bá lọ Canada ẹ máa rí bí ọ̀gbẹ́ni ṣe copy gbogbo irú yẹn London àwọn there is a chapter dedicated for that. Under the influence of the Sabians, and used to practice astrology and receive omens taken from the movement of the heavenly bodies as their guides in all actions of importance. Some worship angels, some the jinns or even spirit. Abu Bakr himself, who afterwards became the first of God, was at one time distinguished from a story reviewed by many Arabic writers, including some of the best-known commentators on the Quran, shows how readily the Arabs in Muhammad's time, even those who were most bitterly opposed to him in Mecca and who had forced most of his early disciples to flee to Abyssinia to save their lives, joined with him in worshipping God Most High, Allah Ta'ala. A story related by many Arabic writers, including some of the best-known commentators of the Quran, shows how readily the Arabs in Muhammad's time, joined with him wọ́n máa ń pàdé Muhammad láti worship God Most High, Allah Ta'ala. Allah Ta'ala. When he for a time seemed to withdraw his opposition to their honoring their inferior deities also, he went one day, we are told, to pray in the Kaaba, the great national sanctuary at Mecca, of which his family had been one time the guardians. Òun gan náà ti gbàdúrà gbogbo ìgbà tí wọ́n kó gbogbo àwọn torí ẹ̀ mo máa ń béèrè till date kí ni ó ṣẹlẹ̀ sí ayé Muhammad between age 0 and age 40. Òun gangan fún ara ẹ̀ òun náà máa bá wọn jọ́sìn níbẹ̀ yẹn. Òun gangan fún ara ẹ̀ all of a sudden but n tó bínú ni pé ó rí pé gbogbo àwọn people yẹn tó kù tọ́jọ́ ní gbogbo àwọn gods wọn yẹn níbẹ̀ gbogbo wọn yẹn sì ń fi honor sí àwọn ṣìgìdì wọn yẹn bẹ̀. Kò dẹ̀ like ẹ̀ ó fẹ́ yẹ kí everybody kó gbájúmọ́ Allah àti family tòun. Ó wá ní in worshiping God Most High, Allah Ta'ala, when he for a time seemed to withdraw his opposition to their honoring their inferior deities also, he went one day, we are told, to pray in the Kaaba, the great national sanctuary at Mecca, of which his family had been at one time the guardians. There he began to repeat Surah Al-Najm. When he had recited the 19th and 20th verses, have ye not seen Alat and Al-Uzza and Manat, the third? It is stated that Satan impelled himself to add the words, these are the exalted beauties, and verily their intercession may indeed be hoped for. On hearing these words, all the Arabs present joined him in worship, and the rumors spread everywhere that they had all embraced Islam. The story is well authenticated and is most probably true, but in any case, its very existence shows that the opponent of Muhammad found no difficulty in accepting his teachings as to the existence and supremacy of Allah, and that they worshipped the inferior deities as intercessors with him. It is but fair to add that Muhammad soon withdrew the words which acknowledge the existence and influence of these goddesses, substituting for them those now found in the surah, have ye male issue and hath he God female, that indeed were an unfair division. They are not but names which ye and your fathers have named. Ibn Shaq, Ibn Ishmael, and Arabic writers in general state that the Arabs, and in particular those that boasted descent from Ishmael, were at first worshippers of God alone, and that though after a time they fell away into idolatry and polytheism, if the word may be applied to such religious ideas and practices as those which we have described, they nevertheless always remember that God Most High was superior and ruler over all the inferior objects of their worship. When we come to consider the influence which Jewish and Christian tenets exercise over the mind of Muhammad, we shall see that these religions no doubt strengthen his belief in monotheism. So the idea of one God, he got it from Christianity and the Jewish religion. Because the idea of emu Ọlọ́run lọ́kan nìkan ni kẹ́ máa sìn inú Christianity ló ti mú. Idea yẹn bẹ̀rẹ̀ ló ti wá in terms of one being. We shall see that these religions no doubt strengthen his belief in monotheism, but it was not a new belief among the Arabs of the time, since, as we have seen, they had always admitted it, at least in theory. Yet the inferior deities whom they worshipped were very numerous, for it is said that there were no fewer than 360 idols in the Kaaba, which had become a kind of national pantheon. There can be little doubt that little doubt, moreover, that these local and tribal deities, for such they were, had in practice cast entirely into the shade among the great mass of the people the worship of God Most High. It should, however, be noticed that, rightly or wrongly, the earliest Arabian historians assert that the association of partners with God was of comparatively recent origin in those parts of Arabia when Islam arose. Tradition said to rest on Muhammad's authority informs us that idolatry had been introduced from Syria. Ibẹ̀ ni àwọn people yẹn ti kọ́gbọ́n bí wọ́n ṣe ń sin different kinds of ṣìgìdì wọn, and gives us the names of those who were chiefly instrumental in introducing it. This is stated to have occurred only about 15 generations before Muhammad. An exception to this must be made in the case of the veneration paid to sacred stones. This was common among the people of Palestine. The veneration paid to sacred stones. This was common among the people of Palestine in the patriarchal period and was doubtless of immemorial antiquity in Arabia. Ibn Shaq endeavors to account for it by supposing that the Meccans used to carry with them on their journeys pieces of stone from the Kaaba and paid reverence to them because they came from the Haram or Holy Temple. Herodotus mentions the use of 7 stones by the Arabs when taking solemn oaths. The honor almost amounting to worship still paid by Muslim pilgrims to the famous meteoric Aju Aswad or black stone. Òkòtó ń sọ yẹn àti ríbi tó ti wá. Díẹ̀ ní wọ́n ṣe ń sọ. Òkò méje tó ń sọ.
Oko àṣetánì.
Òkò àṣetánì yẹn wọ́n ṣe ń sọ. Méje wọ́n ṣe ń sọ díì sí àṣà àwọn Palestine yẹn ni.
No, bàbá mi, gbogbo nǹkan tí Mùsùlùmí ń ṣe ni àwọn sọ̀bì ń wùnà àjílò bí jíjí náà ni.
Òun ni tí o tábà ti ń bá.
Bí jíjí ni gbogbo nǹkan wọn jíjí.
Gbogbo ẹ̀ ni bàbá yẹn kó jọ. So ẹ tún máa gbọ́ lọ. Ó tún ní the black stone which is built into the wall of Kaaba is one of the many Islamic customs which have been derived from those of the Arabs who lived long before Muhammad's time. The kiss which the pious Muhammadan pilgrim bestows on it is a survivor of the old practice, which was a form of worship in Arabia as in many other lands. Many tales were told regarding this stone in pre-Muhammadan times, and these are still firmly believed till date. A tradition relates that it descended from paradise, and was originally of a pure white color. Only was originally of a pure white color, but has become black through the sins of mankind. Àwọn ancestor and co. Òun ló sọ òkúta tó wà ní Kaaba yẹn di black lane from white. You can imagine that. According to another account, through contact with the lips of one ceremonially impure, as it is now known to be of meteoric origin, Ojaboni. Part of the story is readily accounted for. Not only in reference to belief in Allah Ta'ala and to the reverence for the black stone and the Kaaba, but in many other matters. Also, Islam has borrowed from the Arabs of more ancient times. It is not too much to say that most of the religious rites and ceremonies which now prevail throughout the Muhammadan world are identical with those practiced in Arabia from immemorial antiquity. For example, Herodotus tells us that in his time, the Arabs used to shave their hair around their temple and cut the rest close. This is done by Muhammad in some countries today. If there is any difference, of which we cannot be certain, since we do not know whether the Greek traveler ever saw an Arab bareheaded. It lies in the fact that the shaving is continued from the forehead to the back of the neck, the hair being allowed to grow, though cut short, only on the sides of the head. Abu Fida calls attention to the number of religious observances which were thus perpetuated under the new system. The Arabs of the times of ignorance, he says, used to do things which the religion's law of Islam has adopted. For they used not to wed their mothers or their daughters, and among them it was deemed a most detestable thing to marry two sisters, and they used to revile the man who married his father's wives, and to call him Daizan. They used, moreover, to make the pilgrimage to the house and visit the consecrated places and wear the ihram, the single garment worn to the present day by a pilgrim when running around the Kaaba, and perform the tawaf and run between the hills at Safa and Al-Marwa, and take their stand at all the stations and cast the stones at the devil in the valley of Mina. And they weren't to intercalate a month, and says that circumcision was practiced by the Eastern Arabs, as it still is by all Muslims, though nowhere enjoined in the Quran. This last statement is confirmed by the author of the apocryphal epistle of Barnabas, who says every Syrian and Arab and all the priests of the idols are circumcised. It is well known that the same practice prevailed among the ancient Egyptians today also. Ibn Shaq uses much the same language as Abu Fuda, but adds that the customs which he mentions, including that of the Hilal, had been retained from Abraham's time. This is no doubt true of circumcision, but it can hardly be said that Abraham had anything to do with the other matters referred to. In spite of the Muhammadan belief that he visited Mecca and worshipped where the Kaaba now stands, it is clear from all that has been said that the first source of Islam is to be found in his religious belief and practices of the Arabs of Muhammad's day. From this earthen source too, Islam has derived the practice of polygamy and that of slavery, both of which, though adding nothing to their evil effect in other respects, Muhammad sanctioned for all time by his own adoption of them. Motika, the first two chapters of the book, anyone to buy interest, any law would the third part. Ẹ jẹ́ kí n stop sí ibẹ̀ yẹn.
Ẹ bá wa ṣá bàbá látẹ̀wọ́ o.
Bàbá Bíọ́lá sáń wà bí bàìsà. Ó dàbí pé Àdìó fẹ́ bá wa sọ̀rọ̀. Mo ti gbé yín sókè o. Àdìó, ẹ ti wà lókè o.
Irọ́.
Ẹnìkan béèrè pé kí n fáwọn ní link mi ò tó bá ti lọ sí Google bí mo ṣe ń sọ yìí, lọ sí Google type the original sources of the Quran, o lè fi PDF síwájú ẹ̀, the original sources of the Quran, lọ type ẹ̀ sí Google kó fi PDF síbẹ̀, you'll be able to get it and then you can read it. Bóyá a máa wá jọ ní time tàjọ máa wá engage ara lórí nǹkan tàjọ kà yìí.
Bàbá mi ẹ ṣeun, ẹ gọ́ bàbá mi o.
Ancestor, ẹjọ má bínú, ẹjọ má bínú.
Okay.
Ancestor, ẹjọ má bínú. That was ìṣètò fún mi. But I really appreciate. Okay, I really appreciate your the time and the effort. So because by mentioning the way, I also downloaded it as you are reading. I'm also following you line by line. So,
Good.
but so though I will still also complete the other part of the book as you are. So then, but nevertheless, no. From mo kàn fẹ́ sáré maybe within just a few minutes. Mo kàn fẹ́ sáré raise our observations kankan, then maybe some other time later, sha. So, okay, sir. So now, say, mo fẹ́ kọ́kọ́ fẹ́ béèrè pé, how much trust do you have in the author of that book?
In scholarly world, we care less about the author, history, personality, or whatever. We believe on the evidence that you provide. So
Okay, good.
if you read the book line by line, you see that every claim the author make will not be references.
Okay.
My brother. So that's how you read. Forget about whatever. It might do a good. It might have his own bias, no doubt. Okay, but then let's look at what he's saying. Are they real or not?
Okay,
that
good.
is what I like. I'm not interested in personality, where it's coming from. Or is
I'm not. Okay. In the same scholarly word too, we should also look into the amani láti wo ipe ẹni tó ń sọ̀rọ̀ yìí, because for us to ask ọ̀rọ̀ tí ẹni lágbájá ń sọ, for us to actually understand it better, so I need láti wo from angle of is it in this field? Anytime sorrow nípa tó jẹ́ author, the person is
my brother. No, my brother, don't do that. Don't do that.
No, it is true now.
Hold on. I don't debate like that.
No, I'm not debating you. I'm not debating.
Hold on.
Part of the facts.
Christian,
Catholic,
it does not matter. Ṣebí gbogbo way history telling kọ Yoruba. Go and check the names of the authors. Tí ó bá jẹ́ Joseph ló kọ, á jẹ́ Fatai. What are you saying?
I know me.
Hold on. Most of the historic books about Yoruba land are written by either Christians or Muslims. And if you go and read them, you always see their obvious biases.
Let us focus on what we are discussing now, sir.
I want us to look at each line. If there is anyone there, that is what I'm interested in. If there is anyone you want to question, let's go there. I won't go into that.
Ṣé ìwé tẹ wá kà ẹ má ṣe yẹn bí báyọ̀ ẹ má ṣe yẹn rárá ẹ má ṣe yẹn rárá.
Okay, fine.
If you see any part that you want to argue,
ṣé àmọ́ wípé àbèrè ọ̀tọ̀ ẹni sùúrù ṣé àmọ́ pa lọ wáwé yẹn ni tá a kà á àfin ọ̀tọ̀ ọmọ Yorùbá ni àwádìí pé irú èèyàn wo ni ọ̀tọ̀ yìí ṣọmọ Yorùbá original ni ṣé fake ni
àtàrà ògùn kan fún ọ̀tọ̀ yẹn jọ yẹn
ẹni sùúrù.
No, ẹ jẹ́ kí ẹnu kan mo àwòsàn.
Mr. Agbati ìgbà tẹ lọ mú ìwé wá tẹ́lẹ̀ ń bọ Olódùmarè pẹ lójúbọ Olódùmarè lẹ́yìn pẹ ń bọ níyín lára lórí ọ̀tọ̀ even bóyá n tó kọ
mi ò ní wọ́n tí mo ní wọ́n lára tí mo ní kàn lọ́wọ́ tọ̀ wá ni mi ò ní wọ́n lára. I just raised my observation. Mo ní observation.
Let me reply him. I know what his type.
This is my observation.
Does. This is what it is. I know in Islamic world, especially àwọn tó ti lọ ka àwọn ìwé yẹn tó tẹ̀ lọ school díẹ̀ nu wọn. Wọ́n máa ń pa àwọn kan ní orientalist. Wọ́n máa ń pa àwọn kan ní Islamic critics. So the first thing máa kọ́kọ́ ń lò ní pé níbo lẹ́ni ti wá, and that is why tí mi ò ní engage ọ̀gbẹ́ni along that.
Ojú ayé
ṣe bọ́ọ̀ náà lájọ kà ń bì báyìí òun náà láti jọ kà ń bì. Mr. Agbati, if you want to engage me, I will be interested in having a conversation with you, but please.
Then it means if you want to engage in, sir,
let's go to the specific as a whole.
We cannot remove the author.
Have the book with you. Hold on, sir. You said you have the book. You've downloaded it. Can you refer me to a particular page, a particular line that you want to challenge? That's how a debate is done. Leave the
exactly
of the individual. I don't do that.
I'm not debating. I said that's what I said my observation. That's what I said. I'm not debating you. Emma quotes me wrong. I mean, because you are not the author of the book.
No, so that's what you are doing when you begin to raise aspersion about the author, the whereabouts of the author. Then with the man here. Before you say, I know that is where you end up. Islam ni. So that's why I don't go down line with anybody. If you want to engage me, please let's stick to what this person has said. Okay? If you see any line in his book, you said you have it.
Mr. Agbati, mi mo meet yín ẹni sùúrù ẹjọ́. Ẹ jẹ́ àṣìlẹ̀ kankan what's it called? A máa sọ̀rọ̀ yìí ní nùbínùbí ó yẹ ṣe understand ẹjọ́. Mr. Agbati, àwọn ti sọ fún ẹ tẹ́ bá ní contrary opinion nínú ìwé táwọn kà yín ó yẹ yín ẹ lọ mú jáde tẹ̀lé ta yọ̀nà náà. But tí ẹ bá ní lè question author, reason being nínú Quran yìí náà a lè question ẹni tó rà sínú Quran ó yẹ yín you understand, but that's not the case here. The case is like this, and even bàtí bàbá mi èṣù tó fún mi mo rí fún mi bàtọ́kọ́ bẹ̀rẹ̀ sí máa ka kíní yìí. I put it in the comment section. I read similar book, not like this one, but I've read similar book. You understand? So when we start challenging authors, and if there is 2 or 3 people that can account to something, that evidence stands. You understand? When one Quran no, tabati rape obìnrin kan, tóbìnrin yẹn provide ọkùnrin mẹ́rin. You understand? So gbogbo kìnìún náà máa ń fi sí ìpín. So ẹ má ní nítorí ọ̀tọ̀ yẹn jẹ́ Christian, and the best people that are in the position to challenge you or to counter Islam are the Christians, to be honest, because àwọn lẹ́lọ́ ń jíwèé wọn tẹ́lọ́ ń kọ́ káàkiri. You understand? So ẹ má jà ṣe bẹ́yẹn, ẹ kàn mú content jáde ta lè debate orí content. Bàbá ò sá fún yẹn àwọn ìgbà wọ́n dẹ̀ dúró lórí point mi. Ó yẹ kí
bàbá mi ẹ jẹ́ kí èmi náà sáré àdì nǹkan kan. Bàbá Àgbàtì ẹ ní sùúrù torí Ọlọ́run. Ẹ jẹ́ kí n sáré àdì nǹkan kan. Mr. Agbati, Engineer Agbati, I know you to be very, very clever person. And first thing, you want to discount the author just to rubbish what that man has done. Sherry, Islam, ẹ máa ń ṣe kinní kan. Nǹkan tí mo dẹ̀ fẹ́ sọ yìí, ẹ̀yin náà ẹ máa try láti understand nǹkan tí mo fẹ́ sọ yìí. Islam ní a kind of cherry picking attitude. Ìtò bá favour wọn á gbà. Either from enemy or from anybody. Ìtò bá favour wọn, the next thing tó máa ṣe wọ́n wá yọ káàdì orientalist. Ìpè àwọn orientalist ni àmúdẹ like bàbá mi èṣù tó fún mi. Wọ́n dìdì lọ síbẹ̀ yẹn. First question tí mo kọ́ fẹ́ béèrè lọ́wọ́ yín bàbá Àgbàtì ni pé the first munjidu, first Arabic dictionary tí àwọn àfáà yín ń lò lénìí, àwọn Catholic náà ṣe, although they now build on it, but the first munjidu asinkẹlẹmọ kí mo mọ nǹkan tí mò ń sọ, the first Arabic dictionary àwọn Christian ló kọ́kọ́ ṣe, and gbogbo àwọn àfáà lénìí wọ́n ń lò, so they don't say that ìyẹn ò dáa. So that cherry picking attitude yẹn ò dáa. This man has done a very good job by reading this thing for us. Ó dẹ̀ sọ fún wa pé everybody lọ download the way. Gbogbo aláti níwèé lọ́wọ́, èmi náà ń kà line by line bó ṣe ń bá lọ. If you have anything against this book, then you now say mo paragraph yìí o, and gbogbo nǹkan tí wọ́n kà nínú source ìwé yìí, as ó wà àwọn ìwé rẹpẹtẹ tó back up wà, kò sí story tán sọ tí kò correct ń bẹ. Tẹ́ bá rí nǹkan tí ó correct ń bẹ, ẹ gbé jáde fún wa. Don't come and discount the author because cherry picking attitude nìyẹn. Ẹ ti fẹ́ yí lọ síbi pé àwọn Catholic náà kọ́. At the end of the day, we found out pé ìkankan náà ni orogún òwò ni, àti Catholic àti Islam àti Christianity kankan náà lẹ́yìn méjèèjì, àwọn source kan náà ni méjèèjì ti wá.
Iṣẹ́ wọn nìyẹn bàbá mi. So the first thing
the first thing tẹ́ kọ́kọ́ fẹ́ ṣe, you now want to discount that author. Don't do that. Professor Agbati, Engineer Agbati, don't do that here, please.
He said he has the book. He said he has the book. Let him take a particular page, that paragraph, and then let us argue that part out. Yes, sir.
All right, thank you, sir. Sincerely speaking, I'm not saying all these things, maybe I'm doing counter author, and I'm not actually criticizing the book. And mo mọ̀ pé you are not the author of the book, then at the same time I will not hold you responsible for whatsoever thing tó bá ṣẹlẹ̀ nínú ìwé yẹn. No. So that is sacrosanct. So it means whatsoever thing we will be doing, it means we will all just be reviewing the book because we are not actually the author. We just look into and combine lele. So mi ò lè hold him responsible just as if a student presenting something. It means presenting a particular his own work. So ìyẹn nation in short. But nevertheless, so your author review iṣẹ́, you cannot take away the author from it. You too, you know that too scholarly, so that you cannot remove the author from.
Again, Egbon.
But nevertheless,
With all due respect, hold on. Please, I don't want to reveal my true identity, but I will just tell you something. It is not every review work, okay, that you start with the background of the author. Nobody is interested in that, okay? No one is interested in that. Bóyá nǹkan tẹ́ ń ṣe ní humanities ni, I don't understand that. But I'm telling you, in science and engineering, we don't care about the background of the author. What we are interested in is iṣẹ́ tẹ́niyẹn ti ṣe, comment to so. So if you are reviewing my work, you make your comment, okay, credited directly to what the person has said. That is how a review is done, okay? Okay, on so this, and tell us the merit, the importance. That's how a review is done. You don't go to the background of the person. Just pick a sentence, okay? I can, like, if I want to review this work, I will tell you what I learned from the first page, okay, second page, okay? If there's interesting lines, I will get those ones out, make my comment. That's how a review is done. Not like you.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Mombo, sir. Thank you, sir. Clearly, you said it that in science and engineering, it's not done that way, but it is actually done in humanity when this comes to humanity, because.
But they call you engineer now. They call you engineer. Are you not an engineer?
Mombo.
Are you not an engineer? Please answer that.
I'm not an engineer.
Oh,
But meanwhile, in sciences and engineering, it is not that can say focus when it comes to.
We are not going there.
But nevertheless, when it comes to humanities and so the background of the author is important because most of those things, opinion and to answer. For instance, this book we are answering on after bí mo ṣe ń follow ẹ lọ, though on site on make references láwọn ibì kankan, but mo lè sọ wípé categorically opinions in most of the material are more than even on the cited works, and cited works tó wà nínú àwọn kìíní yẹn, so mo fẹ́ àwọn opinions á sọ̀rọ̀ méjì, á dẹ̀ fi opinions jẹ́ sí pé á dẹ̀ fi conclusion àti nǹkan tó so á fi sí, so nǹkan tó mo sọ, so àwọn opinions yẹn
náà and that's what makes the book objective.
So now nǹkan tẹ́yìn fẹ́ nìyẹn, so that is just so nǹkan tó opinion yẹn dẹ̀rẹ̀ òun ló fi máa shape nǹkan message tó náà fẹ́ pass.
So but we will not focus on the author. Let's leave the author completely out of it. Let's focus on his message. That is my interest.
A message no, only message no mo wà yìí. I'm on the message.
Mr. Agbati, ẹni tó fún kankan kún fún yín, ẹni sùúrù. Bàbá èṣù tó fún mi, ẹni sùúrù. Ẹ jẹ́ kí n tún lé nǹkan kan sí yín. Ẹni sùúrù, Mr. Agbati, ẹ má máa lo this kind of thing. Ẹni sùúrù, ẹ jẹ́ kí n sáré tún lé nǹkan kan sí yín. Nínú ìwé yìí, nínú materials tán kà fún wa yìí, wọ́n ó confirm fún wa pé ẹ̀yìn ànábì náà kó Kùránì jọ.
A year, precisely.
Ẹ̀yìn ànábì náà, ẹ̀yìn tó kú náà kó jọ. Ó dẹ̀ confirm yìí pé what happened during the Abubakar, Umar àti Usman. Materials yìí confirm ẹ̀. And gbogbo àwọn síròyìn àti hadith ó confirm ẹ̀. So what are you trying to discount in this book again, in these materials again?
I'm not discounting it. Even
then if you are not discounting it, don't use that first. Cherry, Sherry, Mr. Agbati.
ẹ ṣe sùúrù pẹ̀lú mi náà.
Ẹni sùúrù, Mr.
náà mi ò
Agbati,
di
Mr.
káńtẹ̀ àmọ́
Agbati,
mo kàn ń ṣe láti sọ.
ẹni sùúrù
ẹ máa ń ṣe kinní kan, ẹ máa ń ṣe kinní kan tẹ́ bá ti wá sórí program wa ń bí. Ẹ máa ń ṣe kinní kan tẹ́ bá ti wá sórí program wa ń bí. Ẹ máa wà soft spoken àti pé bóyá attack yín. We are not.
No, brother mi ẹ má bínú, ó gbọ́ àtọ́ gbogbo lé.
Okay,
ẹ
okay.
jọ̀ọ́
Dr. Sabi ẹ
torí
sọ̀rọ̀.
Ọlọ́run, mo fi Elédùmarè mo fi bẹ̀ yín, ẹ jẹ́ kí Mr. Agbati ẹ jẹ́ ká fún un ní 5 minutes ká tiẹ̀ gbọ́ nǹkan tó fẹ́ sọ. Bóyá ó fẹ́ tako ìwé o, bóyá ó fẹ́ gba kinní kan, ẹ jẹ́ ká fún wọn ní 5 minutes. Ó máa dàbí wípé a fún wọn lọ́rọ̀ sọ bí ìgbà tó jẹ́ pé a ní genuine something lọ́wọ́. Ṣó ti yé yín sìn? Èmi náà ti lọ sórí website yẹn sìn, mo ti lọ Google ẹ̀, mo dẹ̀ ń go through ẹ̀ sìn. Bó ti ẹ jẹ́ ká gbọ́ nǹkan tó fẹ́ sọ náà. Ẹ ṣe gan ni, ẹ jẹ́ ká mute, ẹ jẹ́ ká fún wọn ní 5 minutes, ẹ jẹ́ ká gbọ́ gbogbo àlàyé wọn. Ẹ ṣé.
Okay, all right, doctor, thank you, ma. Okay, ẹ jẹ́ kí n, okay, fine, 5 minutes, bọ́jà mo lè má lè tún yẹn, but nǹkan tí mo kàn fẹ́ sọ̀rọ̀ gan lórí material yẹn ló bí mo ṣe ń kà àti observation mi àti débi tí wọ́n dé. So òun ni pé aside pé nípa author, fine, that is that, but my observation too ni pé ó lo opinion láti fi pass the actual message tí wọ́n fẹ́ pass, which is well noted, because some materials are actually cited when they make a reference down kankan, then they make reference down syrup kankan àti àwọn Islamic sources kankan náà, though not well cited, and so that ẹlòmíì lè ṣe counter checking, like to do cross checking of the sources. So ìyẹn ṣáà wà bẹ́ẹ̀, but that is one of those my own criticism aspect of the material, but that one is just that. But nevertheless, no, it still also supports some of the opinions àbí nǹkan tá a sọ pé tí Islam preach, even go to someone like you people too, ó tún padà support àwọn nǹkan kan nínú. For instance, nínú material yẹn padà ń support ìwú pé àwọn Arabs yẹn, the Arabs, they also have the name of the Allah tí wọ́n ń pè ní Allah, the Allah tí ó jẹ́ kí ni, it is also known to them to be the supreme being and to know to be the most high too. Then aside that, they also have the other intermediaries, àwọn tí wọ́n àwọn Lata, Uzza and others like that too. So they also have those ones too. See wọ́n fi ń ṣe bí gods like ṣé ṣìgìdà àbí òrìṣà àbí nǹkan kan. So and it is actually being done by different tribes like that, just like we have similar thing amongst the Yoruba people too. So pé àwọn tribes kan máa ṣe láwọn ilé náà máa ṣe lè fine, good. So then ó wà láàrin wọn tẹ́lẹ̀ nìyẹn. So now ó túmọ̀ sí pé táwọn náà believe as the most high yẹn, so òun ni ọ̀rọ̀ Allah. So whether the inflection of the name in Semitic languages and this and that and this and that, so one way or the other, it means within them the word of having the mentality of having a supreme being ó ti wà láàrin wọn tẹ́lẹ̀, even kí ọ̀rọ̀ Muhammad kan tó bí rárá. So àwọn náà believe pé wọ́n, so kó tó di pé then the orientation of don't bring in the intermediaries and all this thing like that. So òun ni ọ̀rọ̀ kíní fi wọlé, òun ni ọ̀rọ̀ nígbà táwọn fi padà tí Muhammad fi bẹ̀rẹ̀ sí ní jẹ́ pẹ̀lú wọn ló fi di pé wọ́n fi ní àwọn issues àti bẹ́ẹ̀ bẹ́ẹ̀ lọ. Then the issue of what I say, in the book to Tim Maron to the Anthony laptop in school. So the issue of the tribe, the tribe. Okay, then the other part, okay, in short, then at the same time, no, the issue of the Quran, the compilation of the Quran, okay, the compilation of the Quran, that it was done after the death of Muhammad. Nobody doubts that. Nobody doubts that. The role being played by so the role being played by Zaid bin Sabit and others like that, but Khalifa as he highlighted them, it is, well, it's not question so it is generally known. So wasi salesi. So I'm sọ pé bí pé ìyẹn ò ní mi ní, but mo sọ pé the material is one, pass message yẹn truly ní ó present àwọn kankan tó jẹ́ bóyá rí nìyẹn fine, then one lo opinion láti reshape àwọn nǹkan tí message tó fẹ́ try láti pass. Mo dẹ̀ ti highlight àwọn kankan sórí kíni bọ́yìn kan mo highlight kí but laptop mi ti kú I will have also reference to some of those pages and the lines in the paragraph here. But nevertheless, all I want to say here is this in summary. From the material simply supports the fact that the Arabs too, they also have they believe in a supreme being or the supreme deity, which is Allah. And they also believe, and before the pre-Islamic or pre-Muhammad era, so they have what's it called? They have gods, about 360 of them in the Kaaba and all this and like that. Then so now, okay, the issue of copy and other things, copy Islam ó jọ bẹ́ẹ̀ ni but kò rí bẹ́ẹ̀. So àwọn nǹkan kan ti wà tẹ́lẹ̀ tẹ́ pé kò kí ń ṣe pé bí wọ́n pé nǹkan yẹn àwọn kò kí ń ṣe pé gbogbo nǹkan, because even àwọn ànábì sọ pé kò bí pé wọ́n sọ pé ànábì ò mú nǹkan tuntun wá, kò ṣe pé Islam is entirely new pé okay this is this and that, no. But bí kì bá kí n ṣe pé àwọn nǹkan kan ti wà ńlẹ̀ tẹ́lẹ̀ tó jẹ́ pé they are actually being done and it is also righteous, then àwọn corrections tó wà nínú nǹkan tó ti ń ṣe tẹ́lẹ̀ òun ni Muhammad wá ṣe pé okay you are doing this, don't do it this way, then it has to be done this way. So ló fi dàbí pé ló fi dàbí pé ó copy àbí ó ṣe kíní, so something of such ni ló ṣe rí. So then tá bá sọ pé tá bá béèrè pé what is the source, wọ́n béèrè pé nínú ìwé yẹn náà dàbí.
Mr. Agbati 5 minutes.
ẹ̀kan fún mi ní just 2 or 3 sentences I'm about to stop, sir. So ẹ má bínú. So okay, no 5 minutes ẹ ti pọ̀ jù again. So in a nutshell, so mo fẹ́ sọ̀rọ̀ kan but jẹ́ kí n okay níbi pé ó dà pé ẹni ó lọ mú source ipò copy àwọn source kan. Okay, the issue of monotheism, ipe ó get the idea of monotheism from the Jews and the Christians. So ipe bẹ́ẹ̀ ló ti copy idea of monotheism, so tó wá fẹ́ impose ẹ̀ sórí àwọn Arab no. So I mean from the material. So meanwhile they're looking at it critically too. They will have said that ṣé Christianity àti Jews ṣé àwọn ni wọ́n jẹ́ originator of the idea of the monotheism, then àwọn náà bo ni wọ́n ti rí. So ó máa lọ bẹ́ẹ̀. But meanwhile what I could just say is that virtually gbogbo individual tó believe pé Ọlọ́run wà pátápátá ló believe pé don't believe in that monotheism of the fact that there is only one being, which is the supreme being, even including Yoruba tradition, so that we have a supreme being. So though other things, whether intermediaries or no intermediaries, that is where the issues like that issue to lie in here. So but nevertheless, the material actually did its own work, and majorly to me is just to shape the fact that Islam, nǹkan tó try láti point out ni pé Islam was copied from Islam was a copy of what's it called, the pagans, and at the same time from the Christians and the Jews too. So that is what the message is trying to pass within the 2 chapters. So but meanwhile in the real sense it is not like that. So man, stop buying for now. Thank you, sir.
You tried, and this is what I expect from you. They are giving us a feedback from what I've read, and I also believe that you also read it. But one thing, and from all the things that you said, you seem to largely agree with the others and most of his claim. But the only one thing we find a bit outrageous is the fact that irọ́ ni wípé ó gba àwọn idea yẹn wá látàwọn ibì kankan, or how did you put it? I'm sorry, I forgot about. But the bottom line is that, look, if from these 2 chapters Timothy kàjáde yìí, it is clear that one, the author yẹn try to establish wípé the fact that there is a claim tí Muslims máa ń ṣe pé gbogbo ọ̀rọ̀ tó wà nínú Quran or everything about Islam is divine. From what we have read, there's nothing like that. Nothing like that exists. Gbogbo nǹkan tó wà nínú Quran, inú ayé yìí ni Muhammad ti gba gbogbo ẹ̀. And that's just the fact. And from this same book, you can see the different religious rites tí Ọ̀gbẹ́ni yẹn mention. Look at this Ilah. Ilah. Ta ló mọ̀ èmi ò mọ̀ until I read this book that we pay actually that pilgrimage tá ń pè Hajj tá ń pè lẹ́ni is actually called Ilah. It's been in existence. So táwọn èèyàn bá wá sọ fún yín wípé Allah inú Kaaba ló ń gbé, you question them. You shouldn't do that. That Allah resides and lives, dwells in the Kaaba. From what we have seen here. Because if you talk about deities in seen here, ẹ̀dẹ̀gbọ́n níbi tí mo ti kà tó sọ pé Muhammad and his colleagues, àwọn followers ẹ̀, wọ́n lọ worship nínú Kaaba yẹn. Tí wọ́n dẹ̀ máa ń yí ká tó máa ń sọ lába ẹ̀kálá.
No.
They still do that.
No, kò ń ṣe
I can't count the number of times I've read this thing. And again, don't stop at there.
No, line 10 kan yẹn. No, line 10 kan yẹn. Ó pẹ̀lú bíi my life. Line 10 kan yẹn. Ó kò ti Hashim. Ó kò ti Ibn Hashim. Nínú àwọn historians yẹn, biographer yẹn. Ó kò tẹ̀ pé ó sọ pé òun rí tribe Qurayza àti àwọn Quraysh tí wọ́n lọ sí Kaaba tí wọ́n lọ fún circumcision tí wọ́n ń ṣe labaik Allahumma labaik ibi tí níbi
ẹ lọ ka ibi ó ti explain ibi tó ti ń sọ̀rọ̀ nípa ìlàlì yẹn. Ìlàlì yẹn
ẹ̀bẹ̀ ló sọ pé during the ceremony of
so ẹni sùúrù let me ask you one question. Ṣé ẹ gbà pé so the question we're now asking you again tó yẹ pé to bring almost all of us together ni wípé a ti ń rí sìn wípé gbogbo nǹkan tẹ̀yin mùsùlùmí ṣe lénìí kò yàtọ̀ sí nǹkan tí ń ṣe láti ayébáyé àtọ̀rí ọ̀hún yẹn. So ti yé yín.
Bẹ́ẹ̀ni.
So tó bá ti wá rí pé ẹni sùúrù tó bá ti jí pé bẹ́ẹ̀ ni mo ń engage yín sí mi tó bá ti jẹ́ pé bẹ́ẹ̀ ni. So ti yé yín, àwọn people yìí they were pagans, they were polytheists. Gbogbo nǹkan tí wọ́n ń ṣe yẹn ni àwọn wá package lẹ́ni ní Islam pẹ̀lú wípé ó wá láti ọ̀dọ̀ Ọlọ́run ọba tàwa, which is not so.
Okay, sir.
So ẹni sùúrù you have the book àṣà aláṣà, that is the point we are trying to establish. Àṣà aláṣà òun ni Islam. Àṣà aláṣà òun ni ẹ̀sìn Islam. And that àṣà aláṣà tá à ń sọ̀rọ̀ yìí includes the culture of the Arabia. That is it. And it clearly differentiates it from our own. So gbogbo ìtẹ́yìn can sing. If you are not still surprised in any way that and then I don't know how to engage you further. But I will advise you
this is not
I'm not surprised. Have a full comprehension of this book. Please read the other chapters.
Mr. Gbati, ẹ máa wọn mú tì mọ́. How many minutes if you sorrow? You see anybody to interject me? Please, for now, don't.
The point is this: gbogbo nǹkan tí these two chapters still reveal clearly. Àkọ́kọ́ ńbẹ̀, ẹ̀yin náà ẹ gbọ́ lẹ́nu bí tó tí ẹni ti sọ nípa bó ṣe tó Quran jọ. Kí la wá ń parọ́ fáwọn èèyàn wa fún wípé wọ́n sọ̀kalẹ̀ lọ́jọ́ kan tí àwọn very soon sí lọ́jọ́ Ramadan bọ̀ sí wọ́n á tún bẹ̀rẹ̀ sí ń ṣe làlátùlù kọ́dún èkèrè. People should stop saying all this trash. Àti rí clearly wípé ẹnìkan ló kójọ, in fact ẹni tó kójọ ìgbà tó kọ́kọ́ kójọ gan ó tún gbàgbé àwọn verses kankan. So definitely Ọlọ́run ló mọye verses tí Zaid ò include sínú Quran tó wà lẹ́ni, and Ọlọ́run ló mọye.
Eléyìí tí ẹran jẹ bàbá mi ṣe gbàgbé pé ìyá ńlá wa Aisha sọ pé wúrẹ́ jẹ àwọn kan náà.
So it is not from Zaid admission. The funniest thing, mo engage AI lórí kìíní to see what other scholars, Islamic scholars have said about this. And they said they admitted clearly that even the compilation of the Quran in its current form today is bid'ah. Mo fẹ́ kí Mr. Agbati kó challenge ẹ̀. because it's not in record wípé Muhammad said tóun bá ti kú o pé kí wọ́n kó Quran jọ ní bó ṣe wà lénìí. Àwọn èèyàn ọgbọ́n Abubakar ni wọ́n fi kó Quran jọ lénìí. So the credit of Quran today as we have it goes to that guy. Muhammad had no idea, no inkling of whatever is called Quran tó fi kú. So Abubakar ló kọ sílẹ̀, and kudos to Zaid. And ẹ̀dẹ̀gbọ́n bíi tí author sọ wípé Zaid was reluctant to even go ahead and compile it because Muhammad ò ṣe nílé ayé, and they were all afraid or scared of doing anything called bid'ah. Bẹ́ẹ̀ ṣe máa ń pè, permit me, mo lè má mọ the correct pronunciation.
I mean, Bidia náà ń pè Bidia.
So,
In fact, ní láti mọ̀ kò ń ṣèdè wa. It has nothing to do with us.
So that is exactly what they did with the compilation of the Quran. And in the course of compiling it, Ereti Zaid admit wípé òun gbàgbé àwọn verses kan sílẹ̀. Wọ́n ní láti ṣẹ̀ṣẹ̀ lọ máa wá papọ̀ ni. Ẹ tún wá wo bá tún ṣe tó. Ẹ rí the order ẹ. Ṣé bí order tí wọ́n fi gba kinní ẹ̀ wá nìyẹn ni? No. Wọ́n ti wọ́n bá yín àná ẹ̀ wọ́n ní wípé Fatia, ìdí tí Fatia fi wà lákọ̀ọ́kọ́ kò ju wípé during the time of Muhammad himself, ọ̀pọ̀lọpọ̀ ti ń lo as a prayer. Wọ́n ti ń lo as a prayer ló fi mú wá lákọ̀ọ́kọ́. Gbogbo èyí tó wá kó tẹ̀lé, wọ́n wá mú wọn bí wọ́n ṣe gùn sí. Ẹjọ́ look at it. Àwọn èèyàn wọ́n wá sọ ìhà Quran sórí gẹ́gẹ́ bí owó opportunity láti make money. And how do I mean? Ẹ wo, the more the number of surahs tó bá wà lọ́kàn ẹ, the more the number of war spoils that goes to you. Imagine, the more the number of surahs tó bá mọ̀ tó há sórí ńgbà ẹ ló máa determine bóyá wọ́n máa fi ẹ jẹ imam. And that is what many of you are still doing to date. Ẹ máa ń fún àwọn èèyàn ní imam on the basis of ẹni tó mọ iye surah mélòó lẹ́ni ìmọ̀. That is the fact. So again, it clearly shows that ká máa parọ́ wípé Ọlọ́run ló dá, it doesn't exist. It doesn't. It does not. From this black stone, we already know the origin. It's meteoric origin. Simple. It's just that. So, Mr. Agbati, just take your time, read this book, okay?
No,
And then
I understand you, sir.
tí o lè agree pẹ̀lú yín bàbá mi ẹ má yára yín lọ́nà
ní kó agree, mi ò expect
ẹnjìnìà
you, but I
Àgbàtì
want our
alápàdé
people.
àlùdé ni ẹ gbàgbé
I want our
ẹrú
once you empower our
aláàtúkèrè
people
ọkọ̀
with
wọn
the right
72
information.
bàjì wọn bàbá Àgbàtì fẹ́ lọ bá 72 bàjì.
True. There is another book. There are many books.
Tó bá jẹ́ pé ẹni tó wà educated according to how he claims.
Now,
Pẹ̀lú
I
àwọn
don't expect
evidence
that. I
tó
don't
ti
expect
láti
Mr.
ọ̀dọ̀
Agbadi to
ẹgbàgbé
come and
àwọn
tell
eléyìí
me
wọ́n máa kú sínú Islam.
that Quran is sọ̀kalẹ̀ látọ̀run wá. He won't do that to me. I won't even entertain him. I won't even listen to him. With what I've read, if you are saying anything contrary to what I've read there, then you must come up with your own evidence.
Láti sọ ọmọ kan jẹ́ kàkà kò ẹ ṣeun kò sọ̀rọ̀ mọ́ Mr. Agba. Thank you very much for your time.
Yes,
Thank you
sir.
Bami Eshu. Thank you.
All right,
Kò sọ̀rọ̀ mọ́.
all right, no problem. Hold on.
Mr. Agbati
Thank
72 bàjì
Bàbá Èṣù tó fún mi, ẹ ṣé
ní
o, ẹ ṣé àdúpẹ́ o.
72 bàjì yín lágbára Elédùmarè. Ẹ má wọrí kí ni yín á dúró gbọ́n. Bẹ́ẹ̀ ṣe máa mú kan lẹ́ máa lù kan. Ìka máa dín, ìka máa lù. Mo understand. Kò easy. Tèmi gan bá jẹ́ Mùsùlùmí lókùnrin àti fẹ̀sìn yẹn rẹ̀ á nira fún mi. Mo understand. Ẹ ṣeun.
Ṣẹ́rí Dr. Sabi, ẹ má bínú nítorí Ọlọ́run, a mọ ọ̀gbẹ́ni yẹn. Ṣẹ́rí bó ṣe máa sọ̀rọ̀ first spoken, àsìkò máa tún máa ṣe bí ẹni pé bóyá ó máa ṣe bí ẹni pé a máa throw victim card bí ẹni pé à ń fìyà jẹun.
Ní sùúrù ẹ dárúkọ mi kí lẹ ní mo ṣe torí mo ti
nǹkan tí mo ń sọ ni pé mo ní ẹ má bínú pé bá a ṣe ń engage ọ̀gbẹ́ni yẹn a mọ̀ dáadáa lórí platform yìí bó ṣe máa soft spoken a máa ṣèṣe bí ẹni pé bóyá victim card pé àjẹ́ kí n sọ̀rọ̀ à ń gàǹgò òun at the end of the day kò ní sọ anything.
Mi tẹ wá fẹ́ béèrè question lọ́wọ́ ẹ̀ kó tó di pé ó lọ ni wípé because ó sọ wípé nǹkan wípé correction ni ànábì wa ṣe pé kí ni ṣó lè sọ fún wa bí correction bíi méjì mẹ́ta lẹ́yìn ìgbà tí wọ́n ti kọ́kọ́ fún Jésù tán ti kọ Bible kí ni correction tó wá ṣe yẹn bóyá kán kírun ni o according to them wọ́n lọ ti ń kírun tẹ́lẹ̀tẹ́lẹ̀ bóyá kán ṣàlùwàlá ni o according to ìwé tó wà nílẹ̀ pẹ̀lú proof àwọn kan ti wà tán ti ń ṣe gbogbo kinní yẹn bọ́n ṣe ń sin òkú bọ́n ṣe ń ṣe gbogbo everything ó ti ń exist kí wàá ní correction yes àwọn Sabian ìwé àwọn yẹn wà nílẹ̀ wípé gbogbo wákàtí 5 everything bọ́n ṣe ń bẹ̀rẹ̀ kírun bọ́n ṣe ó yá kí ni correction tó fẹ́ sọ ìyẹn gan ni mo fẹ́ béèrè mi mọ̀ ẹ́pẹ́ tí ẹ ti fẹ́ yọ.
Ó
yẹ kó yé wa ó dàbí irú Alpha Malik ni tí Alpha Malik tó bá ń prove àwọn nǹkan kan sìn wọ́n máa sọ wípé bóyá torí pé ó ti kúrò nínú Islam tèmi náà bá ń sọ nǹkan kan sìn wọ́n máa nítorí pé mo ti kúrò nínú Islam lèèyàn ṣe ń bàjẹ́ náà nǹkan téèyàn mọ̀ ni èèyàn mú proof jáde èèyàn mú reference jáde ó yàtọ̀ sí pé èèyàn ń ba nǹkan jẹ́ nǹkan tó ṣẹlẹ̀ pẹ̀lú gbogbo nǹkan tí gbogbo wa ta sáré lọ kà lórí Google nsìn náà nìyẹn kò tiẹ̀ sound new létí èmi because bóyá bíi 80% nǹkan tó wà ń bẹ̀ lèèyàn ti mọ̀ wípé kíní èèyàn kó jọ wípé wọ́n kó jọ ni wọ́n kọ́ sára ilé ni kódà gan lẹ́ran gbé kan lọ ìyàwó ẹ̀ náà sọ náà wípé àwọn kan wà tó jẹ́ gbogbo àwọn nǹkan ẹ̀ bọ̀ bí ìgbà tó jẹ́ pé wọ́n wá ṣe àkójọpọ̀ ẹ̀ onítọ̀hún yẹn ráyè ó wá ṣe àkójọpọ̀ tó dẹ̀ ṣe yẹn mi ò rí ibì kankan tó fi jẹ́ pé bóyá bóyá o exaggerate àbí nǹkan bí kankan tó exist gangan òun ni nǹkan tó ṣàlàyé nínú àwọn nǹkan tó ṣàlàyé ń bẹ̀ yẹn bọ̀ ẹni tó bá sì wà nínú ẹ̀sìn ó máa try láti máa wá nǹkan kan láti fi ẹ̀ǹdì nǹkan irọ́ dẹ̀ ni ìyẹn ló fà á láti ilẹ̀ gan tán fi sínú ẹ̀ wípé ẹgbọ́n nǹkan tí àáfàá Jamiu Adégún àsọ wípé ẹni tó bá kúrò wọn ní kan pa torí kíni ó máa lọ máa tú àṣírí wọn kí ni àṣírí irú àwọn nǹkan báyìí náà ní í sìn irú ẹni tó sọ irú nǹkan báyìí wọn bìlíìfì pé ó tú àṣírí bó kó tú àṣírí reality ni ó tọ̀ ọ̀rọ̀ ni òótọ́ ọ̀rọ̀ ni nǹkan tó sọ gbogbo hadith tó ń ṣẹlẹ̀ yẹn gan náà 100% hadith ẹ̀yìn ànábì náà ti kọ hadith oníkálukú náà jáde tó ń sọ ìròrí ẹ̀ àtẹni tó bá láyé àtẹni tí ò bá láyé àtẹni tó èyí tó pé èyí tí ò pé àwọn náà kàn ń dá tiwọn síta ni bẹ́ẹ̀ náà lè jẹ́ pẹ̀lú ọ̀rọ̀ Quran náà nìyẹn tó máa sọ pé page of Quran jẹ́ 1000 a lè nígbàgbọ́ ń sìn wípé bóyá 20 gan ló wà nílẹ̀ ọ̀rọ̀ yẹn gan ò pé gan àwọn gan náà mọ̀ pé ọ̀rọ̀ ò pé báwo la fẹ́ mọ̀ èyí tó pé àti èyí tó pé àti èyí tán yọ àti èyí tán yọ ìyẹn la fi ń sọ wípé àwọn èèyàn tán kó kínní tán wá ṣàtàn kó jọ àwa ọmọ ọ̀sìn yìí tán bá gbé wa sílẹ̀ kan ní kájọ jókòó sínú kíláàsì kan náà a smart jù wọ́n lọ torí láyé tá wà lọ́wọ́lọ́wọ́ yìí àwa ti ní àwọn instrument tá lè fi gbá research a ti ní àwọn nǹkan lóríṣiríṣi tá lè lò ọ̀pọ̀lọpọ̀ àwọn nǹkan tó ń ṣẹlẹ̀ ní surroundings wọn ládùúgbò wọn ní agbègbè wọn òun ní ọ̀pọ̀lọpọ̀ nǹkan tó ń fi kọ̀ọ̀kan tó ń kọ yìí pẹ̀lú àwa tó jẹ́ wípé nǹkan tó ń ṣẹlẹ̀ nílùú mi ń sìn tó bá fẹ́ èmi àti èèyàn kan sọ̀rọ̀ lọ́jọ́ kan tó ní nǹkan tó ń ṣẹlẹ̀ ní Ṣàgámù báwo mo ṣe mọ̀ mo ní ẹ jókòó síbẹ̀ ibẹ̀ ní kẹwàá nǹkan tẹ jẹ lálẹ́ àná gan tí má béèrè lọ́wọ́ Google gan lè lọ gbé wá ṣáwọn ní àǹfààní yẹn ń gbà yẹn no ọ̀hún ní. pé àwọn onífá bíi 14 bíi nǹkankan tó pè wọ́n sílẹ̀ tó bẹ̀rẹ̀ sí ní kán máa dáfá within 7 days wọ́n máa rí solution síbẹ̀ wọ́n máa mọ nǹkan tó bá máa ṣe solution wà nínú ọ̀rọ̀ títí wa ní máa ní ẹ lọ jókòó ẹ lọ máa ṣe ìwúre ní kẹ máa ṣe ẹ máa gbàdúrà ẹ máa lọ sínú àwẹ̀ ẹ máa lọ sínú kinní kan ẹ lọ sórí òkè tí àwọn onífá bá gbé ifá jọlẹ̀ wọ́n máa wò wọ́n máa mọ̀ wọ́n máa béèrè lọ́wọ́ ara wọn máa ṣe àpérò tẹ́lẹ̀dùmarè dẹ̀ máa fi wọ̀n wọ́n tó máa fi sọ pé nǹkan báyìí ní kẹ́ ṣe tó bá tún ṣe tí ò báyìí ti dà wọ́n tún ní ẹ tún lọ repeat ẹ tún ṣe tó bá tún ṣe wọ́n máa tún ní òkè ẹ gbé gbọ́ náà bí báyìí ẹ tún ṣe báyìí ẹ tún ṣe báyìí ṣé ló ní mo pa ní ẹ̀yin bàbá mi ìyá mi tẹ wà lórí ìkànnì kán wá wo èyí tán wá gbé wá fún wa tán máa ní ẹ ṣáà máa ṣàdúrà ní ẹ fìgbàgbọ́ gbé kinní kan gbogbo ibẹ̀ yẹn ń sìn I'm pretty sure pé gbogbo ibi tán ti lé wọn kúrò ní Ìlọrin yẹn bóyá àwọn oníṣẹ̀ṣe bóyá 1% ló máa wà ń bẹ̀ ẹnu ọ̀rọ̀ wo lọ́ní àwọn 90 bóyá bíi 88 ló máa jẹ́ mùsùlùmí àwọn táṣẹrẹ ló máa jẹ́ Christian nǹkan wá torí pé àmọ́ fẹ́ jẹ́ ká mọ rírì ẹ̀ ni buhari ti padà ń sìn láti lè mọ̀ wípé kíní ní kíní wa bèbí ti ṣẹ́jú ẹ̀hán fẹ́ pé èèyàn kan lẹ́lẹ́bọ yẹn ká fi ọwọ́ máa sọ̀yà ẹlẹ́bọ gangan ni mí kódà gan mò ń jẹ bọ.
ìyá mi ń dùn tazabi.
àwa máa ṣẹbọ kú ni ọlọ́run tẹ bá dẹ̀ ń pọ̀ ọlọ́run olódùmarè ní ẹ bá ń pè láàlá ẹlẹ́bọ làlá nìyẹn tó ọlọ́run olódùmarè ti wa olórí ajẹbọ ni.
ìyá mi ancestor ẹ fún mi 1 second.
ẹ ṣeun.
ẹ jọ̀ọ́ ẹ fún mi 1 second. Afa Abdulateef nítorí mo fi gun òkè wá nítorí mo ń send request sí yín ẹ ní gbogbo àtàwà lẹ́yìn ètò àtó ìka ọwọ́ yín ọyọ̀ kan mo ti à ń send request sí yín ẹ sì ń decline ṣẹ́gun bá yín láti wá ṣe jihad lókè ni a ní lọ́nu gọ́ọ̀gù one àtàdísì tí ẹ mọ̀ ìmọ̀tẹ́ni náà òun la máa ná lẹ́yìn ètò yìí a sì mọ̀ gbé jáde tó bá dẹ̀yìn lójú ní pé àtó ìka ọwọ́ yín ìyàn kan ló máa bá yín debate ẹ̀sìn gbogbo ohun tẹ bá sì sọ ẹ máa yọ èyí ẹ̀ jáde gbogbo ohun táwọn náà bá sọ a máa yọ èyí ẹ̀ jáde tẹ bá lè kọ́ mọ̀ èyí tẹ máa wà ń comment section tẹ mọ̀ táìpù kan tí ò sí yẹn tẹ mọ̀ lọ́wọ́ onú gọ́ọ̀gù kẹ tó táìpù nítorí mo ṣọ́ fún yín pé ẹ̀ lọ léwu ó ṣọ́ fún mi dákú ọ̀tún ó bá tó yín nítorí mo fààyè kan lẹ̀ gbogbo yẹn tí wọ́n bá bẹ̀ mọ́ yọ wọn ẹ kọ́ mọ̀ bùwá kẹ wá defend ní tẹgbẹ́ sọ.
ẹ kúrọ̀lẹ́ gbogbo lé ẹjọ́ ṣé mo lè sọ̀rọ̀.
gbogbo lé ń kí yín bá màmá mi ẹ káàbọ̀.
ẹ kúṣẹ́. olúwa túbọ̀ máa ṣàgbára yín dọ̀tún. because gbogbo àwọn bàbá pé wọ́n ti fi ẹ̀sìn wọ́n ti fi gba àṣà wọ́n ti fi gba ìṣe wọ́n ti fi ba gbogbo nǹkan tó yẹ kán máa bọ tó yẹ kán gbogbo ètùtù tó yẹ kán máa ṣe wọ́n ti fi gbà á dànù lọ́wọ́ wọn. eléyìí tí àwọn tí irú yín tí àwọn olówó èkó àwọn ms bàbá ṣẹ̀ṣẹ̀ bẹ̀rẹ̀ sí ní ṣe òun gangan ló ń jẹ́ kí ojú wọn máa wá là. ìfà mò ń wo máàlù ààrẹ ọ̀nà kakanfò recently nígbà tó ń sọ̀rọ̀ ní ààfin ọba Ifẹ̀ wípé nísìnyí gbogbo àwọn ọba tán bá máa fi jẹ wọ́n mọ̀ pé àwọn tán rẹ́dì láti ṣe ìṣẹ̀ṣe ìwọ tó bá jẹ́ àfà má débẹ̀ ìwọ tó bá jẹ́ pásítọ̀ má débẹ̀ so that wọ́n á lè máa ṣe nǹkan tó yẹ kán ṣe ètùtù gbogbo nǹkan ní ṣe last week ni kí ni máa bí mi nù o ọba Gádì èèyàn kan ń ṣe interview fún wọn nínú ààfin ṣé ẹ dẹ̀ mọ̀ pé through the interview à ń gbọ́ bí wọ́n ṣe ń kírun kíní yẹn was so loud tẹ́ pé you can hardly hear what ọba Gandhi was saying bí ìgbà tẹ́ pé ìmáàmù yẹn mọ̀ọ́mọ̀ ó loud speaker yẹn àwọn ọ̀rọ̀ tó ń sọ gan ẹ̀ máa gbọ́ ní abẹ́lẹ̀ wọ́n á wò pé tí ò bá kí n ṣe pé àwọn ọba wa gan ìgbà tí wọ́n láṣẹ kò jọ pé kò yẹ kí wọ́n ti allow mosque kó wà ní agbègbè ààfin kò yẹ kí wọ́n allow church kó wà ní agbègbè ààfin débi tó máa bá wọn tákà àlejò níyín gbogbo àṣà àti ṣe wọ́n ti ń ṣe kí wọ́n tó mú ẹ̀sìn wá ẹ̀yin tí wọ́n wá invite ẹ̀yin tí wọ́n gbà gẹ́gẹ́ bí àlejò ẹ ti gba ilé mọ́ onílé lọ́wọ́ ẹ̀yin lẹ tí wàá ń pàṣẹ ẹ̀yin lẹ ń yanba ẹ̀yin lẹ ń yanga tẹ́ ẹ ní ìmáàmù ju ọba lọ Sherry, there are many wrongs that needs to be put right. Things has really gone so bad. Recently nígbà tí wọ́n ń ṣe ọdún ìṣẹ̀ṣe ní Òṣogbo bàbá onífá kan sọ̀rọ̀ ó ní ọba gọ́vnà Ọ̀ṣun state gan sọ wípé ẹ̀yin lẹ́sùn tẹ́lẹ̀ nísìnyí tẹ̀dẹ̀ ti jí àbẹ̀rẹ̀ ní ṣe ẹ̀tọ́ wa ṣẹ́rí first thing táwọn oníṣẹ̀ṣe wa gangan láti fight pàápàá ni pé they have to recognize them. Wọ́n recognize the foreign religion nínú constitution Nigeria. Àṣà tó wà nílẹ̀ gan kí wọ́n tó gbé ẹ̀sìn àwọn ẹ̀sìn tó ti bà Nigeria jẹ́ ìdè wọ́n recognize wọn. Èyí tó wá jẹ́ ti ilẹ̀ gangan the foundation wọ́n recognize ẹ̀. Ara fight tí wọ́n yẹ kó ṣẹ́rí tó bá yẹ pé ó dàbí pé kí n ní agbára kí n wo gbogbo mọ́ṣáláṣí tó wà ní Nàìjíríà kí n wo gbogbo churches tó wà ní Nàìjíríà bó ṣe máa ń ṣe mí ṣe báwọn èèyàn ní China wọn ò allow churches wọn ò ní kéèyàn máa practice religion rẹ̀ but individual practice it in your room. Our bold enough láti sọ wípé all this religion has brought nothing than chaos to our country, to our nation. Begin to practice all this thing in your room. Personal religion, first of all, with billions of billions. Tí wọ́n dà sí Saudi every year. Ìyá kan mi mọ̀ bóyá yìí náà wo fọ́nrán yẹn. Was it last year or early this year? Tí ìyá yẹn sunkún kó òun fẹ́ lọ sí Mecca. Wọ́n dẹ̀ show yàrá tí ìyá yìí ń gbé. Ẹ bá ìyá yìí sunkún. Inú yàrá kan tí ò sí nǹkan kan nínú ẹ̀. Ìyá yìí dẹ̀ fẹ́ kó 10-11 million lọ sí Mecca. Ẹ rí pé àṣàsí ti wọ ẹ̀sìn wọn yìí.
Àwọn ọmọ ẹ̀ ò dẹ̀ jẹun kánú.
Ẹ wá gbogbo àṣírí irú èmi náà ilé onímùsùlùmí ọmọ Ìjẹ̀bú-Òde ni mí. Thank God pé àwọn òbí tiwa wọ́n gbọ́n gbà yẹn wọ́n fún wa lórúkọ mùsùlùmí o ṣùgbọ́n àwọn orúkọ tó ń sọ wá gbogbo wa la lórúkọ mẹ́rin orúkọ Yorùbá àṣé ìgbà tẹ́yìn wọ́n máa ń pè àwa Olúbùsọ́lá àṣà wa rò pé Olúwa lómìnà àṣé Olú gangan Olú òòṣà bí mímọ èèyàn kan sọ pé bóyá Ògún àbí nǹkan kan ni mí nìyí àwọn Olú yẹn ṣe mọ̀ kò ń sí Olúwa ń bẹ àwa láṣẹ fún Olúwa kún Olú kinní kan náà ń sọ gbogbo wa àwọn òbí wa yẹ kẹ̀ wọ́n gbọ́n àwọn ò tẹ orúkọ Muslim mọ́ wa lára orúkọ Yorùbá ni wọ́n tẹ̀ mọ́ gbogbo wa lára ẹ wo ìran àwọn mùsùlùmí ayé òde ìní ṣe mọ̀ pé tẹ́lẹ̀ tẹ́ bá bi èèyàn pé kí lorúkọ yín tẹ́ni yẹn bá dárúkọ tó bá sọ sọ́ọ̀nì mọ́ ẹ̀ you can easily detect mi tẹ́ni yẹn ti wá mi ti máa sọ pé èmi Olúwàbùsọ́lá Awósànyà mi ní láti ìfá bẹ́ẹ̀ ní láti mọ̀lú tí mo ti wá kẹ́ tó mọ̀ pọ̀ mọ̀ Jẹ̀bú ni mí ẹ lè má mọ̀ Jẹ̀bú tí mo ti wà bọ̀ ẹ mọ̀ pọ̀ mọ̀ Jẹ̀bú ni mí ṣùgbọ́n nísìnyí ẹ̀yàn kan ẹ wo orúkọ tó ń jẹ́ tó bá dá orúkọ wọn sìnyí ẹ ṣe máa béèrè pé ọmọ ìlú bo ni yín ni níbo lẹ ti wá orúkọ tí ò ní mí ní orúkọ táwọn gan mọ̀ túmọ̀ ẹ̀ irú èmi gan sì Ìdáyà tán sọ mí mo ẹ̀ṣẹ̀ mọ̀ bóyá ṣé bí àbí kí náà pè mí ẹ wà àwọn orúkọ òṣì tí wọ́n sọ̀yàn báwo ni àwọn ọmọ tí wọ́n bí look at categories of the children born into the Muslim pẹ̀lú àwọn orúkọ tí wọ́n ń pè wọ́n báwo náà ṣe ní ìyá oníjàgídíjàgan báwo ni wọn ṣe ní máa pààyàn conveniently nígbà tó yẹ pé nǹkan tó wà nínú ìwé tí wọ́n ń kà nìyẹn ẹ wo that boy tó pa girlfriend ẹ̀ nílọrin look at his innocent face ṣé èèyàn lè sọ pé ìyẹn lè dá ẹdìyẹ pa tó dẹ̀ pa èèyàn tó kún wẹ́lẹ́wẹ́lẹ́ because it was easier for him to do torí ìwé tó ń kà torí nǹkan burúkú tó ti wà nínú ìwé tí wọ́n ń kà tó ẹ wo ìgbà tí wọ́n ti fi wọ́n sílé kéwú ẹ wo China láti age 4 wọ́n ti máa ń mú àwọn ọmọ yẹn lọ sí technical school instead táwọn fúwa ti ń fún àwọn ọmọ tí wọ́n lọ sílé kéwú technical school náà máa kó wọn lọ wọ́n á kọ́ wọn bó ṣe ń ṣe oúnjẹ wọ́n ń kọ́ wọn ní mechanic wọ́n ń kọ́ wọn ní iṣẹ́ ọwọ́ wọ́n ń lọ sí school wọ́n tún wá ní technical school instead táwọn ọmọ tiwa tó lọ ń fi àkókò àti ìgbà wọn ṣòfò nílé kéwú ọmọ mi àwa lè kéwú for 5-10 years wọ́n á ní wọ́n kíní tí wọ́n náà máa ń kà tó tẹ̀ máa ń ṣe wòlímọ̀ ẹ jọ̀ọ́ ẹ sọ fún mi kí ni wọ́n fi ń ṣe at the end of it amounts to nothing gbogbo àfáà tá a ní gbogbo wọn náà àfáà lọ́sàn-án ẹlẹ́bọ ni wọ́n lóru ìdájì àwọn gbogbo àwọn ìyàwó aláàfáà nílọrin àwọn nìyá jágbe elégbò ilé àwọn tó wọ́n ń ta ewé ọmọ so who are we deceiving ẹ wo nǹkan tí wọ́n ti fi ẹ̀sìn yìí tí wọ́n ti fi bàjẹ́ nílẹ̀ wa nǹkan tó wá dùn mí jù ni pé àwa Yorùbá àwa ni ògiri wa lánàá jù àwa lògiri wa lanu jù, Fúlàní ti wà láàrin wa, wọ́n gbọ́ Yorùbá, ìmí gbọ́ Yorùbá jù wá lọ. Ìfọ̀ ọmọ Ìgbò kan ó ń sọ Yorùbá, ọmọ Òṣogbo ni, Ògbóṣogbo ló gbé, ó ń sọ Yorùbá, ó ń pa òwe tí ò bá sọ orúkọ ẹ̀ fún yín, ní mọ̀ pé kò tiẹ̀ tọ́ ọmọ Yorùbá rárá. So bo láti fẹ́ bẹ̀rẹ̀, but we have started o. We have started because àwọn èèyàn ti ń kúrò díẹ̀díẹ̀, kò kàn tí ì lọ dáadáa ni. Ẹ wo gbogbo àwọn òbí wa, àwa kan àwọn òbí wa ti kú sínú ẹ̀ tí wọ́n mọ̀, tí wọ́n kéwú tán ké. Wọ́n mọ̀ gbogbo translation yóò tí ì sí nígbà táwọn wà láyé. Ẹ wo kúrá gbogbo mo rántí ìgbà táwọn kékeré grandfather mi ó máa ń nà wá ní nísàlẹ̀ Èkó tá bá ń kírun tá bá sùn lọ. Tá máa ṣàmì, àṣẹ gbogbo nǹkan tá ń kà, tá ń ṣe àmì sí, àṣẹ rubbish ni kò ní túmọ̀. Ṣùgbọ́n síbẹ̀síbẹ̀ ẹ wo àwọn tó ṣì wá sórí bíbá yìí tí wọ́n wá ń jà. Bóyá torí pé ọ̀nà ìjẹ wọ́n fẹ́ dí ni o. Bóyá torí pé nǹkan tí wọ́n ń ṣe wọn ò ní lè rí ṣe mọ́, mi mọ̀ nǹkan tó ń ta wọ́n lára kẹ́ tó sọ̀rọ̀, èpè náà máa ṣẹ́. Tí ò bá kí ṣe pé ojú òtì yín náà. Ẹ wo àwọn mùsùlùmí ẹgbẹ́ yín tí wọ́n lọ ń ṣiṣẹ́ ní Libya, tí wọ́n lọ ń ṣiṣẹ́ ní Qatar. Ẹ wo bí wọ́n ṣe ń pa wọ́n. Mùsùlùmí kan náà ní gbogbo yín o. Ṣé ìyẹn ò jẹ́ kó rí yín pé wọn ò recognize yín, wọn ò mọ̀ yín. Ẹ̀yin ilẹ̀ ń bá wọn ṣe àṣà wọn. Gbogbo ẹ̀ náà ti kà fún wa, ló ti yé wa yékéyéké. Gbogbo nǹkan tẹ́yin mùsùlùmí ń ṣe ẹbọ náà lẹ lọ ń ṣe. Àṣà àti ṣe wọn tí wọ́n ti ń ṣe kí Muhammad tó gbé Islam dé Mecca. Wọ́n ti ń ṣe, wọ́n wá bá yín package ẹ̀ dáadáa. Ẹ̀yin ọlọ́pọlọ kúkúrú, ẹ tún wá lọ ń bá wọn ṣe. Ògiri wọn ó ní iye ẹ̀mí tó máa ń gbà lọ́dọọdún, ẹ̀yin ni wọ́n fi ń rúbọ. Ẹ sọ iye ọdún kan tí àwọn èèyàn lọ síbẹ̀ kàtẹ́mi ò sọnù. Ẹ wo iye ẹ̀mí tó máa ń bọ́ ní ọdọọdún. Ṣé mọ̀ pé wọ́n ní wọ́n ṣe ń lọ yẹn, wọ́n máa tún pẹran níbẹ̀ o, wọ́n ń ta ẹ̀jẹ̀ sílẹ̀. Ẹ wá gbé ẹnu yín gbọ̀ngbọ̀, ẹ máa wá sọ wọ́n ń pẹran sórí Ògún, wọ́n ń pẹran sórí kinní kan. Ẹ mú ti yín. Ṣé ara àwọn people yẹn wọ́n gbọ̀n, wọ́n mọ̀ pé we have the genuine power from the above. Wọ́n kọ́kọ́ fi ẹ̀sìn, because èèyàn kan sọ story ọba ńlá yẹn, ó ní tẹ́lẹ̀, ó ní kò sẹ́ni tó lè kọjú ogun bá ìlú yẹn. Ó ní bí wọ́n ṣe lágbára tó. Ó ní bọ̀ wọ́n kọ́kọ́ mú gbogbo àwọn ìṣẹ̀ṣe wọn, àwọn kinní wọn, wọ́n ní kàn lọ dáná sun. Wọ́n dáná sun, wọ́n bà gbogbo ẹ̀ jẹ́. Nísìnyí gbogbo lásìá tó máa ń bá àwọn ará Ìlọrin sọ̀rọ̀, àwọn ará Kwara, wọ́n láwọn ṣe kinní o. Fúlàní làwọn o. Nísìnyí wọ́n ṣù àwọn kan tó wá ń pè Ìgbòho, wọn ò ṣe pé Fúlàní ẹgbẹ́ wọn. Wọn ò ṣe bọ́ ní Kùránì sọ̀kalẹ̀ láti sánmọ̀ ni. So Kùránì yẹn wọn ò rí sọ̀kalẹ̀ pé kó wá gbà wọ́n sìn. Who are we deceiving? I just hope pé this new era, àwọn tiwa náà tí wọ́n fẹ́ máa build ilé Ifá, they will not end up being like the Muslim, like the Christian. We need to integrate ibi táwọn ọmọ wa náà ti máa kọ́ ẹ̀kọ́ bọ́n ṣe ń kọ́ wọn ní Ifá. Àkọ́ tí èmi láìkì jù ní Ifá, ẹ mọ àwọn gbólóhùn tẹ́ pé táwọn bàbá yẹn bá ń ṣe àdúrà, wọ́n máa pe àwọn gbólóhùn mọ́ àdúrà yẹn bí ìgbà tẹ́ pé kán máa sọ̀rọ̀, kí wọ́n máa mi ìmọ̀ bí mo bí àjàlá náà máa ń pè ní mi ìmọ̀ nǹkan tó ń pè, tí wọ́n máa sọ̀rọ̀ pẹ̀lú àdúrà yẹn gan, irun ara yín wọ́n máa dìde ni wọ́n bá ṣe ń ṣe àdúrà yẹn. Gbogbo nǹkan bẹ́ẹ̀ ló yẹ kán máa kọ́ àwọn èèyàn, kí àwọn oníṣẹ̀ṣe wá bọ́ ṣe máa fight ẹ̀ bí wọ́n ṣe ń kọ́ wọn ní Kùránì àti Bible ní school, kí wọ́n bẹ̀rẹ̀ sí ní kọ́ wọn ní gbólóhùn Ifá náà ní school. Àṣà ilẹ̀ Yorùbá lèmi sọ, mi mọ ilẹ̀ tó kù o, bó àṣà àti ṣe tiwa ní nǹkan táwọn àti ń ṣe kí wọ́n tó gbé foreign religion wá ní, kí wọ́n integrate into our own education as well. We can fight it. Ní north kan tó bá wọn ni wọ́n ṣe. Ìgbà tí sultan wọn àbí tí governor kan ní àwọn ọmọ ilé ìwé wọn gbọ́dọ̀ lọ sí school during the fasting, kò sẹ́ni tó bá wọn fight ẹ̀. Wọn ò ní Christian wà láàrin wọn, jẹ́ káwọn náà lọ sí school. So nǹkan táwa náà bá fẹ́ ṣe nílẹ̀ Yorùbá wa, we have the right to do it. Tá bá fight ẹ̀ pé you need to integrate Ifá into the education of our land. Ilẹ̀ wa ò ṣe Lárúbáwá. Àwọn Mùsùlùmí bóyá wọ́n kọgi mọ́ wọn létí ni o, bóyá wọ́n kàn mọ̀ọ́mọ̀ fẹ́ ya adití ni o, wọ́n ti kàwé yìí fún yín. Wọ́n ní wọn ò ní rán òjíṣẹ́ kankan sí yín láì jẹ́ pé èdè yín ló ń sọ. Ẹjọ́ torí Ọlọ́run, ṣé Muhammed ń sọ Yorùbá ni àbí ṣé ó ń sọ Jẹ̀bú ni, ṣé ó ń sọ Èkìtì ni, ṣé ó ń sọ Oǹdó ni? Wọ́n wá mọ̀ọ́mọ̀ ṣe fún yín, wọ́n rí pé èdè yẹn lẹ́ láti lọ kọ́ ẹlòmíì Arabic dùn lẹ́nu ẹ̀ bí ó dùn lẹ́nu ẹ̀ mọ̀yànmọ̀yànmọ̀yàn wọ́n máa ń ka gbogbo kinní rádaràda tó máa ń kà yẹn á sweet lọ létí yín ẹ máa ṣe ámì ohun tìgbà tá a mọ̀ pé rádaràda àṣẹ story náà ń kà fún wa ọlọ́run á ràn wá lọ́wọ́ gbogbo àwọn tí ọlọ́run ti tú sí lọ́lọ́run àti mo rí lórí program àwọn bàbá ms bàbá tó yẹ pé àwọn kan gan ti fẹ́ change orúkọ wọn tí wọ́n ti ẹ̀ ń support wọn bóyá wọ́n láti lọ sí court láti lọ change ẹ̀ tí wọ́n ń support wọn even financially to go and change their names kíní yìí ó ń rinlẹ̀ ju ibi tá a rò ó lọ ṣé mo bàbá 70 kan níjẹ̀bọ́dẹ bàbá yẹn ní àwọn ṣe gbọ́ pé ìtumọ̀ orúkọ àwọn that means pé àwọn èèyàn ń gbọ́ gan but nǹkan tá a kan láti realize pé àwọn èèyàn ti gbilẹ̀ sínú kíní yìí gan how do we want to convince them àwọn bàbá 70 àwọn bàbá 60 àwọn bàbá 90 ẹlòmíì gan ò sí lórí internet ẹlòmíì gan wọn ò ní play fún but at least we have started somewhere ìwọ̀nba tá à ń ṣe yìí náà ó ń débi kan but we just need to continue to do it ọlọ́run á ràn wá lọ́wọ́ that's just my little contribution ẹ ṣé.
ìyá wa a dúpẹ́ lọ́wọ́ yín o ẹ ní dàgbà ya o gbogbo wa pátápátá la máa jèrè ọmọ o a ní fojú sunkún ọmọ hàn ní gbòkó ọmọ káwa mọ́lẹ̀ o orí wa ò dẹ̀ ní dàrú gbogbo àwọn tó ń rò wípé àwọn nǹkan tá à ń ṣe yìí wípé sáwọn eléyìí ṣán wà òkè ṣá a wà òkè bàjẹ́bàjẹ́ jù yín lọ pẹ̀lú nǹkan tí ìyá wa sọ torí ẹ̀ ló fi jẹ́ wípé ẹ máa rí wípé platform lóríṣiríṣi ló wà nsìn àwọn nǹkan tẹ́yìn sọ yìí náà èmi náà mo ti gbà á sílẹ̀ mo ti gbóhùn yín sílẹ̀ ẹ mọ ibi tó hùn yín lè dé báyìí fẹ́ máa ṣe nìyẹn náà nsìn a máa spread ẹ̀ bọ́n ṣe ìgbà tán gbé wá fún wa àwọn ọmọ kéékèèké dẹ̀ ló ń mú àwọn ló ń mú sábẹ́ ọmọ kéékèèké ló ń mú from there ló máa ní wọ́n fẹ́ rán ọmọ ní school tí ò bá change orúkọ wọ́n fìyẹn náà ṣe ìdààmú fún ìran wa torí pé tóun bá wá kò sí ní education ti wà already bọ́n ṣe ń ṣe fìlà bọ́n ṣe ń ránṣọ bọ́n ṣe ń ṣe ọ̀nà gbogbo engineer gbogbo everything just name it wọ́n ti ń gbẹ̀bí kan tó gbẹ́sìn yìí wá òun kọ́ ló mú kò mú nǹkan kan wá fún wa òṣì àdánù ìyà ebi wàhálà ìdààmú ló kó bá ọ̀tá wa kò mú nǹkan kan wá fún wa gbogbo ọ̀run tẹ̀ ń kí látọjọ́ kí ni ìtumọ̀ ọ̀run yẹn kí ni lájorí ẹ̀ kí ni lájorí àwẹ̀ wọ́n gbàwẹ̀ ẹlòmíì gbàwẹ̀ ó lọ́sà ẹlòmíì gbàwẹ̀ ó kàgbákò gbogbo nǹkan tó kí ló wá dà kí ló dà fún wa gangan torí ẹ̀ náà wípé bóyá ń ṣe la hate ẹ̀sìn yẹn bọ̀ ń ṣe la mọ̀ wípé ẹ̀sìn yẹn ti wá ba ti ọ̀tá wa jẹ́ adẹ̀ ńlá ti jáde tìkọ́rá ń sìn ni torí èèyàn bí èmi àtiwọ́ tó ń gbọ́ mi àwọn náà rìn wá láti inú ilẹ̀ desert ilẹ̀ tí ò lọ́ràá tí ò ní nǹkan kan wọ mọ́tò gan you can imagine wọ flight rìn gun ràkúnmí tún débì kan sunú igbó wá ń spread ẹ̀ lọ bẹ́ẹ̀ yẹn iṣẹ́ èmi àti yín sìn nìyẹn bá ṣe fẹ́ spread nǹkan yìí nìyẹn Yorùbá àwa la ní ẹ̀sìn wà nínú ẹ̀ ìṣẹ̀ṣe gbogbo nǹkan ní ìṣẹ̀ṣe ló kó sínú ní nǹkan kan tó jẹ́ wípé nǹkan àwa Ọlọ́run tiwa ò kì í ṣe ẹran kò dẹ̀ ń ṣe adìyẹ tá a fẹ́ máa sìn Elédùmarè tiwa òun ló ń ṣe aláàbò lórí wa a dẹ̀ ń bá sọ̀rọ̀ ó ń gbọ́ ó ń dá wa lóhùn kó tó di wípé wọ́n gbé yàmàyàmà rédèrèdè ìtàn gbé wá bá wa ẹni tó fẹ́ lọ lé ọkọ wọ́n máa lọ wọ́n ní kinní kan ló ń lọ̀yọ́ ìtọ̀nà ló lọ̀yọ́ tàbí nǹkan kan ó rí àwọn ancestors wa ó pé wọ́n máa lọ wò ó ní àti kékeré gan lọ́n máa ti mọ̀ ìgbà tán bá ti ṣe àkọsẹ̀jáde lọ́n máa ti mọ̀ wípé ẹni yìí ẹ má jẹ́ kó fẹ́ yàn pupa o ẹni yìí iṣẹ́ òwò ní kẹ́jẹ́ kó máa ṣe o ẹni yìí iṣẹ́ anything tó bá jọ bí omi òun ni kó máa ṣe o ẹni yìí o ẹ má jẹ́ kán gbé ọwọ́ lé lórí o ẹni ọmọ tí ẹ bí yìí o ó máa di ọba lọ́la o ẹ má jẹ́ kó máa oríṣiríṣi ló máa kà tán dẹ̀ ń ṣe bẹ́ẹ̀ tẹ́kù ké bí eku tẹ́yẹ ń ké bí ẹyẹ ọmọ èèyàn dẹ̀ ń fọhùn bí ènìyàn ẹ̀dẹ̀dẹ̀ lọ́sàn-án gan ẹ wá kó bọ́ ọ̀tá wa ẹ kó bọ́ra ajé ẹ kó bó nílé ẹ kó bá lejò àwọn èèyàn máa sùn ta tẹ́lẹ̀tẹ́lẹ̀ ni tán máa gba tẹ́gùn tó jẹ́ wípé tán iná dẹ̀ tún wá wà nǹkan dá iná tún wá wà kò ń ṣe pé bóyá torí wípé kò sí iná lọ́n ṣe ń sun ní tàǹgbà yẹn bó wọn kò fẹ́ gba fresh air ìgbà wo ni gbogbo wọn ṣẹ̀ṣẹ̀ ra fáànù kiri ìgboro ìṣẹ̀ṣẹ̀ dé nígbà tẹ́mi wà ní kékeré mo ì lè rántí dáadáa náà mi ò rò pa ní fànà, I'm telling you. Gbogbo nǹkan tó dẹ̀ ní nínú ilé la ní, a ti ní fóònù nígbà yẹn. Bàbá mi a ti ní land phone láti 70s lèmi mọ nǹkan tó ń jẹ́ land phone. Television the same thing, ọmọ wa ń wo tí. But because fresh air wà kò ń ṣe wípé o máa ṣí window sílẹ̀, ẹ máa ṣílẹ̀kùn sílẹ̀. Ó yẹ wá sọ fún mi, ìgbà tó di ayé ẹ̀wọ̀n onífàárí, ẹ̀wọ̀n gbajúmọ̀ tó fi wá sí ni máa pè. Òun ló di ayé wípé ṣán irin mọ́ ẹnu ọ̀nà lẹ̀kùn. Tó bá dédé ẹlòmíì gan, security tó wà ńbẹ̀, èyí tó prison kò yí gan mi rò pó ni. Wọ́n máa jọ ṣe competition ni. Wọ́n máa fi kí ló ń porúkọ ẹ̀, fẹ́ǹsì máa lọ, ó máa ga. Ẹ̀yìn tí fẹ́ǹsì bá lọ yẹn, wọ́n tún máa fi ìgò síbẹ̀. Wọ́n tún máa ṣe security sójú window, ẹnu ọ̀nà, kitchen, ẹnu ọ̀nà àbáwọlé. Ẹ wo nǹkan tó kí ló wá dà? Àní kílẹ̀ sí yẹn wọn, kí ló dà nínú ìgbésí ayé wa? Nǹkan tó ṣe, àní kò ń ṣe ti wa, àti wá rí àrídájú. Àwa ti rí ìdánilójú 100%, ó tiẹ̀ ti kọjá 100%, wípé ó gbé wọn ni, ó gbé ará Saudi. Wọ́n ló ṣàbí ò bá gbé mi ṣe mí bó ṣe bá mi, kó gbé àwa. Torí kò ń ṣe àwọn ancestors wa là ń pè. Ńṣe ló ní kí àwa, ó ní ọmọ tó mọ̀ ìyá rẹ̀ lójú ó ṣí ní ó tọmọ náà pa. Nǹkan tó fà á nìyẹn tó fi jẹ́ wípé olówó kan láàrin 1000 lẹ máa kàn nílẹ̀ Yorùbá tán ti gbé ẹ̀sìn wa fún wa. Torí pé Ẹlẹ́dàá wa ò fẹ́. Wọ́n ti jẹ́ ká tàpá sí àwọn ọ̀run wa, wọ́n ti jẹ́ ká tàpá sí àwọn ancestors wa. Àwọn tó sọ wípé ayé dùn, ẹ máa bọ̀, ẹ wá tẹnu ẹ̀, wọ́n ti jẹ́ ká fi ẹnu yìí ká fi tàpá sí wọn. Àwọn tó sọ wípé ọ̀nà rẹ̀, ojú ọ̀nà rẹ̀, wọ́n ti jẹ́ ká fi ẹnu wa yìí, wọ́n ti jẹ́ ká fi kọ níwájú wọn. Torí ẹ̀ la ṣe wà lójú kan. Ọ̀ǹtì gbà tá bá padà, torí wa bá padà bẹ̀rẹ̀ sí ní máa pé, tá bẹ̀rẹ̀ sí ní máa, in short, mi ti ẹ̀ mọ̀. Ìyá tó bí mi gan, wọ́n ti ẹ̀ pè mí orúkọ Muslim. Àti ilẹ̀ gan lórúkọ Muslim tèmi ti ń ṣe bákan sí mi ná. Mi ò tiẹ̀ like láti sọ fún yàn gan. Irú bí mo ṣe ń jẹ́ Zabi yìí ń sẹ́, ẹlòmíì máa ní àṣẹ Zainab níyìn ni, ṣé kinní kan níyìn ni. So in short, ẹlòmíì tó bá pè èèyàn bíi 10 sílẹ̀, bóyá èèyàn kan ṣe ló lè guess orúkọ yẹn, because ó jorúkọ. Èmi gan béèrè lọ́wọ́ màmí gan, bí wọ́n máa ní dájú ẹ ló sọ wípé orúkọ tóun like nìyẹn. Àwọn ọ̀rẹ́ àwọn gan béèrè wípé ó ṣe wá jẹ́ orúkọ yìí, because ìgbà tèmi gan wà kékeré gan, tí n bá ń kọjá lọ, àwọn tó máa kí mi wọ́n ní pẹ̀lẹ́ o lórúkọ ìyá mi, pẹ̀lẹ́ o, because orúkọ tó hòdì pátápátá ni. Tó bá dẹ̀ máa sọ máa lórúkọ Muslim ni. For example, tó bá sọ pé Sànúsí, orúkọ Muslim ni. Bello, orúkọ Muslim ni. Just name it. Just name it. Irú ẹni tó bá fẹ́ ṣe tó ń gboyè níbi tó dancing, wọ́n wá ní Silifat Bello, ọmọ bo la fẹ́ pè. Ṣamalọ́mọ Ìlọrin ni, Ṣamalọ́mọ Ṣàgámù ni, Ṣamalọ́mọ Abẹ́òkúta ni, ọmọ bo la fẹ́ ka Silifat Bello la fẹ́ ka mọ́. Bó tó ń bá sọ wípé Ògúnbíyì, Ọláìwọlá, Ìṣọ̀lá Kóredé, tí màá ti nà pé ọmọ tí Donald Trump tó ń gbé flower fún yìí, ọmọ yé mo máa jẹ, ọmọ ibì kan náà. Ẹ wo, ó kó bá wa gan ni. Kọ́lọ́run kó ṣe dáadáa fún wa. A ti mọ̀ wípé a ti bọ́ náà, a ti bọ́. Mo kí gbogbo wa ipa kú iṣẹ́. By the time tí àwọn ẹlòmíì tí ó bá wà generation àwọn ẹlòmíì, àwọn ò ní ṣépè fún wa o. No. Ọ̀rọ̀ àdúrà làwa ń ṣe sílẹ̀ yìí. Àwọn tí àwa dẹ̀ rò wípé bóyá àwọn tà wá sínú oko ẹrú nígbà ìmọ̀ ni. Àwa náà láti ṣàforíjì fún wọn ni. Torí wípé kí ni ìgbà ìmọ̀ tó bá jẹ́ àwa náà lè ti wà láyé ńgbà yẹn, gẹ́gẹ́ bí àwa Yorùbá bá ṣe nígbàgbọ́ wípé tá bá lọ à ń padà bọ̀, a tún padà wá. Ó tún wá lè jẹ́ nínú wa yìí gan, ó lè jẹ́ pé nǹkan tá bàjẹ́ ńgbà yẹn gan la padà tún wá ń ṣàtúnṣe kó tó di pé a máa lọ padà sínú ọgbà tẹ̀rọ̀. Torí pé àwa ò níná, àdẹ̀ ní kinní kankan, bó bá yẹ ṣe bóyá nǹkan tá bàjẹ́ ńgbà yẹn l'Elédùmarè fẹ́ jẹ́ káwa fúnra wa ká padà wá láti wá túnṣe. Bíkọ́ ẹlòmíì gan máa wèrè pé báwo ló ṣe jẹ́, báwo ni ò ṣe jẹ́, báwo ló ń ṣe bára wọn nínú bíbà. Irú èmi sìn, tó bá sọ fún mi ní bóyá 6 years ago, 4 years ago wípé mo máa sọ̀rọ̀ ní ọ̀pọ̀rọ̀ ìṣẹ̀ṣe, mo lè fi life bet lọ́dọ̀ onítàn wípé èmi ò fẹ́ mú mi lọ sínú iná. Kò possible now, ó fẹ́ kí irun mi waste. Èmi ò ń kó ìrun kí wọ́n á kórun papọ̀. Once in a while ni máa kórun mi pa, máa kírun ni tí n bá wà lọ́fíìsì, mo máa kírun ni, àwọn ibiṣẹ́ ti mọ̀ mí, aṣọ mi gẹ̀rẹ̀jẹ ni. Àwọn tó mọ̀ mí lórí ayélujára pẹ̀lú program mi mọ̀, ojú mi nìkan ló máa rí níta. Tipátipá gan ni máa fi máa gbé ọwọ́ síta torí pé gbogbo ẹ̀ṣẹ̀ ni. Ìgbà tó jẹ́ pé à ń sọ̀rọ̀ gan, pàápàá gan àwọn àfà gan attack wípé kò yẹ kó máa sọ̀rọ̀ obìnrin, ọlọ́hun obìnrin ẹlẹgẹ́ ni. Ó tún wò pé nǹkan tó ń sọ yẹn gan, torí pé ó jẹ́ nǹkan tó nífẹ̀ẹ́ sí, ó tún ń fi rọra ń ṣe díẹ̀díẹ̀ pé because ó mọ̀ kí ni mo wá fẹ́ sọ ń bẹ̀ ni wípé ọ̀pọ̀lọpọ̀ nínú wa mọ̀ pé Elédùmarè ó lè pè wá padà sílé báyìí, gẹ́gẹ́ bí mo ṣe máa ń sọ wípé Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala nínú alukoran kerim ló sọ wípé ó láwọn kan wà òun ti ṣì wọ́n lọ́nà, bẹ́ẹ̀ bá wọn sọ̀rọ̀ ní gbọ́, òun dẹ̀ ti fi àgádágodo sí wọn lọ́wọ́, òun ojú wọn gan òun ti lẹ̀ nǹkan mọ́. Irú àwa yìí nìyẹn ń sìn, òun ló ṣì wá lọ́nà. Àwọn irúnmalẹ̀ ló wá tọ́ wa sọ́nà, àwọn náà fi wọ́n wá wípé ibi tẹ́ lọ o, wọ́n máa ṣì yín lọ́nà bẹ́ẹ̀, àwa la máa fi yín mọ̀nà. A dúpẹ́ pé Elédùmarè fi wá mọ̀nà. Ọ̀rọ̀ inú àlùkùránì ni wọn, òun ló ṣẹ, torí ẹ̀ á ṣìnà. Àwọn ancestors wa yẹn táwọn bá ní nǹkan táwa ní lọ́jọ́ títí òní, kẹjẹ́ ká fira wa sínú ipò yẹn. Tó bá jáwa náà ní 100 years ago, 200 years ago, àmọ́ nǹkan kan o. Àìmọye pépà tó jẹ́ pé tán bá ṣe nílùú òyìnbó yìí tó bá máa fi dé Nàìjíríà níbi tán fẹ́ jẹ́ kó lọ, kò ń ṣe ó ní ọjọ́ tó máa jẹ́ o, kò ń ṣe lẹ́sẹ̀kẹsẹ̀ o. Torí ẹ jẹ́ ká wo ìyẹn pẹ̀lú tá bá fẹ́ sọ̀rọ̀, ká máa sọ̀rọ̀ ká máa ṣàforíjì fún wọn, fáwọn ancestors wa. Ó possible tó bá yẹ pé táwọn náà bá nírú àwọn nǹkan táwa ní lọ́jọ́ títí òní, ó lè má rí bẹ́ẹ̀ yẹn. But bí Elédùmarè ṣe sọ pé ó máa rí náà nìyẹn. Wọ́n légún tó bá kọ́kọ́ jó, ìran ló máa wò nígbẹ̀yìn. Nǹkan tó ṣẹlẹ̀ nìyẹn wípé bóyá tó bá jẹ́ pé bíi 50 years ago, 70 years ago láti bẹ̀rẹ̀ sí ní jítàdẹ̀ ní gbogbo àwọn àkójọ nǹkan tá fi ń support ẹ̀ yìí, ó possible kó jẹ́ pa tètè máa wọlé ni. Bọ̀ Elédùmarè náà ti mọ̀ wípé ìyà yẹn ti tó, òun ti ṣetán láti gbèjà wa, ló ṣe jẹ́ pé ìgbà tá a ní gbogbo nǹkan tá a lè lò pátápátá ó ti ready. Ó yá bẹ̀rẹ̀ sí ní máa jí, ó wá kù àwa náà ká máa jíra wa. Torí ẹ jẹ́ kémi gbé máìkì sílẹ̀. Mi ìmọ̀gbà tí bàbá bí ara tó máa ṣe tán, èmi náà máa ṣe program. Ẹ̀yin tẹ́ báyìí ti follow mi lórí ọmọ Ọbàtálá 1 yẹn ó wá jẹ́ 0 NE as 1, kò ń ṣe number 1. Ọmọ Ọbàtálá 1 a máa bẹ̀rẹ̀ program ní 10 o'clock ní alẹ́ yìí, kẹ́ pàdé wa ń bẹ̀. Ẹ jẹ́ kí n fi ancestor ṣe wà ń bẹ̀. Ẹ̀yin tẹ́ báyìí ti follow ọmọ Ọbàtálá, brother mi àwọn bíi mẹ́ta méjì kan ti follow mi báyìí tó rájọ ṣe program níjẹta ni. Ẹ follow ọmọ Ọbàtálá 1 so that tá bá ṣe program a ní láti máa kéde ẹ̀ káàkiri náà ni. Ẹni tó wo bí kò wo tọ̀hún, nǹkan tán máa gbé jáde ń bí wọn gbé jáde lọ́hùn. A jọ wà lórí ti bàbá MS Babalana náà ni. Àti ẹ̀dúpẹ́ lady kan náà, òun náà ti darapọ̀ mọ́ wa ní àná. A dúpẹ́ lọ́dọ̀ Elédùmarè. Kò jẹ́ bóyá jẹ́ nìyẹn ṣá. Ẹ jẹ́ kí n fi máìkì lẹ́fẹ̀ẹ́ lómi.
Gbogbo ilé ẹ kú ọ̀lẹ́ o, ẹ̀yin ìyá mi, ẹ̀yin bàbá mi. Mo dúpẹ́ lọ́wọ́ Olódùmarè. Mo dẹ̀ dúpẹ́ lọ́wọ́ gbogbo àwọn tó wà ní orí ìkànnì ilé mi. Mo dẹ̀ tún dúpẹ́ lọ́wọ́ àwọn tó ṣe platform tá a wà yìí, torí platform yìí lásán àti black app yìí ó help lọ́pọ̀lọpọ̀, ó ṣe nǹkan má lè gbàgbé fún kálukú wa lọ́pọ̀lọpọ̀, torí pé a ti ń wá bá ṣe fẹ́ come together báyìí ti pẹ́, kò sí àǹfààní láti come together láti wá kó ẹ̀kọ́. Gẹ́gẹ́ bí ìyá mi ṣe sọ lẹ́ẹ̀kan, wọ́n sọ pé téèyàn bá sọ fáwọn pé bóyá bíi 3 years ago pé máa ṣe irú nǹkan báyìí, máa ní irọ́ níbẹ̀ yìí ná. Bẹ́ẹ̀ náà ló ṣe rí lọ́dọ̀ ti tèmi náà. Mo strong débi pé mi ò tiẹ̀ fẹ́ gbọ́ anything like this, because ìjọ́ tí mo kọ́kọ́ ṣe kòńgẹ́ program yìí ó dàbí nonsense létí mi ní pé kí náà ń sọ but statement kan wà tí mo máa always bring pé wọ́n ní lọ kà fúnra ẹ̀ bọ́dẹ̀ ṣe ń dúró pé kò lọ kà fúnra ẹ̀ ó dẹ̀ lọ ń kà ó dẹ̀ ń bá bẹ́ẹ̀ kìíní ẹ̀ lásán ó really help èmi as a person pé lọ kà fúnra ẹ̀ ó dẹ̀ lọ kà fúnra ẹ̀ tó dẹ̀ ń sọ dẹ̀ jẹ́ the same thing I'm like ṣé kí irú nǹkan báyìí ṣó wà nínú ìwé ìṣà then the more tó bá dẹ̀ ṣe ń kà bẹ́ẹ̀ ni wàá ṣe máa rí more and more adé tún máa gbọ́ more and more because àti ẹ̀kan tí mo ti wà níbí báyìí tí bàbá mi ti ń lecture wa tó ti ń kàwé yẹn èmi náà ti lọ download ẹ̀ so nǹkan tí máa yẹn ń tọ́ láti sọ lẹ́ẹ̀kan òun ni ọ̀rọ̀ tó máa ń bí mi nínú nípa wọn because ìwé ni nǹkan tá à ń sọ yìí ìwé it's just ordinary book ìwé là ń sọ̀rọ̀ yìí òun tẹ́nìkan dẹ̀ kọ ni tóun tán kọ òun là ń sọ̀rọ̀ yìí so ohun tó dẹ̀ kọ lèèyàn máa kà jáde so o ní láti explain nǹkan tó kọ fún mi mọ́ because at the end of the day wàá ní mi ò gbàgbọ́ yí ẹ̀ ṣé mo tún ní láti gbàgbọ́ yí nǹkan tó kọ ṣá ara ibẹ̀ yẹn máa ń fẹ́ fún mi ní ó máa ń fẹ́ affect brain mi pé àjọ ń ka kíní yìí o tún wá ní láti explain ẹ̀ fún mi nǹkan tí definitely nǹkan tí kíní sọ right wọ́n ló ní láti explain ẹ̀ fún mi because mi kì í get àárín yẹn àtọ́ mi ò kì í get àárín yẹn lásán máa ń ní a lot of question láti béèrè láàrin yẹn pé ṣé bí ìwé yìí náà ló ń ka wọn ló gbé jáde ló ń ka fún mi ó lẹ́yìn tí àjọkà nínú ìwé ìsìn pé tí ìyá àti bàbá ẹ̀ tábà bẹ́ẹ̀ ṣe sìn mọ́ má bá wọn ṣe ó tún wá ń sọ fún mi pé bẹ́yẹn kọ́ ṣé bóun ní ìwé ìsọ yìí which is tó bá yẹ pé o ní tí ìyá àti bàbá ẹ̀ tábà bẹ́ẹ̀ ṣe sìn mọ́ ó ní má bá wọn ṣe ló sọ ìyẹn favour ẹ̀ wá gbà but èyí tí ó bá ti favour yín gẹ́gẹ́ bí ọ̀rọ̀ mi nǹkan tí ó bá ti favour yàn láyé yìí òjòrò ni because tí nǹkan bá favour ẹ̀ ò lè pé lójòrò wọ́n mú wọ́ọ̀dì yẹn wá pé ò lágbọ́yé ẹ̀sìn èwo tún lágbọ́yé ẹ̀sìn nínú ìwé tájọ́ ń kà àwọn ọ̀rẹ́ mi tọ́lá àjọ wà ń bẹ̀ tájọ́ ń ṣe nígbà yẹn some of them even though ẹ mọ orúkọ tètè máa ń pè mí sìn wọ́n á ní bàbá kò sọ lọ́hùn mi ì sọ fún ẹ pé kò sọ lọ́hùn náà nǹkan tó gbé dání mo ní ká sọ̀rọ̀ ń pa ẹ̀ many of them ládùúgbò mi bíbá ẹ̀ ó yá máa bọ̀ ń bí wá béèrè question fóònù mi lélẹ̀ tí data bá tàn máa rà mí fún ẹ wá béèrè tó bá rú ẹ lójú tó bá jẹ́ pé ọ̀nà Islam ni àbọ̀nà Christian wá béèrè data mi ni máa bọ̀ wá lò fóònù mi ni máa bọ̀ wá lò béèrè lọ́wọ́ àwọn tó túmọ̀ jù mí lọ wàá understand nǹkan tí ò yẹ wàá gbọ́ nǹkan tó gbọ́ rí pé mo ọmọ ìjí pátá wọn á ní bẹ́ẹ̀ ló ń gbẹ̀ṣẹ̀ tó wáyé pé Ọlọ́run jẹ́ kinní kan ni wàá ti pààyàn kí ló ń sọ ṣé mi ni mo kọ kinní yìí ni èmi kọ́ ni mo kọ́ náà àwọn tó ní àṣà àti ṣe tẹ́yìn pè ní religion yìí àwọn náà kọ ìwé wọn fúnra wọn bóyá ọ̀rọ̀ wọn dẹ̀ ṣe rí bẹ́ẹ̀ náà ṣe kọ́ kí wá ló dé tí wọ́n fẹ́ máa manipulate a nídẹ̀ wá ká nǹkan tán kọ síbẹ̀ tábà ka Suratu Ibrahim 14:4 yẹn wọ́n tún máa twist ẹ̀ kí nǹkan tí kìíní sọ jẹ́ ká tẹ̀lé àwọn náà ti sọ pé gbogbo ìletò àti oníkálukú wọ́n ti ní ẹ̀tàn wọn sí wọn. So what is your problem about that? But kíní yìí torí pé àwọn tó ń jẹ tán mu tán fẹ́ ṣiṣẹ́ wọ́n ti sọ the source of income wọ́n ti wá kó yín ní pápámọ́ra ìwọ̀nba tọ́wọ́ kọ́bọ̀ ọwọ́ yín wọ́n ń gbà wọ́n láwọn mú yín lọ́bì kan tó dáa jù bí lọ. You are going to heaven, tó bá dẹ̀ rí train wá yá Man, lọ 7 now. The heaven is good for you. Fear tilẹ̀ fáwa. Ẹ máa lọ 7 àwa tó pọ̀ jẹ́ ká máa ṣe. Because àwa mọ̀ pé kò 7 kankan bì kan. Kò dẹ̀ sí fire kankan bì kan. Ordinary transformer bá ṣaran lásán. Wọ́n ti sá lọ. Ó dẹ̀ fẹ́ lọ 7. Where to heaven dẹ̀ sílẹ̀ ò ń sá fún. Ẹ mú kíní yìí. Ẹ fi ń twist orí àwọn èèyàn. Àwọn èèyàn dẹ̀ fi ń twist orí wọn. A dẹ̀ ń ṣàlàyé fún wọn pé nǹkan tẹ̀ ń ṣe brainwashing ni. Àwọn kíní wọn nífẹ̀ẹ́ wa. Bọ́n ṣe ń treat wa rèé tá bá débẹ̀. Bọ́n ṣe ń ṣe sí wa rèé tá bá débẹ̀. Báyìí náà ṣe ń sọ̀rọ̀ sí wa. Báyìí náà ṣe ń ṣe sí wa. Ẹ sì máa guide wọn. Ẹ dẹ̀ realize pé àwọn tán jẹ́ olórí ẹ̀sìn kọ̀ọ̀kan níbi kọ̀ọ̀kan wọ́n fi yín cash out ni. Wọ́n fi yín cash out ni. Ohun tó yẹ ká face tó jẹ́ major problem wa a face ẹ̀. À ń lọ sórí òkè. A fi economy wa lẹ̀. Àwọn èèyàn sometimes àwọn èèyàn understand bí economy ìlú ṣe ń lọ. Pé gbogbo ẹni tó wà nínú ìlú ni economy ìlú náà ń ṣe nǹkan kan sínú ìlú. Báyìí contract ló ń gbà tó bá jẹ́ pé olùṣòwò ni ẹ ó ní nǹkan tó ń contribute sílùú yẹn. But orí contract ẹyọ kan ogorí òkè lọ. Ó lọ ń gbàdúrà ó pa fóònù. Ṣé o mọ̀ pé bóyá bíi 10, 15 ó lè wá wá tí fóònù ẹ bá wà wọ́n tó ṣì ń wáwé about bí wàá ṣe rí mọ́ àmọ́. But ó ti lọ sórí òkè. Ó ti pa fóònù. Ó ń dúró de mountain pé kán pè é. Kí ni yìí? Common sense ni tó bá lè jókòó kó o fún ẹ pé madness. Gbogbo evidences wà pé madness ni pé kò kàn wá lọ́wọ́ kò kàn wá lẹ́sẹ̀. Àwọn tó kàn bẹ́ẹ̀ náà ṣe dá wọn. Ìgbà tí mo kéré ohun tí mo lòdì sí jù tó bá ní màá dé di kíní yìí màá ní irọ́ ni. Mo dẹ̀ mọ̀ pé tí n bá sọ ń bí náà ẹ̀yin ìyá mi ẹ̀yin bàbá mi tẹ̀ wá ń bí. A máa rí èèyàn 2 mẹ́ta tó lòdì sí náà ti sọ fún pé haram ni. Ẹran ẹlẹ́dẹ̀ mo máa kórìíra ẹ o. Mo kórìíra ẹ gidi. Irọ́ o wọ́n ní ká má débẹ̀ ẹ̀ṣẹ̀ ni. Ìgbà tí mo dára mi gbà kò sójúmọ́ kan tí má fi panu. Tí bá rí 404 kò sójúmọ́ kan kí mi má fi panu ẹ bá mú. Kò dẹ̀ kí n ṣe anything. Ìdí tó fi jẹ́ kò dẹ̀ kí n ṣe èèwọ̀ fáwọn náà. Ohun tó fi jẹ́ ohun tí wọ́n lè ṣe pẹ̀lú pé wọ́n ní kò lè gbé desert kò lè survive ní desert. Kò lè ever survive ní desert. Is a little understanding nǹkan tó yẹ kó o brain ẹ̀. But ìwé yẹn ó ti sọ fún ẹ pé o ò lè dá ronú. Because tá a bá dá ronú àwọn nǹkan kan wà tó yẹ pé yẹn kan má pàkàn ó yẹ kó o rò fún rẹ. But tó bá lọ opportunity táwa ní láti fìwé ilẹ̀ pé this thing na rubbish. Wàá get solutions in life. Wàá lè live. O ò lè rí èèyàn tó wà tó ń gbègbè sí ayé ẹ̀ tí ó ṣe nǹkan kan. Tó kàn ń gbègbè sí ayé ẹ̀ tó wá sọ pé òun dẹ̀ṣẹ̀ àbí tó fẹ́ because ó mọ̀ nǹkan tí ò dà àtèyí tó dà. But èèyàn tó ń fi ìwé gbáyé ó mọ̀ pé tóun bá ti ṣẹ̀ òun níbi kan tóun ń sá lọ tá lọ tọrọ dáríjì. But ìwọ tóun live free mind like I'm just living. Ó ti mọ̀ pé tó bá mú nǹkan ní nǹkan èyí tó jù bẹ́ẹ̀ lọ nínú tiẹ̀ á sọnù. Ó ti wà nínú mindset ẹ̀ ó ò ní mú. Tó bá lọ sílé onílé dìwé bí wàá ṣe ń bẹ̀ wàá mọ̀ pé tí n bá ṣe báyìí kò dáa tí n bá ṣe báyìí kò dáa ó ti bọ̀ ó ò ní ṣe ó ò dẹ̀ nífẹ̀ẹ́ kan ṣe fún ẹ because ó ò níbi tó ti fẹ́ lọ tọrọ dáríjì. But wọ́n mọ̀ pé táwọn bá mẹ́nìkan táwọn gé orí gẹ́sẹ̀ nípa sípayọ gẹ́gẹ́ bí nǹkan tí ìwé wọn sọ wọ́n mọ̀ pé bí kan wà táwọn tẹ́ fẹ́ fi tọrọ dáríjì ẹ̀ṣẹ̀ táwọn máa débẹ̀ táwọn máa ní dáríjì mi dáríjì mi dáríjì mi. Wọ́n ti dáríjì náà nìyẹn. But èmi tí mi ò ní dánwò ẹ̀ wò because mi ò ní. So àwọn a lot of rubbish ó wà nínú kinní yìí fún wa but the only thing that kan lè ṣe fún ra wa because mo rí movement yìí is the biggest movement nílé ayé tí ìran Yorùbá ń ṣe lọ́wọ́ because gbogbo nǹkan táwọn sọ yẹn sí kò tí ì pé 2 years ẹ wo bí tó ti rìn dé ẹ wo àwa tá a ti kú ọbẹ a kì í ṣe kékeré ẹ wo àwọn ọmọ àwọn orí tá a tún máa kó kúrò ọbẹ torí pé mo mọ̀ pé ẹ̀yin ìyá mi ẹ̀yin bàbá mi tẹ́ wà ń bí àtàwọn tán ti kúrò nínú modern slavery yìí because I always call it modern slavery àtàwọn tán ti kúrò ọbẹ mo mọ̀ pé tán bá bímọ àwọn ọmọ wọn náà wọn á kó wọn kú ọbẹ. So another thing again tí mo tún máa ń observe tó tún máa ń bá fún mi ẹ wo orúkọ tá à ń jẹ gẹ́gẹ́ bí ìyá mi ṣe sọ lẹ́ẹ̀kan kí ló dé tó wọ́n ń change àwọn orúkọ yẹn because wọ́n ẹ̀ṣẹ̀ realize pé kọ́kọ́rọ́ ládà rúlà àkàbà òun náà ń sọ àwọn èèyàn kàn gbọ́ kínní yẹn wọ́n dẹ̀ ń fún àwọn èèyàn so wọ́n wá ń change ẹ̀ díẹ̀díẹ̀ tẹ bá gẹ̀tẹ̀ ń sìn nǹkan tó ń ṣe wọ́n ń change ẹ̀ díẹ̀díẹ̀ wọ́n sọ di mohan ehan ahan wọ́n ń change àwọn kínní yẹn wọ́n yọ kúrò ní mistura ìsìlámì wọ́n yọ àwọn kínní yẹn wọ́n mú àwọn ní wàǹwà láti fẹ́ yọ ó dùn àyẹn tó já àwọn kọ́kọ́rọ́ àwọn ládà which is àwọn gangan fúnra àwọn tó gba kínní yẹn lọ́wọ́ wọn gan because wọ́n mọ̀ tó wáyé pé wọ́n mọ̀ pé nǹkan tó fẹ́ fi ṣe lélẹ̀ they will not take it from them because èdè tó fẹ́ kọ́ òye wọn wọ́n ti pe gbogbo ẹ̀ fún wọn ní bákan náà but I'm so happy pé mo ṣì wà láyé mo wà láàyè ní heran time tí kìíní ìṣẹ̀lẹ̀ because of pé mo lè contribute orúkọ mi náà máa wà nínú ìwé ìtàn àwọn tó ní la pé kìíní yìí is not for because mo nígbàgbọ́ 50 years to come tán àtẹnitá Olódùmarè lè dé àwa lè tàn a sì lè wà social media ò ní tán àwọn tá a bá gbélé lọ́wọ́ yìí náà wọ́n á appreciate pé nǹkan táwọn bàbá yìí ṣe lẹ̀ is a big thing wọ́n á pàtẹ́wọ́ fún wa pé a gbìyànjú inú mi máa ń dùn gan pé a rí irú opportunity yìí inú mi dùn gan because a lot of things wà tó jẹ́ pé wọ́n ti fi kọjú ọmọ sí ìyá ẹ̀ láti takú ìyá ẹ̀ because of religion wọ́n ti fi kọjú ìyàwó sọ́kọ wọ́n ti fi báyé olólùfẹ́ méjì jẹ́ wọ́n ti fi cause a lot of distraction sí nation yìí ó ti fún àwọn ẹlòmíì ní orúkọ tí ó yẹ kán jẹ́ nítorí modern slavery yìí wọ́n ti kó àwọn èèyàn ní ọpọlọ lọ àwọn èèyàn wọn dẹ̀ realize pé báyìí ni báyìí kọ́ but mo mọ̀ pé pẹ̀lú bó ṣe ń lọ yìí ojú àwọn èèyàn máa ṣí ohun tí mo kàn máa ń fẹ́ try láti máa bring in because ó dàbí pé Mel TV mo rí wọn ní program mo rí wọn ní Agége tó ń ṣe irú nǹkan bẹ́ẹ̀ yẹn yes pé táwa náà ìwọ̀nba ẹnu tèmi ní ládùúgbò mi èmi ń lò mo dẹ̀ fi ń sọ̀rọ̀ ohun tó máa ń padà ṣẹlẹ̀ la máa ń padà sọ wọn á ní mi ò mọ nǹkan kan jókòó jẹ́ kájọ wo kínní kájọ wílé wọn á ní o ò mọ nǹkan kan nǹkan tó lọ́run ti ṣe ọlọ́run kọ́ aláàní but àti sáré inject kìíní yẹn síyàn lára le because gbogbo èèyàn náà kọ́ ló ní